Did she say what kind of animal it was that attacked her?
So yeah, they're saying it's some type of animal attack. Statistically, there's been more animal attacks, mysterious deaths, people gone missing.
In other news, local authorities remain perplexed by the animal attacks.
What attacked you in the woods?
An animal. What else could it have been?
Welcome to It Was an Animal Attack, home of the supernatural drama series. I'm Fadzai.
And I'm Sandile.
And today we will be covering the immortal, the incredible, the insane Mikaelson siblings, also known as the original vampires.
Woo!
Sans Mikael.
Let's go. Yeah, Sans Mikael, because who cares about that guy? And also, we've already spoken about him.
Yeah, Esther's little helper, we've spoken about her. The Silas to her Delilah Briarwood. But if Silas and Delilah had had children, I wonder if they would have been as messy as these kids, because this family is a hot mess. They are a mess. I'm here for it. I would watch them if they were a reality TV show.
And in a way, they are. See them in the spin-off, The Originals. There's a reason that
They
show
do. They get their own
so
reality
popular.
show.
It is following the lives of... It's keeping up with the Mikaelsons. Making mess with the Mikaelsons. Love these losers. It's crazy.
It starts off with Klaus and Elijah take New Orleans. And then it becomes...
And then it rolls into the second season where they rebrand.
So I initially thought this was just going to be like a quick thing because Klaus is a main character for like 2 whole seasons. Joseph Morgan is credited as a series regular for seasons 3 and 4.
Yes.
And Claire Holt, I believe, is a series regular for season 4.
That honestly surprises me, but yeah, she is in that whole race to the cure era. Honestly, because, I mean, we'll get into it, but she rarely gets as much to do as her brother does. But I guess she is present the whole time regardless.
She's present a lot more than Tyler Lockwood.
Yeah.
I gotta say.
Yeah, fair enough.
Even in season 3.
That alone gives you the status. Oof, that's rough.
Yeah, Elijah pops in and out, but he's got a huge presence. Of course, Cole and Finn are like the extras. You know, they're the members of the boy band who are always swaying in the back. They don't get like the cool harmonies or the high notes, but they're there, and you know you couldn't do it without them.
What's that Turning Red joke? They're Tyler J and Tyler H or whatever it is.
Yes. As I did my little deep dive into them, I was like, you're actually here and you're doing a lot. So let's talk about it. The first era of the Mikaelson siblings. Very short era, but it's what starts us all off. It is the Elijah era.
The first one.
Yes.
And you'll better remember.
The foot soldier, quote unquote.
Absolute nonsense. Yes, but anyway.
Season 2, episode 8, the episode Rose. Elena's been kidnapped by Trevor and Rose.
Trevor.
Rose had slapped Elena so hard it knocked her out. Shame. But when Elena regains consciousness, she overhears Trevor and Rose speaking about, oh, this Elijah person. Elena tries to sneak out. They're vampires, so they catch her. And then she's like, who's Elijah? And Rose is like, he's your worst nightmare. Which I guess is the only thing about his intro that sort of stays consistent, that he is terrifying and people respect and fear him.
Yeah, the early discussion of, well, at this point, Elijah, but as they slowly begin to drip feed at the originals, is this overwhelming sense of like, old world fear and respect of hierarchy. Like, these guys are a big deal, even though not a lot of people know anything about them.
Well, at this point in the universe,
right?
Because when Elena tries to get more answers out of Rose, Rose is like, well, Elijah is one of the originals. I'm going to give him to you for my freedom because Trevor, take it away. And Trevor's like, listen, I messed up back in the day. I did something they didn't like. They wanted me dead. I've been on the run. Rose has been on the run by proxy because she helped me. But we're going to give it to Elijah and everything be fine. And Elena's like, wait. What's an original? And then Rose is like, it's the first family. And I love that she uses that name, the first family. It sounds very presidential. I'm like, okay. Swanky.
Yeah.
First family of the vampire nation. But she's like, yeah, they're the oldest vampires. And she says they're from the old world. She doesn't delve into it too much, but even that like terminology is like, oh, they come from we're just these vampires chilling in America. It's been very antebellum before now. And I think maybe that might have even informed the decision to like have Rose and Trevor be these like English accented vampires.
Yeah.
Who show up and are like, yes, we're from the old world. We're from Eurasia and we know the original vampire family, shrouded in mystery and very ancient.
Yeah. I think it also is interesting considering, and we've discussed this, I'm sure, before, but the decision in the adaptation to change the Salvatores from being these 500-year-old vampires from Italian Renaissance times to 160-year-old vampires from antebellum times, is that like you lose that sense of the gothic vampire, the almost not Regency's more modern, but that more like older, more distinguished, more shadowy vampire, and these guys are very much filling that role in the story. Especially because early on in the first season, when Stefan's explaining to Elena like everything in that episode where she finds out about vampires and he's like, give me a day and I'll tell you everything, he speaks about like knowledge being passed down to them. He only knows what he's been told by like those before him, and it gives this image of like there are elders and vampirism and stuff that's like never picked up on again until we get here, but the Salvatores don't know anything about like the original vampires, which is interesting.
Yeah, and it's this trajectory that the show will follow until it almost becomes camp, where every time a worse immortal is introduced, they're older. Right. Trevor and Rose are older than 500, but they're alluding to these originals whose exact age isn't mentioned yet. I must have missed it. I couldn't find the exact scene in which it's like explicitly mentioned that we are 1,000. At some point, they just begin to refer to 1,000 years of life. So
I have to assume it's in season 3 when Rebecca's speaking with Elena and they flash back to like Viking times.
I think they might have already mentioned it in season 2.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Actually, yes, they do. We'll get there.
Gotcha.
But yeah, this is the scene where Rose tells Elena all about the sun and moon curse, and that she's the doppelganger, and the doppelganger breaks the curse. Elijah arrives at the house. Trevor's like, oh shit, maybe I should go. You can stay here and speak to him. I gotta run, girl. Mm-hmm. It's broad daylight, so I don't know where he thought he was gonna go.
The structure of this house is strange because later Rose will get away in a way that doesn't make sense and they end up in a parking lot, so I don't... No, the parking lot's later. I always confuse Slater's place with this house.
She does run though. She like at the end of this episode she runs off and I'm like, did she go to hide in the house until sunset? Because she couldn't leave like Stefan and Damon could.
Well, they're underground tunnels. We know Virginia is hollow as it turns out by the end of the show, but
hollow earth theory in the Vampire Diaries. Oh, what could have been. Yeah, Rose is just like, Trevor, you stay here. I'ma go speak to Elijah. Wait in this room. She goes to the foyer. Elijah just like creepily opens the door by himself. Mm-hmm. Rose has boarded up the house to block out the sunlight, so it's very dark inside, and the light coming in from outside is like framing him in this ambience. It's like, oh shit, he's there with his perfectly coiffed hair and his fine-tailored suit, and he immediately gives this air of like class and refinement, and it's like, okay, who's this? Who's this?
The gravitas with which he moves. Oh, love it. Also, interesting hairstyle to start off with. It's not his best, but it's not terrible. You know, it's just an odd look going back.
Yeah, looking back, it's like, But hey, it was the early 2010s. Everyone's hair was floppy and weird.
It's true.
Rose is like almost breathless with anxiety as she welcomes him in. And she's like, so sorry for the state of this dilapidated, musty-looking house. And Elijah's like, oh no, what's a little dirt? I completely understand. And you get this sense that it's like, oh yeah, you should be so grateful that he's not affected by the dirt.
Oh, tense.
He's not saying or doing much, but because of the way Rose is reacting to him, it's just like, wow, okay, this person...
Rose, who at this point is the most powerful figure we've met. And we've only just met her too, so it's like, damn, immediately her lunch gets eaten.
And Elijah even asks her, so what gave you the courage to contact me after all these years of evading us? And Rose is like, listen, I'm tired of running and I want my freedom. But first, I just want to check, do you have the power to grant me freedom on behalf of the originals? And Eliza's like, yes, if I see fit. And again, I'm like, Foot Soldier has the power to pardon you? Mm-hmm. Okay. So Rose is like, yeah, Catherine is alive, didn't burn. Elijah's like, yeah, I kind of guessed that this had something to do with her when you pulled me into Virginia. He describes it as, this armpit of civilization is a mere 3 hours away from Mystic Falls.
Crazy.
And it's like, damn, okay, elitist Elijah.
I mean, that's one of his defining traits. It's the snobbery.
So Rose is like, cool, yeah, I've got a doppelganger for you. And he's like, impossible. Catherine died without issue. And Rose is like, well, apparently not, because there's someone in the other room who looks just like her. She says, Elijah, you are a man of honor, so I want to hear you say the words. And Elijah's like, okay, fine. You have my word that I will pardon you fine print, as we've mentioned before.
Brilliant.
The plural of you is you, but the singular of you is also you.
Exactly so.
So Rose leads him in. He sees Elena. He's like, vamp speeds over to her, sniffs her, and confirms that she's human. It's so creepy. So then Elijah's like, cool, okay, she's the doppelganger. Come, Elena, we have a long way to go. And Elena's like, no, please don't let him take me. And I was like, it's cute that you think they could stop him, even if they wanted to. These people are shitting bricks here.
Just standing in his presence.
Elijah's like, wait, before we leave, one last piece of business. And he walks over to Trevor. And Trevor is like, Elijah, I have waited so long for this day. I'm truly very sorry. And Elijah's like, no apologies necessary, Trevor. Trevor's like, you trusted me with Katerina and I failed you. And Elijah's like, oh yes, you are the guilty one. Rose aided you because she was loyal to you. Now that I honor. But where was your loyalty? And it's like, oh, so this is a man who values loyalty. That'll become important. Loyalty, honor, nobility. Those are the virtues that Elijah tries to live by.
Tries is the key word, yeah.
Trevor begs his forgiveness. Elijah's like, so granted. And then decapitates him in one swift move. Just a stroke of the hand.
It's so funny how much of this first appearance of his will be cemented as part of his character. Like you're saying, those ideals that he honors. His very iconic decapitation with a single hand. And his particular about making promises and sticking to them by the letter.
Yes.
Because Elijah presents himself as someone who is honorable and noble and will not betray you. But he is very sort of legal jargon about it in a way that's really fun.
Yes. A lawyer through and through.
Yes.
Rose is obviously heartbroken. She has a brief moment where you think she might try to retaliate, and Elijah's like, do not, Rose, now that you are free. And it's like, yeah, girl, control yourself. He's already dead. There's nothing you can do. So then Elijah's like, cool, Elena, let's go. Elena's like, wait, no, well, what about the moonstone? And Elijah's like, what do you know about the moonstone? And she's like, well, I know that you want it, and I know how to get it. And Elijah's like, okay. So tell me where it is. And she's like, no, I want to make a deal with you. And Elijah's like, tee-hee, are you negotiating with me? The first moment where the seeds of that mutual respect get planted. Because he's got a soft spot for Elena. And I think in this moment he's like, oh, wow, this weak, frightened human girl.
He's constantly surprised by her boldness. He's like, you know that I'm this old-ass immortal creature. And you, this tiny thing, are going to try and bargain with me? This is interesting.
He's like, okay, respect. Looks over at Rose accusingly, and Rose is like, hey, don't look at me. I don't know nothing about the moonstone. She didn't tell me about that. So then Elijah's like, yeah, I don't bargain with mortals. Tries to compel her. It doesn't work. But surprisingly, he senses the contents of her necklace and snatches it off her and is like, what is this for vein doing around your neck?
Vein. A lot of this will not come back. His ability to smell the difference between human and vampire, and then also the sense she's wearing vervain is just like not really things that come back in a big way, which is a shame.
Yeah, but I guess at a certain point they all start drinking vervain, which is a lot smarter than just wearing it on your body.
Without question.
So he compels her. She tells him that Catherine's in the tomb under Fell's church. Then they hear a noise from somewhere in the house, and Elijah's like, what was that? And Rose is like, I don't know. So Elijah grabs Elena, forces both her and Rose to follow him up into the foyer, and the Salvatore brothers are vamp speeding around, taunting him. The Salvatore brothers are able to distract Elijah with a well-aimed wooden dart through the hand, and while he's removing it, they disappear with Rose and Elena. And then Elijah, I love this badass boast. He says, excuse me, to whom it may concern, you're making a grave mistake if you think that you can beat me. You can't. You hear that? You cannot beat me.
The early, hybrid accent.
I love it. I've listened to it so many times. He starts to refashion this, I think it's a hat rack that's just standing by into a makeshift stake. And he's like, now I want the girl on the count of 3 or heads will roll. Do we understand each other? And again, heads will roll. I'm like, this is his signature move.
He was there in the 90s. Off with the heads.
Elena comes out, pretends to surrender. Elijah's still suspicious. She throws a vervain grenade at him. Stefan appears. It's so cute. Stefan is firing wooden bullets directly into Elijah's body, and he's just shrugging them off. But eventually, Damon is able to take his stake and stake him against the wall. Elijah withers and dies, as vampires do. Rose runs away. This is where she runs, and I'm like,
girl, where
it's
did you
still
go?
Daytime. I guess she went to the basement.
Why not, I guess?
She went to grab a cloak to put over her face. Well, I don't know.
She ran with a ratty blanket like Spike.
But yeah, the Salvatores take Elena home, and at the end of the episode, there's that iconic scene where gray and veiny Elijah starts to revive, yanks the stake that's been pinning him to the wall out of his chest, and he's alive. It clutters to the floor, and it's like, what? How do you kill an original?
It's like
dum, dum, dum.
already the stakes were so high because
no pun intended.
Presented with these really old, powerful beings, and now it's like, oh, you can't kill them. Not the way that you are used to killing vampires. We're in trouble.
In the next episode, Katarina, Rose, I guess, joins the team and starts to tell them a lot of the misinformation she has about the originals. And hey, she does preface it by saying, I only know what I've heard. A lot of it is like mystery and whatnot. But she's like, Elijah is one of the originals, so is Klaus. He's the one you need to worry about. She says Elijah is just a foot soldier and he's the Easter Bunny compared to Klaus. She claims Klaus is the eldest of the originals, not even close to being true.
Yeah. Yeah, that one line really helps with everything that changes from season 2 to season 3 of like, I'm just telling you what I've heard.
Yeah.
Nobody knows enough about these people beyond like mythos and like scary stories. So,
and it's interesting that the Salvatores know nothing about the originals, like at all. I want to credit it to Rose's age. She is 500. She's had time to learn.
And she was there for some of it at the very least.
And we'll meet other vampires in this universe who are very familiar with them, but they're all quite old, so it's fine. It's like when Enzo shows up, it's not like he knows who the Mikaelsons are.
Frankly, he's only heard of Klaus by reputation from the Mystic Falls gang. He does not know these people.
Heard you got a thing for guys with accents.
That's all he knows. That's the sum total of what he knows about the originals.
But later on in the episode, Elijah, patron of the arts, gives a street performer, a guitarist, $100 bill so that he can swap it out for some coins that the performer had already earned. I'm like, I don't think that's how that works. That's like when the collection tray goes by in church and you're like, can I take some change? I only have... He takes it, he stands some distance away from the vampire hangout where Rose and Damon have gone to meet Rose's friend Slater. This is the place with the... What does she call it? Whatever, double something glass. Double tempered glass,
the double pane,
UV
like
rays.
UV reflective, whatever. Basically, it's a vampire hangout where they can feel the sun without burning. It's very cool, and we don't have any other places that are like that in the world, which is a bit strange, but...
Yeah,
you know.
yeah. Apart from Trevor's apartment, it's weird that not all the vampires just, like, get that built into their homes.
Trevor's apartment?
So that they can enjoy
Or
the sun at
Slater's
home,
apartment?
at least. Slater's apartment,
Yeah.
yes. It's at Slater's apartment. He eavesdrops on them, like, talking about the sun and moon curse while fiddling with the coins, and then he flings the coins at the window with super strength and shatters the glass.
Iconic.
It's such a cool move. We never see anything like it again. Maybe it was difficult to like animate the finesse with which he throws it, like a tennis player serving the ball. But like ricochets off the pavement, shatters the glass. The vampires are screaming as the sunlight like explodes in and burns them. He's so scary. At the end of the episode, Elijah compels Slater to phone Rose and lie to her that the sun and moon curse can be destroyed as long as she and the Mystic Falls gang can get the moonstone. Then he hangs up and he's like, wait, Elijah, how'd you compel me? Vampires can't compel each other. And Elijah's like, I'm a special vampire. Slater's like, because you're an original. And even in that moment, Slater's like nerdy, academia-obsessed persona seems to be like bubbling beneath the surface. Like, he's like, oh, I just love to study you and learn all your history.
Slater is us, in fact. Slater, our patron saint, who wants to know everything about how everything works in this world.
Actually, Slater, friend of the pod, hears about Mystic Falls and werewolves from Damon, and he's like, I gotta visit this place, man. And then Elijah compels Slater to stake himself in order to tie up that particular loose end. It's revealed that Jonas Martin, the new warlock daddy in town, is standing right behind Elijah and is working with him. In episode 10, The Sacrifice, Jonas Martin breaks into Elena's room, steals some of her belongings, and uses these to cast a spell on Elijah, which allows him to locate Elena. She is at Slater's apartment with Rose and Alice, Slater's human girlfriend. A trio of Klaus stands, that's what I'm calling them, a trio of Klaus stands show up to collect Elena, who has stupidly summoned them here to take her to Klaus for impulsive self-sacrificial reasons, which are mentioned in the Elena episode.
It's okay.
Damon has joined her and Rose by this point, but Elijah appears and murders one of the nameless vampires by tearing out his heart, which is his other go-to move. Elijah rarely stakes anyone. It's always decapitation and heart extraction. He was watching Once Upon a Time. He likes Regina.
He loves Regina Mills. He said, oh, your heart nonsense? It's very poetic. It's very visceral. I like it. Which is interesting given his very, like, put-together appearance, his persona. He'll, like, flip a handkerchief and, like, very neatly, like, clean up his hands. But he chooses.
I love it. I was about to mention that. I love that he's always got the handkerchief ready to go. He's like, listen, the rest of you dirty pigs are out here tearing out people's organs and then just carrying on with your day. No. Me, I like clean hands.
I'm wiping my hands off. I'll rip some hearts, I'll tear some heads, but God forbid I go anywhere with filthy hands. Please.
At the very sight of Elijah, Rose vamp speeds away. Again, I think it might still be daytime. Where is she going? Who knows? She can't leave the building. I love that Damon is confused to see that Elijah is still out and about. He's like, I killed you. Mm-hmm. You were dead. And Elijah simply responds, for centuries now. He then turns to the remaining Klaus groupies and is like, I'm Elijah. And they're like, oh, shit. Mm-hmm. Oh, sorry, I didn't know what you looked like. Whoa, okay. We were just here to take the doppelganger to Klaus because we're loyal to the originals.
Yeah, we're helping you, in fact.
And Elijah's like, cool, does anyone else know you're here? A question you should never answer with no.
I've actually told 1,000 people I'm here, and they're all around the corner waiting for me so that I can get home safely.
You gotta lie. But yeah, Elijah tells them they've been incredibly helpful and then rips out their hearts too. And then he just leaves.
Yeah.
Ignoring Damon, who was like ready to fight him. He's like, girl, I'm out. Later on, Elijah talks to Jonas and tells him that he successfully located Elena and she was with one of the brothers that killed me. So Jonas is like, oh, okay, so I guess you must have killed that brother then. And Elijah's like, no, I spared Damon. I think the Salvatore brothers would do anything to protect Elena, and for now, we need her to be kept safe.
Yes.
So it's like, what? Based on the info Rose gave us, you know she's part of a sacrifice now. What's going on? What are these motivations? It's really twisted. I love the mystery of these early seasons.
Oh,
Later seasons also have mysteries, but by then everything is so insane that they don't feel as fun.
Oh, for sure. It's always so convoluted in the back half. In these early seasons, it feels like good to be in the mystery. It doesn't feel like frustrating in a way that makes you want to pull your hair. It just makes you want to know more and makes you want to keep watching.
In episode 11, By the Light of the Moon, Elijah suddenly turns up at Elena's house, having tricked Jenna into inviting him in by pretending to be a researching historian looking for info on Mystic Falls. Elena and Elijah talk in her bedroom, and he asks her to forgive the intrusion, but promises that he means her and her family no harm. Elena asks why he saved her from being taken by the Klaus stands, last episode, and Elijah's like, I don't want you to be taken to Klaus because my goal is not to break the sun and moon curse, which is what he's still calling it at that point.
Yes.
And then he makes it clear he's no longer in Klaus's inner circle, and Elena's like, oh, so you don't know where Klaus is, and you're using me to lure him out. So Elijah makes a deal to protect her loved ones, if she stays put, and helps him draw Klaus to Mystic Falls so he can kill him. And Elena agrees, but she's like, one extra thing. Can you ask your witches to get my boyfriend out of the tomb that he's trapped in with his psycho evil ex, aka my doppelganger?
Right. And again, it's one of those moments where Elijah's like, negotiating again, Miss Gilbert? How do we keep finding ourselves here? You are fascinating.
But he acquiesces. He goes to the tomb to release Stefan, showing him that the seal has been lifted. Catherine's like, oh shit, Elijah! It's so fun seeing how scared she is of him.
Suggesting they have history.
He's like, Katerina, thank you for having the good sense to be frightened. Stefan leaves the tomb, but when Catherine tries to follow, Elijah blocks her path and compels her to remain inside the tomb because when Klaus comes, he'll want to know exactly where you are. In episode 14, Crying Wolf, Elijah is at some or other Mystic Falls social event, charming Carol Lockwood. Damon comes over, and Carol introduces them, and the two are icy towards each other. Later on, Elijah and Damon speak in private, and Damon tries to interrogate Elijah about exactly what his plans are. He's being very dumb and not as scared of this man as he clearly should be.
You say that like it's a new thing. That is Damon's like one of his core traits.
Elijah is not receptive to this disrespectful energy. He slams Damon against a wall and says, young vampires, you're so arrogant. How dare you come in here and challenge me?
These whelps don't know respect.
I love it. I love that there's this like vampire hierarchy that exists, and the originals will reference it quite frequently. I think in one of the later seasons, Cole is also like, it's not that hard to kill young vampires.
The thing is, like, beyond the actual, like, the mechanism of age and physical strength, it is a hierarchy that only they perceive from their end of history. These vampires who are finding out about them now are just like, and now who are these old losers trying to come after us? It's not a sense of reverence. It's just like, God damn, how do we kill these guys?
But Damon reminds Elijah that, hey, you can't kill me because you made an arrangement with Elena not to kill her loved ones, and I'm one of them. So Elijah just stabs a pencil into Damon's neck and says, I'm an original. Show a little respect.
Ooh.
And then he uses a hanky to wipe the blood off his hands and then gives it to Damon so Damon can clean up as well. He's like, listen, I just needed to discipline you a little bit. But now that that's done, here, clean yourself up before you get back to the party. We don't want to upset Carol Lockwood.
Please, we're gentlemen in civilized company, and I'm a guest of Miss Lockwood. Let us not be rude.
He does, however, tell Damon, I'll kill you as soon as you cease to be of use to me. And then tells him to keep Elena safe and then dips. Later on, Alaric and Damon are at Chez Salvatore talking about Elijah. Damon is still wanting to kill him. By this point, they have the white oak ash dagger because John Gilbert has come back to town. Alaric says that Elijah's one scary dude, but with nice hair.
They kind of have matching hairstyles. That's probably why you think so.
They do, you know? He looked at him and was like, who is this handsome fellow?
Yeah, kind of like the cut of his jib.
But he warns Damon to think twice before using a dagger that he isn't even sure will work to try and kill Elijah. Then they're attacked by Jules and Brady's wolf pack, who just...
Yeah. This whole
so
middle arc
this season.
is just like... And this is not me trying to get on Damon. Like I've said, I'm trying to ease up. But it really is just a lot of Damon's screw-ups in this middle arc and his stupidity getting everyone in trouble.
At this
He
point...
antagonized the wolves who are coming to attack him now. He's attacking Elijah even though a deal's been made to keep everyone safe. It's just like, what are you doing, man?
Just an unruly puppy tracking in dirt,
God.
pooping in the house. So yeah, the wolves attack them. Later on, Stevie tortures Damon while Jules interrogates him about the moonstone. Alaric is temporarily dead on the floor. This is the episode in which Bonnie magically forces Luca Martin to reveal Elijah's true intentions for Elena. He wants Klaus to sacrifice Elena, after which Klaus will be vulnerable enough for Elijah to kill. So he fully intends for Elena to die. They don't really get into the details of that vulnerability just yet. But now it's like, oh, okay, so not a friend of the MFG because we don't want Elena to die. That's the single worst thing that could happen in the universe.
In the entire world.
Elijah shows up at Chez Salvatore with the moonstone. The werewolves don't seem as wary of him as the vampires he's interacted with seem to be. And I'm like, probably because they don't know what an original is.
Yeah.
They're like, ugh, another vampire. Ew.
Let's just get rid of him because we're hot shit. And then slaughter.
He's so cool. He's like, looking for this? Puts it down on the table. He's like, go ahead, take it. So one of the nameless werewolves goes for the moonstone. Elijah intercepts him and rips out his heart. Two more wolves are like, okay, let's rush him at the same time. He tears out their hearts at the same time because he's got two hands.
Yeah.
Jules runs away because she's like, I'm not a dumb man. I know when I'm beaten.
I just realized Elijah does this exact move in the first season of the originals, and I never connected the two.
Oh, yes!
It's so good.
He's so cool. I love him. Of all the homicidal...
Violent, ancient, immortal monsters, he's the coolest one.
Stevie, the only remaining werewolf, is like cowering in fright. He's literally like crouched on the floor, and Elijah goes up over to him. He's so unserious in this scene. Elijah goes over to him and says, what about you, sweetheart? Huh?
Oh my.
And he pulls Stevie to his feet. Stevie's actor is like noticeably taller than Daniel Gillies, but Elijah's physical presence makes it so that we can totally understand why Stevie's trembling. And Elijah sarcastically asks, you want to take a shot? No? Yes? No? And Stevie shakes his head, and then Elijah punches Stevie so hard in the face that his neck snaps and he dies instantly.
Yup. So awful and cool.
He's so cool. He's so strong. He's the most powerful person in the show at this point. And we don't usually see him doing fisticuffs. He probably thinks that's a bit vulgar, but he was like, it's just a werewolf.
Might as well. It's not typically his style, but if it push comes to shove, he's the one getting out of the fight.
Elijah frees Damon from the torture trap and then coolly states that counting the time he killed the Klaus stands in the apartment and the time that Jonas was sent to save them, them from the wolves, this is the third time he's saved Damon's life. And then he takes the moonstone and leaves. At the end of his episode, Elena reveals that, no, I understood that the fine print was that Elijah was going to keep my friends alive and not me.
Right.
But that's fine.
She has clocked what we're saying about Elijah, that Elijah's very particular about his words. He said specifically, I will protect your loved ones. He was not including me, Elena Gilbert, in that protection.
And what I hadn't thought to reference when we did the Elena episode was that she's had first-hand evidence of Elijah's fine print. He pardoned Rose and told Trevor, I forgive you, and then killed him. Because I guess telling someone you're forgiving them doesn't mean that there's not still going to be punishment for their crimes.
Right. Even in that moment of terror, she was like, oh shit, I'm understanding how this guy works. I need to remember this. And good for her.
Episode 15, The Dinner Party. Jenna shows Elijah Smith around some old Mystic Falls property. Unbeknownst to her, he is searching for the site where the 100 witches were burned to death. He does tell her, however, that the ever-lauded founding families of Mystic Falls actually just moved in and appropriated land that had already been settled almost 2 centuries before by migrants from Massachusetts. He says Salem and alludes to the famous witch trials. Historical Salem, where the witch trials happened, not called that anymore.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. The Salem that is currently in Massachusetts and literally has a tourist industry that mines the witch trials for content is a different Salem that I don't think was called that in the 17th century when these witch trials happened.
Oh, okay. Fair enough.
But we will later learn in season 8 that these witches were, Beatrice Bennett and her friends, and that they were not burned at the stake, but were killed by hellfire.
Yeah. You don't know all that, but we do.
But it's interesting. This is the scene where Elijah just drops some tidbits about the universe's lore. He's like, yeah, the people who came down from Salem, and it's like, oh yeah, Bonnie's Grams mentioned the exodus of witches who ran away from the witch trials and were the actual witches. Mm-hmm. And then he says something interesting. He describes the land as having belonged to freed slaves.
Interesting.
So I don't know if Bonnie's ancestors intermarried with freed slaves in the South, or if this suggests that the African-American witches fleeing the Salem witch trials were former slaves themselves.
I mean, yeah, if it was 200 years prior, there was certainly slavery in the North. The North gets a good rap about, being against slavery, but they did slavery also.
They did. So... They just stopped sooner.
Right, exactly. Stopped asterisk. So it's certainly possible they were also enslaved. Very Tituba style, where it's allegedly you are a witch, but also you are an enslaved woman.
Elijah then says he believes the descendants of the slaves are the true keepers of American history. And I was like, okay.
Woke original
Elijah. We'll later on find out he has 2 black exes.
You know? I didn't want to be the one to say it, but of the originals, him and Cole are the ones who are an interesting variety.
Rebecca also with Marcel.
I guess all of them kind of get down. Finn was dead for 900 years, so it's not his fault. I think
Finn
given
was
the opportunity.
Dead, yeah. Klaus was knocking around with that African-American werewolf before Mikael showed up in New Orleans. Yeah.
You know. Everybody's got their piece, I guess. But we do not confuse allyship with sexual attraction.
That is true. Mm-hmm. Weirdly, in that regard, I guess Cole is the only ally.
I guess so. Well, Elijah will give his flowers for knowing this information and being let me educate you about the actual history of black folk in this area. So, praxis. And then Cole, who's actually, the Arabian witches are the ones who are doing the real cool shit. And I learned as much as I could from them. It's all right, Cole.
Yes, look at you. Klaus could never. Klaus is too busy. We'll get to it. Klaus is too busy appropriating cultures and faking art, but we'll get to that. Alaric shows up, acting somewhat territorial. Jenna leaves to get some stuff from her car, and Rick is like, hey, by the way, please don't court and then eat Jenna. She's on Elena's list of loved ones. And Elijah, sensing the vibes, is like, well, you don't have to be jealous. I rarely pursue younger women. And Rick is like, ... And Elijah says, it's a joke, Rick, lighten up. So he has a funny bone.
Just damn, I know I'm a 1,000-year-old vampire, but you don't seem to have a sense of humor, buddy. What's going on?
Damon and Alaric conspire to ambush Elijah at a dinner party they're throwing with Andy and Jenna. John Gilbert also invites himself over. When Elijah shows up, he seems somewhat suspicious of Damon, probably because Damon keeps, antagonizing him.
Who could imagine why?
But Elijah's super calm. He's just like, I'm just letting you know, if you have less than honorable intentions about how this evening is going to proceed, I would suggest you reconsider. Damon's like, no, I'm just want to get to know you. And Elijah says, that's good, because although Elena and I have this deal, if you so much as make a move to cross me, I will kill you and I'll kill everyone in this house. Are we clear? And it's like, damn. Wow, okay, we mustn't forget. Don't let the suit and the hanky confuse you.
Don't let it fool you. Also, the thing too about what happens here is that, again, about Elijah and the sort of ideals he cherishes, to invite someone into your home and then attack them is one of the greatest violations of like old-timey cultures. Of like, there's like ancient Greek cultures and I assume Viking cultures or like Scandinavian cultures based on, well, I mean, I shouldn't assume based on the story that's written where they're not yet Vikings, but at the very least, however old he is and where they're suggesting he comes from, that must also hold true because he responds.
And they've lived throughout Europe,
right?
Yeah.
The way he responds to this makes sense given that sort of historical context of like, you do not harm a guest in your home, even if they are your worst enemy. That is simply not something you do.
Yeah, in the A Song of Ice and Fire books and its TV show adaptations, that's a very big thing where it's like, even your enemy, if you invite them in, there's like this Westerosi cultural thing where you eat bread and salt. You literally take some bread, dip it in salt.
Nice.
And then it's like, there, that's the ritual. You are now in my home. I can't do anything to you, even if someone who is my superior comes to me and orders me to. I have to be like, sorry, I can't.
Right.
Guessed right. It's an honorable thing, honor-based society with all the knights and the valor and whatever.
Or the gods will spit upon my entire family bloodline if I do this. Like, yeah, it's very much a violation. Like you said, these young vampires, they don't know.
But yeah, we know how the dinner parties goes from the Elena, Damon, and Alaric episodes. The ambush is successful, somewhat. Alaric manages to stab Elijah through the heart with the dagger after they learn that vampires can't use it without dying. However, since the dagger is not left inside Elijah's heart, he eventually revives and goes off to find Elena and Stefan at her parents' lake house. Elena, who has already gotten the dagger by that time, stabs him with it and leaves it in place, effectively killing him. Unfortunately, this frees Catherine from the two. Just like she planned.
Yeah. I think another notable moment there at the cabin between Elijah and Elena, because it's the first time she uses a deal against him. She uses it to entrap him. In a moment of desperation, but it's like, I will, in the corner there's a butterfly and it's like, Elijah will remember this.
Yeah, I like it. In episode 16, The House Guest, Elijah is neutralized. Damon tries to burn up his body to get the only dagger back that they have because he's like, well, Klaus is an original. Let's use this on him. And Catherine's like, it won't work because even as a corpse, Elijah's body is indestructible.
Yep.
Catherine works with the Mystic Falls gang for a time, claiming that she can be trusted and it's because it's in her best interest to help them and that they need her because she's the only person they know who's familiar with Klaus. She points out some interesting things. They don't even know what Klaus looks like at this point, and neither do we. At this stage, the original family is truly shrouded in so much mystery. It's kind of jarring to see how well they are known when we go over to New Orleans. Like, even witches who've had mortal lifespans are like, yeah, I know all about you. I know who you are when you walk in.
That's the thing, is that like witches have the other side grapevine, and we do not know enough witches in the Mystic Falls gang to be like, we are aware of these people. Bonnie, who is truly self-taught and struggling her way through this, and her ancestors are fighting her at every turn. It's like, of course she doesn't know.
That's true. And I wonder how much of it is that Stefan and Damon didn't have their sire to help them when they turned into vampires. Catherine dipped, Stefan met Lexi, who probably avoids the less savory vampires, and Damon was too busy being emo over Catherine, so...
Yeah, it's almost like being lost from your culture, right? It's like you got separated from your family and you don't know the things you should know.
Which is something that comes up in one of our other favorite vampire shows, Interview with a Vampire. Mm-hmm. Spoilers for season 2, but when the theater nerd vampires are berating Louis and Claudia for not knowing the things they need to know, Louis is like, I don't know. Lestat didn't teach us any of this shit, man. Like,
he turned us in the middle of New Orleans and then died like a chump. Like, I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, he vaguely alluded to, the European vampires being too scary for Claudia to go off and find, but he didn't teach us the rules and the culture and all these things that you're saying are laws that we have to follow.
And honestly, now that I think about it, a lot of that is that, like, how else do you keep a control of this little nest that you've built if they have enough information to know more beyond you?
Yes.
There's also another like messed up thing about that whole family. Ugh. Lestat.
It's very Mother Gothel from Tangled.
Precisely
like, Rapunzel,
that.
the outside world is filled with evil and terror, and that's why you cannot leave this tower.
Right.
Ever.
And it's like, you leave for the first time. It's like, yes, that is true, but there is also greatness that I could have experienced that you kept from me, Mother Gothel, for your own needs.
For your own needs. That
Mother
time she's
Lestat.
your healing de-aging hair will be exploited by the masses if you ever leave. Mind you, you're the exploiter.
You're the exploiter.
The call is literally coming from inside the house. Jonas Martin casts a spell to astral project Luca into Shea Salvatore so that he can remove the dagger and revive Elijah. Luca is ultimately killed by Damon, who's like, what's this invisible force attacking Catherine and trying to remove this dagger? So Jonas goes on a vengeful rampage, but is eventually killed himself. However, not before he gives Bonnie the info that she needs to harness the power of the 100 dead witches. Thus, Elijah's witches are dead, and Bonnie is now the only person in town who can wield the magic necessary to kill Klaus. In episode 17, Know Thy Enemy, Isabel comes back to town.
Queen.
She tells Catherine that she's been able to contact Klaus by proxy. She couldn't get a hold of him, but she got hold of someone in his inner circle. And she claims that she's arranging a deal for Catherine's freedom in exchange for the Moonstone and Elena. Later in the episode, it's like, psych, Isabel actually did meet Klaus in person. She's been compelled. She manipulates Catherine into getting captured by Klaus's witch Maddox. And then she suicides by sunlight in front of her own empty grave and her daughter. That will be the name of my alternative rock band, Suicide by Sunlight.
That's not bad, actually.
So at the end of the episode, Alaric, who had also been kidnapped thanks to Isabel, has Klaus's spirit placed into his body by Maddox. It's a really cool, elaborate possession ritual. We never really get to see anything like it again. We sort of see a different sort of flavor of this kind of thing in the spin-off series. But in this show, every other time someone's possessed, we don't really see how exactly it happens. But I do like the scene of like the blood transfusion of what we assume is Klaus's blood into Alaric's body, which would explain why Klaus is still able to like use his compulsion.
All his
and
vampire
he's not just
stuff. Yeah. The substance.
The substance.
Have you ever dreamed of a slightly older, taller you?
Who can walk into homes uninvited?
Right?
Catherine, when she sees Klaus Lorick standing up, she's like, ooh, I've been caught. I've been had. After 500 years on the run, I am now at this monster's mercy again.
Yeah. There's a sense about Klaus. Because, I mean, it's what you're saying, right? They've built up Elijah all this time, and Elijah's this powerful figure, but he's present. We know him, we know his personality now, we know his strengths and his faults, and we've managed to subdue him, even if it's like very briefly in this moment. Klaus, up until this point, has just been a specter, and we've just seen... Well, have we seen Maddox and Greta up until this point, or is this the first time we see them?
We saw Maddox in the previous episode with Isabel. We haven't seen Greta yet. I assume Greta is with Klaus's real body.
Yes. This matter of like ritual and process to like bring him into Rick, and a later scene when they do the opposite, when we actually see Klaus for the first time, is just this like, it's very Apocalypse almost, which is just like Apocalypse in the X-Men comics is this figure who is very powerful, but he often has to hop bodies because he burns out the bodies he's in? What's Apocalypse's whole deal again? I can never recall why he needs to do that.
I can't remember why I know in the films there's a different reason, but I assume that's distinct from the comics.
Yeah, I think in the comics he keeps burning out like these bodies that he hops into, and it's also very Orochimaru. He's trying to find a body that is strong enough to like contain him forever, and that also he can like manifest his abilities through. And eventually he tries to get Strife, who is Cable's clone, but also self. It's very weird. But there's this sense of
I guess in that regard, Mr. Sinister is Elijah, because it's like former ally but now enemy who's also kind of evil.
Exactly that. And Maddox and Greta are his horsemen of the apocalypse. But there's this sense of like a great power who has these minions that are devoted to him. He requires all this process and ritual and pageantry because he's so ancient and powerful. It's an interesting vibe.
I've said it before, but I think it was really clever of them to draw out the mystery by having Klaus introduced through possessing Alaric, a character we're familiar with. The actor does such a good job of being incredibly creepy, but also it's like, now we still don't know what Klaus looks like. We still haven't actually encountered him. We still don't know how powerful he might be when he's in his own body. Yeah, it's lovely.
It's good.
In the 18th episode, The Last Dance, Klaus is able to use his original vampire compulsion on Catherine, and he's interrogating her about what the Mystic Falls gang has been up to. She flinches when Klaus so much as comes near to her. I find it so sort of this like satisfying flavor of fear that even though she knows Klaus is currently in Rick's much weaker body, she's still like, oh, please don't touch me. Please stay away. I'm so afraid.
Yeah, we spoke about this in the Catherine episode. For me, it's very like, there's nothing feels good about this for me. It's just like, she's been running from this man for so long and now he's got her. I need her out of there, despite everything.
I enjoy just like the portrait of being like, this was our villain. At one point, this was the worst, scariest person we know. And here she is cowering in front of a greater evil than we could have imagined.
Yeah.
Klaus is cartoonish. I love it. This season 2 Klaus is so fun.
Having so much fun.
I think he changes a bit in season 3 as we get to know him more and we learn about his vulnerabilities and his Freudian excuses. But at this point where he's just a cartoon villain and he knows he is and he's having fun, it's so much fun when each actor is playing him. For instance, when as Catherine flinches away, Klaus is like, so jumpy. Catherine's like, look, I've exhausted all my information. Stop drawing it out. Just kill me already, please. Just kill me and be done. And Klaus is like, that would be showing you a kindness. And he tells her, I've searched for you for over 500 years. Your death is going to last at least half that long. And then he hands her a pocket knife and compels her to stab herself with it. She sinks the blade into her thigh, and Klaus tells her to take it out. And so she yanks it out again, allowing the wound to heal. And then he's like, cool, while I'm away impersonating Rick, I want you to keep doing that over and over and over again. And if you get bored, switch legs. And she's like, okay, but where are you going? And he's like, I'm going to lay eyes on my precious doppelganger. And this is the thing. In the literal sense, Elena is Catherine's doppelganger, but Klaus will repeatedly refer to her as my doppelganger.
Hasn't met this girl yet.
Because she's a piece of property.
And has already claimed ownership over her. Because to him, it is understood. Yes, no, she's mine.
Yes.
By being born to your bloodline and looking like you, she now belongs to me. The way you did 500 years ago.
Yeah, the way that you did before you dared to betray me by running away and having autonomy and not wanting to die.
Insane!
Oof. And before he leaves, he kisses Catherine on the forehead. And he's like, don't look so glum, Katerina. The fun is just beginning. And tells her to stab herself again before he leaves. The Mystic Falls gang, meanwhile, have signed over Shea Salvatore to Elena in order to create a safe house that no vampire can enter without her permission. However, Elena doesn't intend to stay there all day, so she leaves to go to school. Bonnie, who's acquired the power of the 100 Dead Witches, is confident she can take Klaus down, so she's like, Elena will be perfectly safe with me. Klaus Lorik goes to school and does a pretty half-assed job of impersonating a history teacher.
It's not great.
He disses the 60s, which is what the class is currently learning about, and he's like, ugh, the 1960s were terrible, but the Beatles made them good, I guess. He accidentally lists Watergate as a 1960s event, and Elena's like, that was the 70s. He's like, oh, sorry, the years all blur together up here, and I'm like, sir, you're in a Lark's body, you're less than 40, you're making yourself sound old as hell.
What years? Crazy. Also, it's funny to think that, like, has Klaus just been in the States since the 20s, just running around?
Maybe.
That's wild.
I guess he was like, I go where Western civilization's power goes, and right now it's here. He's like the Greek gods in Percy Jackson.
I was gonna say, following the monuments of the West. Klaus was in the Civil War, in fact.
Oh, no. Gosh, I hope not. I hope not. I'm trying to think, do we get any flashbacks of him in Europe?
I mean, not in war, but it's implied he was around at the time because of Marcel, right? Because Marcel's an enslaved American.
Oh, yeah. So he was at least there in the 19th. Oh, yes. Yes. In the, we see them arrive on the shores of New Orleans in the 19th century. And Rebecca's like, we just got you from Europe. So I guess they were chilling in Europe for a while. Because Elena spoke to him, she draws his attention. And then he observes her with this possessive, hungry look that is so creepy. And it's like, calm down, Klaus. Just relax. You're looking at her like she is, I don't know, the Cullinan Diamond and you are a colonizer. I just need you to relax.
I mean, in a way, she's a very precious resource.
In the cafeteria later on, a fellow high schooler named Dana, although I don't think her name is said in this scene, she approaches Elena while Elena's sitting with Bonnie, and she's like, oh, this totally hot guy asked you to go to the 60s dance with him. And then Bonnie's like, well, tell him that Elena has a boyfriend.
Right.
I mean, she's like, okay, but like you could at least give him a chance. His name's Klaus. And there's like a scare code. And Elena's like, what did you say his name was? And she's like, yeah, Klaus. I know it's a stupid name, but I promise you he's so hot.
Which is like, it's a perfectly fine name. I think a lot of German people are called Klaus these days. So hold up, Dana. Also, the idea of like him presenting himself as, oh, this supposed hot guy named Klaus who wants to dance. It's like Klaus has no interest in being perceived as attractive to Elena or any of her friends. It's purely for the gag of it. It's purely for the joke of being like,
he's so sick. He's like, I've been watching horror films. I've been binging slasher movies.
Right.
I know how to frighten people. I'm going to test out some of these techniques.
It's so funny to me.
So Bonnie asks her, she's like, where is this Klaus? Is he here? And the girl's like,
I don't know.
Weirdly, I have no idea.
But he's really hot.
And they're like, okay, so she's been compelled. She tells Elena that, oh, Klaus asked if you could save him a dance. Isn't that so cute? And I'm like, Klaus, stop it.
Loves the high school drama.
I think she actually says if you could save him the last dance, roll credits. So, ominous. Later on, Bonnie, Elena, and the Salvatores discuss Klaus's arrival in town and the fact that he's been lurking about their school. Klaus Lorik shows up, easily entering the house without an invitation, thanks to piloting Alaric's body. And so he's therefore present when the group concocts their plans for the night.
Yeah.
They're like, yeah, we're gonna lure Klaus out and let Bonnie kill him. And then Klaus, so unsubtle, is like, well, maybe you should be a bit more wary of Klaus. He is the biggest, baddest
Can't help
vampire
himself.
around.
Can't help himself, at risk of breaking his cover, just to be like, you couldn't possibly take on Klaus.
You couldn't take him down that easily. And Bonnie's like, no, she demonstrates some of her power on Damon, which I'm like, Damon is 160 something. That's not that impressive, but
yeah, this is not a good benchmark, babe. But all right.
She's like, don't worry, I've got the strength to face an original. And Klaus is like, well, shit.
Interesting.
He seems to believe her at least. Because he goes home to Rick's place, where Catherine has been stabbing herself all day. It's horrible. Her thigh is like bloody and flushed from all the repeated wounding and healing. And Maddox is still there, and he's like, well, that witch has her magic back, so we're gonna have to kill her. Maddox, could you get on that? You know, you're older and probably stronger. Maddox is like, oh, no, she's juiced up now. She'll sense me coming from a mile away. I can't do it. But he's like, but don't worry. With the amount of magic that she's channeling in one body, she couldn't possibly use it all without dying. So you just gotta provoke her into attacking you until she's forced to, you know, overheat like an old car. And then Klaus is like, yeah, but I'm in Alaric's body. I'm not exactly durable. She wouldn't need to use that much power on me.
Maddox is like, don't worry, babe.
I'm going to cast a spell on you. I'm going to protect
I'll
you.
take care of you.
I'll take care of you.
I'll keep you safe. Licking his lips.
Those lips. He has nice lips.
Those lips.
For a white
Maddox,
man.
what are you doing with those?
So, at the dance, Klaus is skulking around, all the creepier for being a centuries-old man disguised as a high school teacher dancing amidst teenagers.
And it is not the last time he'll do it.
He comes across the girl he compelled earlier, Dana, and she's with a boy named Chad. And he's like, yeah, Dana, I need something from you. Compels her to make an announcement about a dedication to Elena from Klaus. And I'm like, Klaus, you are doing a lot.
It's a lot.
You are doing a whole lot.
The drama is starting so early.
It's like you're just there at the door. She's like, this is dedicated to Elena from Klaus. And now they're like in this dark room looking around being like, okay, so he's here right now. If he just compelled to do that, he's here. Because they don't know he's in someone's body. Damon was like, I'm betting he's not going to be 16 and pimply. And he's like looking around. It's like, there's no other adults in this room. He then also compels Chad and some of his bros to do something for him. Later on, Klaus rejoins the Mystic Falls gang after Dana's unnerving announcement. Again, no subtlety. He's like, ooh, wow, that announcement thing, that was so creepy, right, guys? Like, I'm shaking in my boots. He's like, this guy's a little twisted, huh? And Damon's like, nah, I'm not impressed. And Klaus is like, well, you. His face drops and he's like, those are some of my best moves. What do you mean you're not impressed?
I'm trying to think if like this whole vibe we're threading here is like only funny in retrospect, or if it was just as funny like watching it live. But like he is scary, right? It's very clear Klaus has like an effect. He is creating this atmosphere of fear, but at the same time, it's like, oh, he's so desperate to be perceived as a threat. It's so hilarious.
It was definitely chilling at the time, but
right.
I think the humor in his need to be seen as scary is definitely there. Later, we see Chad and his compelled friends have been instructed to rough Jeremy up. Stefan and Damon arrive in time to save him from being beaten up too badly, but the boys have also been armed with Alaric's vampire hunting equipment that Klaus had access to. Stefan stops them non-lethally and sends Damon off to find Bonnie and Elena. Unfortunately, Klaus Alaric finds them first, and he leads them into a secluded part of the school by claiming that Jeremy's been taken by Klaus. To their credit, Bonnie and Elena quickly become suspicious, and then Klaus is like, okay, fine, dropping the ruse. He's like, I just had to get away from that dance because the 60s were not my decade. I much prefer the 20s, you know, the jazz era. And they're like, the 20s? Alaric, you're like 35.
Right.
What?
And like, that's super not, well, at this point, he's like 30, actually.
Yeah, he's like,
which is kind of crazy. And that's not his vibe at all.
And Elena's like, Alaric, are you in Vervain? Have you been compelled? And then Klaus is like, okay, this is taking too long. Let me spell it out for you. I am not Alaric. And then the girls realize that it's Klaus. And they're like, oh my gosh, this is impossible. And again, I'm like, you live in a supernatural world. I don't see why possession is so impossible to you when you already know Bonnie got possessed by Emily Bennett in season 1.
Yeah, that is the thing. I was going to be like, have they seen a possession happen? Guess not. But that's a ghost possession. They understand Klaus to be a living person. So it's specifically a body transfer rather than a possession.
I guess.
Although I guess from Alaric's perspective. I don't know. But yeah. It doesn't throw me that they're stunned by this. Who was expecting it?
I just love that they were like, that's impossible.
It's impossible.
And I'm like, is it though?
It's like, well, nobody's saying that. It's certainly surprising.
Klaus is like, don't worry, Elena, I'm not here to hurt you. You're not on my hit list tonight. And he looks over at Bonnie. Bonnie attacks him, but despite the human body he's currently possessing, it doesn't do much damage. And Klaus is like, I've got a witch on my side. You're gonna have to hit me a lot harder than that. So she telekinetically flings him into a display cabinet. When I first watched this, I was like, yay, Bonnie, dial it back a bit. That's Alaric's body.
She made a decision in that moment. She's like, listen, if Alaric's gotta go to take care of this guy, then that's what we're doing. I kind of like that that's a possibility.
I guess he was probably still wearing his ring. I don't know if Klaus took it off while he was possessing him.
Rick could just die and come back. Oh, that's interesting.
And I wonder, would the dying and coming back like expel Klaus from his body? They should have tried that.
Well, presumably because of that process, he might... Well, no, they had to, like, transfer him back. They didn't just kill Rick to send Klaus back to his own body, right? So
yes,
I have to
true.
assume that's not how it would work.
Whereas later on in this universe, we'll see other people body hopping by killing their current hosts in order to go back to their own body or go somewhere else.
It's like, I guess that's how I would expect it to work, but you've not set it up like that necessarily. I don't know.
While we're on the subject, there is this thing that keeps happening this season, which we see echoes of in the originals. In this era with the Klaus possessing Alaric thing, where he keeps threatening to, if they do kill this body, just jump into someone else. He does it again later when he's possessing Tyler, and I'm like, he makes it sound as though that's a power he just has, as if he wouldn't need like a witch to do that for him or somebody to be prepped in advance.
Right.
And I'm like, empty threats or vague magic system? I don't know.
It's never expanded upon, so...
Because in the originals, there is a witch who's been body humping for like decades.
Body humping?
Body humping? Sorry. I want to say hopping and jumping at the same time. Edit. Who's been body jumping
Freudian.
For like decades, maybe even centuries. But it seems as though she preps the bodies beforehand.
Yes.
And then if someone kills her or she decides to just suicide, then there's a body waiting for her to like be received.
Yeah. So yeah, it must just be empty threats. Yeah. I don't trust Klaus from next Tuesday, so I think he was just trying to strong arm some people.
He's like, listen, my power bottom Maddox will put me into a new body.
I thought we were going to get into it. I was hinting at it earlier, and I'm like, maybe this isn't where we're going today.
I mean, that's the vibe that I get.
It really is.
When Greta shows up, I'm like, a trio? Okay, I love a bisexual trio.
Could be. Maybe she's Fujoshing, which, fair enough. Do what you need to do. I don't know what the vibe is, but it's certainly sexual.
Klaus describes her as his dance partner.
Interesting.
And I'm like, but we'll get to that. So Bonnie attacks him him, Klaus gleefully staggers to his feet and he's like, yeah, go ahead, kill Alaric. I'll just possess another body. And Elena and Bonnie run away. Damon runs into them and sends Elena to find Stefan. And then Bonnie and Damon come up with a plan to stop Klaus. Bonnie goes to face Klaus Alaric alone. He's seated in the cafeteria, like seemingly fully expecting her to come to him in that moment. Like he's just chilling there and he's like, oh, there you are.
He's luring her in, right? Like, that's the plan. His plan here is to exhaust her of her magic.
Yeah, I was surprised that he expected her to not, like, run away once she realized that Rick's body was, the target and that it was also protected. But I guess he's like, I know you honorable people, of which I am not one.
I know what I'd do, so I just figured the opposite of that.
So Bonnie attacks him with magic. Alaric's body sustains injuries, but Maddox's spell keeps preventing any permanent harm, and Bonnie begins to weaken from the overuse of her witch power. Klaus continues to provoke her, so she unleashes more of her magic. She seals herself off from Elena and the Salvatores at one point, like closes the door so that they're like helplessly watching outside as she overexerts herself and collapses, seemingly dead. But surprise! Turns out to be a ruse. Bonnie is alive and well, has gone to hide out at the 100 Dead Witches house. So as far as Klaus knows, the Mystic Falls gang is without a witch and no longer has a weapon to use against him. However, as the only weapon we do have at this point is Bonnie, who will need to die in order to kill him, Elena's like, I need a different solution. And she goes down into the Salvatore basement and undaggers Elijah.
A real man is back.
Episode 19, Klaus. Elijah revives while Elena sits nearby watching over him. I think we touched on it in the Catherine episode, which is like it's blended with the flashbacks to his time as 15th century vampire with Klaus when he met Katharina the human. But since his daggered body was brought into the house while it was technically dead, and the house was then later signed on over to Elena, Elijah does not have an invitation to be here. This is the first time we get to see this kind of a thing, this loophole in this world. We discussed it recently.
In the Caroline episode, of him getting yanked out of the house, hitting the walls, getting like bounced around, and he's like, I can't be in here.
He's just like, he's contorting and twisting, and it's like, whoa, that arch, but okay. No. He tells the lady he can't breathe. It's like, I can't be in this house. Eventually, he is able to vamp speed out of the house. Elena goes to the doorway to speak to him. He looks angry and she's like, wait, don't speak. There's vampires in the house.
Before you get all pissed, like, relax. Yes, I betrayed you, but.
She's like, I want to talk. Can I trust you? And he's like, girl, can I trust you?
So real. First your boy toy tries to kill me, and then you actually kill me.
He's like, I was daggered twice in one night, so, But she hands him back the dagger in order to show him that he can trust her, and the two of them leave.
Smart.
Meanwhile, Klaus is still at Alaric's apartment. He's kind of getting tired of Alaric's body, and tells Maddox to go and retrieve his true form. And then he tells Catherine that he is going to break the curse in a few days because the full moon is approaching. Catherine's like, you're gonna do that here in Mystic Falls? Surrounded by enemies who want to stop you? And Klaus is like, the curse needs to be broken in the birthplace of a doppelganger. If you hadn't run away and dared to defy me by saving your life in the 15th century, maybe you would have known that, Catherine. Stupid.
Right. Pack it away, buddy.
And we've discussed it before. I love how he frames this as a betrayal. It's like, she didn't betray you, she saved us.
She ran away from you, a monster trying to kill her. The endless delusion is hilarious.
It's not even like at one point she agreed to be your sacrifice and then she got cold feet. She thought you were courting her because you liked her, and then suddenly she found out, oh no, you are a supernatural monster that wants to bleed me out in a ritual. I'm running away.
It would be insane if I didn't try to run away, buddy. What are you? Which, as I've said before, is a window into how Klaus's mind works when it comes to like loyalty, betrayal, and like those sorts of concepts are very warped in his mind in a way that's like, buddy, what are we doing?
Yes. Klaus's psyche, introducing a psych like post-grad as a supporting character in the spin-off was such a good idea because boy, oh boy, does this family need therapy and psychoanalysis.
Yep.
But he does say, no hard feelings though, Catherine, since I did eventually find your birthplace and, kill your whole family. Also, by the way, compelling you to not be able to leave this place until I say so. Bye. So now she's trapped inside.
Gotta cover your bases.
Elena drives Elijah somewhere secluded to talk. He's rejuvenating with the help of a blood bag that I guess she just, either swiped before she undaggered him or she found somewhere. I don't know where she got that from. Maybe it was at her place because I guess
And they have a stash in the Salvatore house. They're always talking about
But
Damon's
did she have
stash
it when
of
she
blood
walked out?
I don't know. It might have been in her car. She might have an emergency for any of her vampire friends. I kind of like
that's
that.
fair. That's fair. That's fair. Yeah.
I also like that she still has an SUV. Like, she loves that car.
Yeah, I guess it got fixed after it was flipped at the beginning of the season.
Good for her.
Oh, that's season 1. That was season 1.
That was season 1, episode 10.
That was flipped.
So,
yeah.
they've done some work.
What if you get stopped by the cops and you just got this warm blood bag chilling in your car?
Right, because, well, I guess they keep it in cooler boxes. So maybe she's got a little cooler box in her trunk. But it is still weird to then find
it's
blood
a prop.
bags. Yeah,
It's from the Halloween store?
I'm in film school. We just, I'm transporting for the props.
Or you just be like, listen, my dad was a doctor, and this blood bag was one of the few things I have left to remember him by. Don't judge me.
My emotional support blood bag. Insane.
Oh, we're unraveling so soon, and we're only like an hour and a half.
We're an hour and a half in. Okay.
Stefan phones Elena and he's like, girl, where you at? And she's like, I'm not going to tell you that, sweetie, but I'm perfectly safe. She looks over at Elijah and begins to speak to Stefan, but for Elijah's benefit. And she's like, I have proven myself to Elijah by removing the dagger. Elijah knows I'd be incredibly stupid to betray him again. He is a noble man who lives by a code of honor. Then she hangs up.
I love that discussion, that little piece where she's telling Stefan, but like you say, it's for Elijah's benefit. And I love the image of her on the phone assuring Stefan, Elijah's just like in this tattered suit, like burnt up suit, because Damon kept trying to burn him. And he's sipping this blood bag like a Capri Sun and staring out the window like he's on a trip that's taking too long. It's so comical to me.
After she hangs up, she catches Elijah up on Klaus's arrival and what he's been up to since. When she mentions that Klaus has possessed Alaric, Elijah admits that this is apparently a favorite trick of Klaus's. So, we'll only ever see him use it once more, and at that point it's not even his idea, but canonically a favorite trick of his.
Fair enough. Like mother, like daughter, I suppose.
Mother like son.
I said what I said.
I love it! Ooh, can't wait to get the rest of the family. I have so much to say. Elijah reveals to Elena that Klaus is actually his brother. Dum dum dum. And at this point, I'm like, this is why the whole foot soldier nonsense thing was going on. I think they planned to have the originals be a much larger number. And for, I guess, Elijah to be like one of the less valuable chess pieces on the board. And then because they liked Daniel Gillies' performance so much, they were like, let's keep him on. In fact, the very fact that originals could not be killed by normal stakes was because they were like, this guy's so good, we don't want him to die after this little fight.
Yeah,
with
this
Stefan
one
and Damon
episode.
in front of Rose. Yeah.
Interesting. I kind of like that. How cool it must be to have like your performance shift the very narrative of the story. Such a feather in your cap. My God.
So flattering. And only later on did they decide that he would be Klaus's brother, which is why the whole accent discrepancy is a thing.
Is a bit interesting, yeah.
Elsewhere, Jenna returns from her self-imposed exile. Stefan rushes to the Gilbert house to protect her from the various dangers of which she is still ignorant, not the least of which is her ex-boyfriend's body being possessed by Klaus. Unfortunately, by the time he arrives, Klaus Laric is already there.
Being all weird and serial killery. Not the last time he'll do it, but later it's not
so
Klaus's
much. He's being so deliberately creepy in front of Jenna. He's like fiddling with the kitchen knife.
Supernatural.
He's like, vampires, I love vampires. So you like vampires, Stefan? Klaus is like, did you know that vampires are the oldest creatures of the night? Well,
untrue.
Except for werewolves, of course.
Yeah. Foreshadowing.
And Jenna's like, what is going on?
Foreshadowing for Jenna, who has no idea what's going on.
And eventually he goes too far. She tries to leave. He pulls a knife on her and he's like, sit your ass down.
Yeah.
So then Stefan's like, okay, enough is enough. He attacks Klaus Laric and tells Jenna to go. She runs off after he frightens her with his vampire face. Meanwhile, Elijah tells Elena that the originals are actually a family. He tells Elena that his father was a wealthy landowner in Eastern Europe, which is like, that will later on turn out to not be true.
Elijah, why you lying? What you gotta lie about? at this time.
He's like, sorry, it's been 1,000 years. I got a little mixed up. I was thinking of this show that I saw last week. He also tells her that his mother bore 7 children. Elena's like, wait, bore children? So you guys had human parents? Because I know vampires can't have kids. And Elijah's like, well, we were all human at one point. That's a long story that the writers haven't come up with yet.
Right.
But
Which smart to put off. I like that.
Yeah, considering how much gets retconned from this season, it was very wise.
Yes.
But he's like, all you need to know is that my family and I were the very first vampires in existence, and that from us, all other vampires are descended. Elijah goes to the Lockwood property for a change of clothes, and afterwards they walk around, and he tells Elena that originals cannot be killed by any conventional vampire weaknesses, not fire, sunlight, wooden stakes, or even a werewolf bite. The wood from one specific tree, an ancient white oak tree, could kill them. But don't get your hopes up, we burned it to the ground way back then, so it's gone. And Elena's like, oh, that's where the ash for the daggers comes from. Okay, so why does Klaus want to break the sun and moon curse if he's not even vulnerable to sunlight? Like, even without a daylight ring, he won't die. And Elijah's like, oh, girl, that's fake.
Yeah.
No, the sun and moon curse, that's not real.
Yeah, sorry, fooled you all. Fooled thousands of years of history.
He's like, no, the real curse is one placed on Klaus himself. And then he reveals the truth of Klaus's hybrid werewolf-vampire nature, the result of his secret werewolf paternity. This curse keeps Klaus's werewolf side dormant, although unfortunately not dormant enough that the silver daggers won't work on him, which, you know, we've discussed that nonsense ad nauseum. But
It's a
this
bit
is the scene in which he
weird.
mentions it.
Yeah.
His exact words are, when a werewolf is wounded by silver, it heals.
And it's like, okay.
The white oak ash only works in tandem with a silver dagger, so you see the conundrum. And it's like, what?
What does that mean? All of you presumably heal from silver, so what's
And werewolves presumably heal from other substances as well,
Right.
if they're not killed.
So I guess nothing should work.
I guess the only thing that would work would be like wolf's bane mixed with a white oak ash.
Right.
And then that would kill him, because that's the werewolf's weakness.
A petrified stake of wolf's bane that's bound with the ashes of the white oak would work. Maybe that, then I'd be like, okay, this means something. But no, silver heals. Promotes healing, I guess? I don't know.
For years, the fandom just assumed that was what it meant. It's never, ever elaborated on. They refused to give us that satisfaction. They're like, it heals. That's all you need to know.
That's all you need to know. All right, well, I guess it's nonsense.
Because when Damon stabbed Mason, he healed. And I'm like, yeah, but he would have healed if Damon had stabbed him with iron or copper or anything else.
You know, like...
All that scene proved was that silver wasn't a weakness of werewolves.
Not that it's a strength.
Boosting your stats by holding a weapon of silver.
Silver gives you +1 constitution.
Yeah, he's like, this is the curse that Klaus actually wants to break. The curse sealing his werewolf side away. Me and Klaus concocted the myth of the sun and moon curse in order to motivate the two warring species of werewolf and vampire to compete to find the ingredients that we needed to break it, i.e. the moonstone and the doppelganger. Elena briefly leaves Elijah to go deal with the Jenna situation, but she promises to come back. And he's like, girl, your promises mean nothing until you keep them. But go, we'll see if you come back. I'm giving you one last chance. She does come back, thankfully.
Yeah, I like that he does give her that chance. I like a lot of, like, every scene that's Elena and Elijah is just so good. It's some of my favorite scenes from these early seasons. They just have such an interesting, like, bond. It's just like, despite the numerous betrayals, he's like, you know what, fine. I'm giving you this one last chance. Prove yourself to me. And she does. She's like, I'm back as I promised. Let's keep this thing going.
Way more lenient with her than he ever was with Trevor.
You
I guess
know?
it helps to have Tatia's face.
And he knew Trevor longer. Just like, wow.
Trevor's like, I did one thing wrong. I was in
Wasn't
love.
even my fault, to be very clear.
I was tricked.
I was fooled. Bamboozled, even.
I was tricked by the same person who fooled you, but yeah, you are judging me. It's not fair. Ma'am, I wasn't the only one.
I wasn't the only one, ma'am.
You've always said he clearly has a soft spot for Elena, and I'm like, yeah, it shows. You know who Elijah never speaks to? Not once. Caroline.
It's so true. It's so true. In the end of season 3, it's implied that they're all going together somewhere. She says his name is like, we're going to the space with Elijah, and it's like, have you met the man? I don't think So,
She met him at the Mikaelson ball that happens in season 3, I guess.
they crossed paths.
But yeah, Elijah is like, the reason that vampires and werewolves have been at war is because Klaus's supposed father, when he learned that Klaus had been begot by another man, took revenge on his unfaithful wife by slaughtering her lover and his entire family.
Yeah.
At this point, Elijah says the entire family. Later on in season 3, when Rebecca tells the story, she'll say the entire village.
Yeah,
So I don't
like
know what we're
everybody.
supposed to gather from that. Or at least she says half the village.
I mean, that would be the entire family, right? In a lot of cultures, your village is your family.
Yeah, but I'm just like, it seems canonically that the village was divided into these Nordic people who came here, and then these werewolves, some of whom were white.
All that nonsense that comes later in this moment, frankly. But I know we differ in opinion there.
But Elijah warns that because Klaus's biological relatives are werewolves, if he unlocks his werewolf side, he will be able to be what no one else has ever been, a true hybrid. And that he would sire a new race of werewolf-vampire hybrids that would endanger not just vampires, but everyone in the world. He also claims that the quote-unquote witches are the ones who cursed Klaus. This will also later turn out to be untrue. I'm like, no, that was your mama.
That's true. A witch, but nonetheless.
He's like, the witches are servants of nature. They couldn't abide by this abomination, so they cursed him. And I'm like, no, why are the witches in it? No. Elijah says that if Klaus breaks the curse, he will turn into a werewolf for the first time, and during this transformation, he will be weak enough to be killed by a witch without that witch dying herself. And then lastly, he tells Elena, oh, by the way, I found a way to save the life of the doppelganger during the sacrifice. And Elena's like, because you are yet another person who was in love with Katerina Petrova. To which he says, it's a common mistake, I'm told.
Oh, so much sadness in that.
You know?
Like, how much did that form? I mean, he was already, 400 at that point? But it's like, how much did that sort of shape your vibe going into the future of that? It's a shame.
Yeah, maybe that's why he likes Elena so much. He's like, a person who doesn't just keep lying and betraying constantly. Like, when she is deceptive, it's always to help other people and rarely just because she's
rarely to save
slipping
herself,
away like a
rarely
Slytherin.
to get away. Yeah, it's like in the service of goodness.
Elena and Elijah return to the Salvatore house, and she explains the new deal to the Salvatores. Stefan accepts it. Damon is pissy. At the end of the episode, Maddox and Greta return Klaus to his real body, and Klaus greets Catherine in her native Bulgaria.
Mm-hmm.
This episode also has all the flashbacks where we see Klaus and Elijah being brothers, bosom
in the
buddies.
14th, 15th century.
Also him him watching as Klaus pretends to court Catherine and trying to deny the fact that he's falling in love with her himself. And he's like, I do not believe in love, Katerina. And she's like, no, that's too depressing and emo. How can you not believe in love? No, don't be boring.
But the dynamic being so quickly set up, which honestly does, in a way, even though as you've described, it's a meta thing that happened because they wanted to keep Elijah on as a character, it does make sense of the whole, like, why do people think Elijah is Klaus's foot soldier? Because Elijah is this brother who seemingly at the time, and up until the point wherever they fell out, was so invested in sticking by his brother's side and would do a lot of what Klaus asked, even though we come to learn Klaus is younger and they're actually far more evenly matched. It's that Elijah is a family man and wanted to keep them together. Like, he would go around doing Klaus's bidding because he wanted to make his brother happy, which in itself is another tragedy. Very much a parallel for another pair of brothers that exists in present day.
Except in this instance, I can appreciate the older brother feeling like he needs to clean up the younger brother's messes instead of vice versa.
Yeah. The age does put a different spin on it.
Episode 20, The Last Day. Elijah relays the info about Klaus and the real curse to Stefan and Damon, and he describes how the sacrifice will take place. A witch will harness the power of the full moon as it sets to unbind the curse sealed within the moonstone. Klaus will then sacrifice a werewolf, the creature he was born as, and then a vampire, the creature he was turned into, before drinking the blood of the doppelganger until she dies. Elijah produces an elixir, which he says has resuscitative properties, and will resurrect Elena after she dies during the sacrifice. He tells him that he had originally acquired it 500 years years ago for Katarina when she was to be Klaus's sacrifice, but she fled and turned into a vampire before he had a chance to offer it to her. Damon is like, a 5-century-old potion? How do you know that's going to work now? And Elena's just like, listen, I'm choosing to put my faith in it.
It's like, before this, I was just gonna straight up die, so I think I'll take the magic potion, Damon. It's like, I don't think magic potions have expiry dates.
Damon's like, we don't have to let you die. Bonnie can kill Klaus without you dying in the sacrifice. And she's like, well, then Bonnie will die, and that's not an option for me. And Damon's like, ugh.
I would gladly let Bonnie die to keep you alive.
I think he literally says, I'll write her a great eulogy.
God.
Damon.
Insufferable.
Gosh. Later on, though, Elijah admits to Elena, when they're on their own, that there's a chance the elixir won't work. He's like, I don't want to mislead you. And Elena's like, no, I know the chance I'm taking.
Right.
Alaric shows up at the house, and he's like, Klaus released me so I could deliver a message to you. The sacrifice will be happening tonight.
Yeah.
Damon being Damon force feeds Elena his blood so that she will be guaranteed to come back as an in-transition vampire after she dies in the sacrifice. Afterwards, Elijah tells Damon that they won't be needing the elixir anymore as feeding Elena vampire blood has rendered its properties useless. And he's like, I'm not going to stick around for the drama that's going to fall out. When you see Elena and Stefan, tell them that I'm going to be back before nightfall and we'll proceed as planned. And Damon's like, don't you judge me. We both know that elixir wouldn't have worked anyway. And Elijah tells Damon, you know, you talk a good game, Damon, but you don't actually know anything. And
yes! I was like, the first person to clock his T this season, and he's needed it so badly. This season especially, Damon moves around like he knows things and he doesn't know anything. He's like, Elena will hate you forever for this.
Yes.
And forever is such a long time for a vampire, now that you've ensured she will come back a vampire.
Yep.
It's my favorite interaction of this.
Klaus shows up in the Mystic Grill and meets Damon and Rick. Damon, who has never seen him before, immediately guesses who he is, and Klaus tells Damon that he's aware that the Salvatores are in love with Elena. He words it as, I've heard you two fancy my doppelganger. And again, I'm like, she's not your doppelganger.
I saw you eyeing my timepiece. Yes, it is a Rolex. Thank you very much.
If I was captain, I'd be like, if anything, she belongs to me and I don't even want her. So I don't know why you think that you can just lay claim to my lookalike.
She's my flop descendant. I don't know why you're acting like you can just come up and claim her.
She's my flop descendant. You killed my cool descendant the other day by making her suicide by sunlight.
So now I'm working with what I've got, and I need you to shut up.
But he warns Damon not to be stupid and interfere with the sacrifice tonight. Damon tries to broach the idea of Klaus postponing the ritual until the next full moon, because he's now regretting forcing vampire blood into Elena's system. Klaus is like, you're joking. He is joking, right? Like, he looks over at Rick, and Rick is like, nah, fortunately not. And Damon's like, come on, man. Like, you've already got everything you need. Elena's not going to run away. What's another month of waiting in, like, the grand scheme of things? Klaus is like, okay, listen here. I have all of my ingredients for the ritual, and it will be happening tonight. If you want to live to see tomorrow, you won't screw it up. And then he leaves. So scary.
He is a force. And I mean, at this point, well, from the point the transfer happened, being played by Joseph Morgan, who, as we said, on the shorter side, does not at all hinder the magnitude of his presence. He is very imposing and unsettling.
He has this lovely ability to shift between this charming face that he puts on, even while making threats, that can be unsettling, but also this like cold blank stare when he's livid. And you know that, okay, you've pushed Klaus too far, you need to stop.
That's exactly right. You especially see it when he's trying to be all jovial and somebody either says something that is a bit too like clocky or reveals that they've done something to mess up his plan.
Oh, yes.
And that's when the shift happens most clearly, and you see like, oh no, oh, there's something sinister in there. Ooh, those eyes are dead. What's going on?
Damon goes to Catherine to ask for some help in delaying the sacrifice. To Damon's surprise, Catherine reveals that she is not the vampire who will be sacrificed tonight. Klaus has copied her plan of using Caroline and Tyler as his vampire and werewolf ingredients. So Damon leaves, and then Klaus comes back to Rick's place to find Catherine making coffee. By this time, Damon has already slipped her the vervain, and he's immediately suspicious of her. And I wonder how consistently vampires' sense of smell has been portrayed in this show, because very rarely do vampires seem to be able to like track people, supernatural or otherwise, by scent
smell?
alone
No.
in this show. And Damon had already been to Alaric's apartment once before with Andy Starr to give Catherine the vervain, but at that point Klaus was in Alaric's body, so wouldn't have had super senses. And now Klaus is in his vampire body and has met Damon. So I wonder if maybe he walked in and was like, why does it smell like Salvatore in here? What's been going on?
Why does it smell like expensive cologne that's covering self-loathing and regret? I think it's that he saw that Catherine was partying, and it was just like, what reason do you have
This
to
isn't
be
the one where she's partying. I think this is the one where she's just making coffee. She parties right after she gets the vervain when he's still in Rick's body.
Oh, weird.
Yeah, in this one, she's just making coffee and he comes in.
Weird.
And he's like,
Something's off.
what have you been doing? And she's like, making coffee. Do you want some? And he vamp speeds over to her and grabs her by the throat and compels her. And he's like, what have you been doing?
That's so weird. I would have sworn it was the partying party. He shows up and there's like alcohol line.
I always used to get those scenes confused, yeah. But
Wow, it's like an auntie in a Nigerian movie where they see a woman and they're like, you're pregnant. From nothing but like looking at their eyes. It's like, girl, how?
he looked at it and he was like, your energy. I know you've been you're hiding something from me. That parent that comes home after you've just tidied the house and they're like, you just finished cleaning this thing. You're like, what? No!
Things look a little too
How do
clean
you
in
know
here.
that? But he's like, I'm not so easily convinced. Could you take off your daylight bracelet for me and give it to me? And Catherine reluctantly hands it over and he's like, cool, go over and stand in the window in the sunlight. And she's like, but I'll burn. And he's like, you don't have a choice. So she has to keep up the ruse. And she pretends to be compelled, screams as she stands burning in the sun. And then Klaus is like, okay, you can stop. And she vamp speeds back into the shadows. And he's like, guess I was wrong. And then he says, all right, I need you to do something for me. After their day out, Stefan and Elena return to the Salvatore house in the evening. Klaus is waiting for them in the driveway. He's so silly. He's standing there like a restless prom date. And he tells Elena, you had me all nervous. He's like, I was worried you'd gone and done something stupid. And then he says, you ready, my dear? And I'm like, so you are not taking her out for the evening. You are leading her to her death. And it's not like she has a choice.
Well,
why are you acting this way?
In his mind, this is a last dance. He's giving her certain comforts and certain ceremony before she is to go out in his purpose.
So charming, so cordial as he leads you to your demise.
Yeah, he is her death, extending a hand as they dance for the last time. He has ideas of himself that are like very self-inflated, in my opinion, which is fun.
He's such a dramatic villain. I love him. Elena says she's ready. Stefan gets cold feet at the last moment and refuses to let her go. And Klaus advises caution. He's like, there's no reason for you to die as well. Elena's like, no, there's no need for anyone else to get hurt. She kisses Stefan goodbye, tells him to close his eyes, and Klaus vamp speeds her away. Klaus returns to Alaric's apartment after dropping Elena off at the sacrifice site in some quarry. Catherine is sulking and bored, and he's like, where's Maddox? I should have heard from him by now. Catherine's like, I don't know. By this point, Damon and Matt have already killed Maddox.
When your DL trade gets taken out and you don't even realize. Oh,
this was wild. In a throwback to what life was like in 2010, we see Klaus take out his sliding phone,
his
the one that you flip
chatterbox
horizontally
slide.
and slide it, and then sync it with a Motorola laptop.
Yep.
I didn't even know Motorola laptops were a thing. I haven't heard about Motorola since like Vodacom was blue and Cell C was red. That's how far back that was. There is a video feed showing a woman writhing and crying out in pain. Damon comes in and tells Klaus he will now be forced to postpone the ritual because Damon has freed his werewolf and vampire and killed his witch. Klaus is unfazed and tells Damon that he knew one of the Salvatores would try to stop him tonight. It was just a 50-50 guess as to which one. And he tells Damon, you know, the nice thing about werewolves is they tend to run in packs. And he turns up the volume on the video feed and shows Damon that the woman screaming on camera is none other than Jules, who had come back to town with Tyler because of, what was it? Mayor Lockwood's Great Fall.
I love how much you like that joke.
Oh, it's hilarious. Klaus smugly tells Damon that you don't spend 1,000 years, and I think this is the first time 1,000 years is used as like the reference of how much time they've been alive. I don't think I heard it before then, but maybe I missed it. But he says you don't spend 1,000 years planning for something without having a backup. And he explains that Jules is his backup werewolf in place of Tyler, that he has a backup witch in place of Maddox, Greta, and that he has a backup vampire in place of Caroline. Damon assumes Klaus means him, but he's wrong again.
Yeah.
Damon wakes up after being knocked out by Klaus, and Catherine tells him that Klaus has gone to do the sacrifice. She also admits that Klaus made her lure someone out to be his backup vampire. At the end of the episode, we see that it's Jenna. Klaus has turned her, and she's in transition. Episode 21, The Sun Also Rises. As Jeremy and Bonnie pour through all these grimoires trying to find a way to save Elena from vampirism, Elijah speaks to Stefan and Alaric outside. Elijah describes the order in which the sacrifices will be killed, and he says that after Elena's death, Klaus's transformation will be triggered, and during this werewolf transformation, he will be vulnerable enough for Bonnie to deliver him to the very brink of death with her magic, without killing herself, and then Elijah will finish him off. Damon calls the group to tell them that Klaus has taken Jenna to be his vampire sacrifice. In the quarry where the sacrificial ritual is going to take place, Elena tries to comfort the newly vampiric Jenna, and Greta brings jewels. Elena begs Greta to put a stop to this, as she's a witch, and witches are meant to maintain the balance of nature. And Greta says, "My duty is to Klaus and the New Order." Whatever that means.
Yeah,
I assume she means the ominous, nebulous plans for siring a new master race of hybrids that Elijah alluded to Klaus having. We will never find out her motivations.
Yeah, which is a shame because it's like she's such an integral, well, not her herself, right? Which is also the biggest shame from a gender perspective is that like we spend a lot of this season with the Martin father and son. Their entire motivation is getting back Greta. And we get to Greta and she's like, well, that was foolish because I had my own shit going on. I wasn't snatched. I was voluntarily with Klaus. Then we get this single line and we never expand upon why Greta was so enamored by Klaus, why she chose to abandon like these ideals of witchcraft and to run along with him, what her position in these future plans looked like. None of that. Because seemingly and quite obviously, Klaus wasn't all that attached to her because both her and Maddox die in this season. You never hear him mention them again. You never hear him go after the Mystic Falls gang for killing either of them. So they weren't that important to him, but clearly he was
like
very
my
important
girlfriend
to
and my
them.
boyfriend. What were their names?
Replaces both of them very quickly with Stefan and Caroline. So it's like, on their end, why were they so focused? For Maddox, I've said this before, it makes sense Maddox would follow a guy like that. For Greta, it's far more interesting, but it's never elaborated on.
Yeah, a mark of how witches are treated in this show, of how POCs are treated in this show.
Black women, especially.
I like to imagine that Greta maybe was snatched, but then in like a sort of dark side sort of way. He was like, now that you're my prisoner, let me corrupt you and convince you that actually my plans for world domination are good. And I understand you and your power better than anyone else could. Join me. Apocalypse, like you say. He enlisted to be one of his horsemen.
That's fair. That's fair. But like, how would he do that? He can't compel her. He could overpower her physically.
Not like mind control. I meant more like proper psychological tricks.
But that's
like
what I'm
maybe...
saying is like, how would he get her in the first place? She's a witch, you know? It's like...
I mean, vampires occasionally overpower witches. You just got to be quick enough to like knock them out.
It's true. But then once they're awake, boom, magic.
Gag and bind her.
Yeah.
Ask Maddox to put a spell on her that renders her powerless while you speak to her and say, hey, why are you letting these men boss you around? I should boss you around.
I should boss you around. Me, the man who kidnapped you.
Like, don't be boring and follow all this. Because like the little we learn about the Martins, at least through Jonas and Luca says that, oh, his father has all these grimoires because it's like their family's history. And Bonnie's like, these can't all be from your family. And Luca's like, well, my dad says we're all family. Like, all witches are interconnected and bound by this code. And I'm like, maybe Jonas had a bit of like a strict Gemini coven adjacent upbringing, and Greta was like, I want to be free. I want to break the rules. Klaus will let me be free.
I guess, but from what we see of him and Luca, it doesn't seem like oppressive. He does seem strict as a dad, especially like as a black dad. You know, we have that experience, but it's like, it seems...
Gay, sometimes daughters and sons are raised with different rules.
That's also
Who
true.
knows?
That's also true. I just wish we got anything that alluded to that.
Yeah. All we get is that her duty is to Klaus and the New Order. And I was like,
all right.
Okay. Hail Hydra, I get it.
Right. It's like... To what end?
Like, you're a witch. Why are you even in this business? This is vampire and I guess werewolf business. It's got nothing to do with you.
It was like, was she seduced by dark magics? Did that fit this whole vibe? I don't know. I want to know. Give me the Greta Diaries.
But Klaus shows up as she's saying that, and he's like, it's nice to know I still have a dance partner. And I'm like, okay, so I guess your other partner.
You know, your boy is gone, but I guess you got your little girl here, so you're okay.
He then addresses his 3 sacrifices, and he's like, hello, my lovelies. Are we ready? I was like, why? Stop this.
That's what I'm saying. His perception of the situation is so like, no, this is all chill and cool, guys. You're all gonna die for me and my plans, and we're gonna have a great time.
He's like, I'm such a gentleman. I respect women. Actually, pin in that. I'll come back to that in a second. Because Jules continues to scream in pain because Greta has cast a spell to slow her werewolf transformation, so she remains in human form. Klaus tells Greta that he has the moonstone. Before handing it to her, he's like, I spent 500 years searching for it. Kind of hate to part with it. But Greta takes the stone and tells Klaus that the moon is past its apex, so they can begin. And she's like, you remember everything you need to do? And Klaus is like, I remember. I'm like, oh, he's been rehearsing these lines and
in the mirror every week.
the stage blocking every single night.
Hitting his marks, getting every line.
He's like, I know my cues. Do you know yours? Greta places the moonstone on the altar. It seems to like combust, and she begins to chant her incantation. Jules tells Elena that everything she did was to help Tyler, which isn't 100% true, but whatever.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, you were using him, and you wanted to help yourself break what you thought was a werewolf curse.
That's true. But she does help Tyler. She did have a connection to him through Mason. I appreciate that much.
Yeah, but not everything you did. I'm like, you were gonna... Klaus then walks over to her and is like, shall we? Still acting like this is a dance and he's just this suitor. Greta lowers the flame barrier that's been trapping Jules. Jules' eyes flash gold and she tries to super speed at Klaus, but he easily knocks her on her back and rips her heart out, killing her. Elsewhere, Alaric comes to tell Jeremy that Jenna's been snatched and is going to be sacrificed. Bonnie speaks to Stefan and Elijah outside. Elijah tells them that Klaus took Jenna as punishment for Damon's meddling. Go figure. So Stefan's like, I will offer myself as a replacement vampire instead. Elijah and Stefan speak alone, and Elijah commends Stefan on his honor. And Stefan's like, yeah, but what about your honor? You know, I've wanted to kill my own brother many times, but I've never actually done it.
Yeah.
Will you really be able to kill Klaus? Elijah is like, listen, Stefan, Klaus isn't my only brother. I had parents and several siblings. I had a family. But over the centuries, Klaus hunted them down one by one and killed them, presumably with other daggers. And then he scattered their neutralized bodies across the seas where they could never be found. This description of his family and their fates will only turn out to sort of be true, and even less so in season 3. Because canonically, as it stands, he's talking about Finn, Cole, and Rebecca, and I'm like, well, Klaus didn't hunt Finn down. He left the dagger in Finn.
True.
So that means it's just Cole and Rebecca. So the majority of your family was not hunted down by Klaus. I guess Esther, but she's not one of the ones who was scattered in the ocean. But whatever, it's fine.
It's fine. Maybe that's what Klaus just told him. Although I guess every time we go back to a period where they're just like kikiing and hanging out, it just makes this less and less logical.
Wait, but also at this stage, Elijah doesn't know that Klaus killed Esther. So in Elijah's mind, it's like, Michael's alive. Esther was killed 1,000 years ago. Finn had a dagger left in him. Klaus has only daggered Cole and Rebecca.
His whole family.
I guess leaving the dagger in Finn and forbidding anyone else to take it out counts as daggering by proxy.
Certainly.
Meanwhile, back at the sacrifice, Elena begs Klaus to spare Jenna because she doesn't want to leave Jeremy with no family. Stefan shows up some distance away on a cliff. Klaus vamp speeds up to meet him. Stefan is like, listen, I want to take Jenna's place. And Klaus is like, ooh, I don't know. I rather appreciate the symmetry of 3 women, 3 goddesses sacrificed at nature's altar.
God, he fancies himself so poetic.
I don't usually hear about goddesses being sacrificed. Usually it's mortals being sacrificed to gods. Klaus is a fake feminist. That was my pin. I'm like, he's like, I love women, I support women. I'm like, really?
Sacrifices 3 of them at the altar to show his appreciation and love for them. Of course. Wild.
Fake feminist Klaus Mikaelson.
And listen, there's an axis of this, like I've said many a times before, and we're going to get into it, especially in season 3, Klaus and the homosocial, homoerotic, homo-flexible, whatever you want to call it, vibe that's going on with him. The extractive nature he has when pertains to women still works in that reading that I have of him, that in the like queer energy that he kind of puts out somehow. Because listen, gay men and their relation to women a lot of the time.
Klaus is one of those queer men who goes a bit too far. He thinks, I'm with the girlies. I can't be sexist. And it's like, hold on.
Sir, you are
a
sacrificing them at
man.
the altar.
It's like, I can't be misogynistic. I'm gay.
It's like actively killing them.
On the ground below, Elena instructs Jenna to use her new vamp hearing to eavesdrop on Stefan and Klaus. Jenna hears Klaus say, yeah, I've heard about you, on the tail end of a sentence. That will become important later on in the next episode. But Stefan tells Klaus to just make the trade. Klaus and Stefan come back down to the quarry, and Elena is torn. Klaus mocks her predicament, saying that she has all this talk about preserving family, and here her boyfriend is, granting her wish. Klaus waves a stake between Jenna and Stefan and asks Elena who it's gonna be. Elena refuses to choose, and Klaus is like, nah, it's fine. There was actually no choice.
Yeah.
Stabs Stefan in the back, snaps off a piece of the stake, so he's like injured and unable to remove the wood and heal. And then he turns to Elena and says that he has other plans for her boyfriend and he wants him alive. He snaps Stefan's neck, and then he says, whenever you're ready, Greta. And Greta drops the flame barrier around Jenna. She vamp rushes at Greta, bites her in the neck. But before Jenna can do any lethal damage, Klaus just vamp speeds over, yanks her off, staking her in the back, and then he drops her to the ground.
Yeah.
It's so sad. It takes longer than I remembered it taking.
Oh, yeah. It's a while.
Gosh, it's a while.
He takes his time.
So Klaus flips her over and stakes her through the heart, killing her. The ritual continues. Greta lowers the barrier on Elena, and Klaus walks over to her and he's like, it's time, and offers her his hand. Elena gives him this look of utter disgust, and then stands up on her own and brushes past him without taking his hand.
Respect.
And I'm like, yes, because I will not let you lead me to my death.
Right.
This was always my choice, actually.
I will walk towards it of my own volition. Thank you very much. I love that. Oh, Elena.
She's like, you haven't been here all season, but I've been saying I will die for these people. And unfortunately, I wasn't able to die for Jenna, so screw you for that. But I'm not going to let you think that you're in control.
Right.
She walks over to the altar, where Jenna and Jules' corpses are still lying. I had never noticed that.
Yeah.
They're like on the altar.
It's really messed up.
Gosh.
People forget about this sacrifice.
You know-
It's really bad.
That's why I could never be like, oh, Klaus, my sweet broken baby bird, who's actually quite nice, guys.
I think...
Never me.
We're going to get to that in season 3, but I think up until this point, Klaus is a really, really brilliant character as a villain because he works so well.
Yes.
He's
Such
so
a great villain.
Terrifying and so deplorable. It's crazy.
Monstrous. It's when you turn around and then ask us to care about and sympathize with him that it gets tricky.
Yeah.
Empathize, rather, to be like, yeah, I see where you're coming from. Shame.
Tricky is the word.
And then also, you're a perfect romantic pairing for
That's
one
the one
Harley.
where it loses me. Because I'm like, the first one, maybe you could swing me. But that second one, buddy, I don't know.
And Klaus, ever the Delulu villain, comes over to Elena, takes her face in his hands tenderly, and earnestly says, thank you, Elena. As if she's doing him some nice favor that she volunteered to do. She just looks at him with all this venom and says, go to hell. So he sinks his fangs into her neck and drinks her to death.
Yeah.
And after her body falls to the floor, Klaus is like, I can feel it. The transformation starts. His bones begin to snap and twist. His eyes turn gold. And then Bonnie appears.
Yeah.
Like a boss.
It's one of my favorite scenes.
Oh, it's so good. Casting a spell and attacking him with all the might of 100 witches. Klaus is genuinely stunned for once. He is so gagged. Like, Greta tries to intervene, but Damon appears behind her and kills her with a neck snap before she can do anything. He walks over to Stefan and yanks the wood out of his back so he can heal. And Klaus is just on the floor, gooped and gagged by Bonnie's presence. He's like screaming in agony. Stefan tells Damon to take Elena's body and leave, but he says that he's going to remain there until Klaus is dead.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yes. Bonnie finishes her spell, and Elijah arrives. Klaus is also surprised to see him. I guess he had no idea Elijah had been undaggered.
Yeah, I'm curious how long they haven't been in touch. They don't really clarify when they fell out, but that's just kind of like, whoa.
And Elijah's like, hello, brother. Ooh. Which harkens back to Stefan and Damon's first scene in season 1. I love it. He thrusts his hand into Klaus's chest and grabs his heart. And he's all like dramatic and ceremonial. He's like, in the name of our family, Niklaus, and prepares to kill him. And then Klaus is like, wait. I didn't actually dump our family's like bodies in the ocean. And this shocks Elijah enough to give him pause.
Yeah.
And Klaus swears that their bodies are safe, but warns that if Elijah kills him, he'll never find them. Stefan urges Elijah not to listen to Klaus. Klaus gives Elijah his word that he will take him to his family. Bonnie warns that if he doesn't kill Klaus, she will kill them both herself. And Elijah's like, just pointing out you'll die in the process. And Bonnie's like, I don't care.
I'll do it. And what?
Elijah gives one last look at Stefan and Bonnie and he's like, genuinely, I'm sorry. And then he grabs Klaus and Bam speeds away. And they're like, damn it, we were so close.
Only time I think in this show that Elijah actively goes against his word. And it's especially interesting that it's because of something that Klaus says and something that Klaus is fooling him about. It's his big flaw in a similar way that Damon is Stefan's big flaw. Is that like, no matter how much you know about this man, you are always beholden to their games. Sucks.
Yeah, no fine print this time. He was just like,
I'm screwing you over.
I guess that's why he apologized. He actually said, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Don't mean jack and shit, man. This is messed up.
Episode 22, As I Lay Dying. This is an interesting scene. So Klaus wakes up naked in the woods. That's fun, but it's not why he's interesting.
All right.
The sun is shining, so it's clearly way past moonset.
Oh, wow.
Elijah approaches him with some fresh clothes and tells him he's been busy. And Klaus is like, that was amazing.
Euphoria.
As though wolfing out was the greatest experience of his life. Spoiler, he will never do it again. Ever.
Which is weird, right? Seeing as he enjoyed it this much, it's weird he never turns again.
Never,
Not
ever.
really.
I once read a fan fiction. I didn't finish it. Back when I think season 3 hadn't started yet, or it was like in the middle of like early season 3 episodes. Catherine working together with the Salvatores and theorizing that maybe in wolf form, Klaus was vulnerable to death.
Interesting.
And I was like, that wouldn't really make sense, but it might at least explain why he doesn't turn. The reason she was saying this, she was like, he went through all this effort to become a hybrid, and he's never become a werewolf since that first night. Like, he's never turned into an actual wolf. Like, why do you think that is? Also, why was he weak during the transformation? And that's when Elijah was like, we can kill him now. I didn't finish the story.
Sure.
I guess once I watched the rest of season 3, I didn't feel like going back.
I do think it's an interesting conceit where it's like, because of the werewolf transformation, like biologically and magically you are becoming this one thing. Maybe you lose the vampire side of things when you transform into a wolf, and through that you lose the immortality for the period in which you are a wolf. I think that might be something you could work with if you wanted to go there.
Perhaps. It's giving, what's that D&D thing where you become something else, but then it affects your stats?
Polymorph.
Polymorph.
Yes, the polymorph spell. You physically can become something larger and more beefy, but you lose your mental stats, I believe. You gain the mental stats of the thing you transform into.
Oh, what's the one that affects like your armor class and stuff like that?
That too, yeah, as part of polymorph. You gain all the aspects of like the thing you turn into. So AC, HP, physical stats, that sort of thing. Saves and checks and stuff.
Maybe that person was a D&D fan. And they were like, hey, Klaus turns into a werewolf and suddenly he's a werewolf.
He has the vulnerabilities of a werewolf. You can be stabbed and killed.
But I'm fine with it the way it is. The hybrid nature as it stands is one of the magical things in this world. And I'm like, yeah, this feels consistent and it makes sense.
Wild shape is what maintains the mental stats, so polymorph doesn't. Sorry, I just needed to close that loop in my head.
It was wild shape versus polymorph.
Yes.
Klaus asks Elijah how long he was in wolf form. Elijah tells him it's been almost 2 days. The full moon came and went, but he did not turn back. Klaus concludes that this must mean he can transform at will, which I'm like, well, not necessarily, but sure. Yeah, okay.
I mean, if you assume it holds true that regular werewolves turn back once the moon has left the whole apex situation, then yeah, that's reasonable. I would wait until I tried again before I deduced that definitively.
Yeah, because it might be a thing of you turn under the full moon, but then you can stay as long as you want, but once you turn back,
you gotta wait until the next full
human
moon.
form.
Yeah.
But it's fine. His assumptions are right. Klaus had been wearing a daylight ring. That ring is now gone, probably lost when his hands turned into paws.
But he's not burning in the sunlight?
No, he's not burning in the sunlight because now he's a hybrid.
Oh yes, hybrids don't burn. I always forget hybrids don't burn in the sun.
I love it because it's so interesting that for all the hubbub that the sun and moon curse drummed up, the fabled effects of breaking it on vampires and werewolves respectively
are realized
present in Klaus himself, now that he's a hybrid. Klaus breathlessly tells Elijah that he remembers every kill he made as a werewolf. He's speaking about it like it was some sort of religious experience, or really good sex. I'm like, calm down.
Like a real spiritual. But I mean, this ties into the idea, which whether as misunderstood appropriatively or maybe true to certain cultural beliefs, is that like when you play in the space of transforming into an animal or having this like spirit form that is an animal, there is this kind of spiritual experience that expands your mind when you do it. So it's like you can kind of see what they're playing in.
Yeah, the lycanthropy is certainly regarded with a lot more reverence in the spin-off, which is cool. Like you've said many times, it would have given Tyler something to do if they'd gone down that road on this show. Maybe Klaus could have even been an avenue for that.
Right.
But Elijah is like, yeah, I know you've been killing. I've been cleaning up your little messes along the way. And then he's like, okay, cool. So it's been 2 days. Time for you to uphold your end of the bargain. And Klaus is all coy and is like, bargain? What was that again? Oh, yes. You want to be reunited with your family. And Elijah's like, you gave me your word, Niklaus. And he's like, oh, yes. And what kind of a brother would break his bond? Even though you did try to kill me. And Elijah's like, I could have, but I didn't. And Klaus says, now no one can. Not even you. Stefan goes to Alaric's apartment looking for Klaus because Bonnie's witch spirits have told him that Klaus is the key to curing Damon's werewolf bite. He finds Catherine there, furious that she's been trapped in isolation for 2 days without any news about what's been going on. Stefan says he needs Klaus's help for his brother. And Klaus is like, well, whatever it is, it will just have to wait because I have an obligation to my own brother. Klaus walks off into the other room, leaving Elijah with the younger vampires. I like that Elijah feels guiltier because he defensively tells Stefan that, listen, you understand how important family is, or you wouldn't be here.
Because they're both in the same position, right? Like, that's the parallel. It's Stefan and Elijah.
Yeah, but I love that he feels he has to justify it. He's like, listen, hey, please try to understand when even you are willing to now be in cahoots with this man to save your family member. So, judge not lest you be judged, Stefan. But he's like, Klaus gave me his word that he would reunite me with my family. And then Klaus appears behind him and says, and so I shall, before whipping out a dagger and stabbing Elijah in the heart. I gotta admit, I was pissed enough at Elijah the first time I watched this season that I was like, look what happens.
I pity him. And not in a way of like, oh, you poor thing, but just in a way of like, this is embarrassing. All that betrayal. And you get stabbed.
Not the second-hand embarrassment.
Exactly. I'm just like, look at you, man. Come on. And it's especially insulting because Klaus does the thing that Elijah often does, where it's by the letter. I promised I'd reunite you with our family. And I will. By daggering you and placing you next to them so that you're all together. So...
And thus Elijah is neutralized for the 3rd time this season.
Embarrassing.
Gosh.
I love you, buddy, but this is a rough go.
Frankly, he's lucky Rebecca was introduced. She makes him look better by comparison. Klaus then attacks Stefan, sticking a stake into him, dangerously close to his heart. And Stefan's like, listen, I will do anything you want. Just give me the cure for a werewolf bite. I know that you have it. I don't know what it is, but I know you have it. And Klaus is like, the problem is, I don't really think there's anything you can do for me in this goody-goody two-shoes state that you're in. You're basically useless. So he pours some human blood into a glass and then whispers sweet nothings about Stefan's Ripper reputation over the decades. And he's like, oh, I knew this crazy bloke. The Ripper of Monterey, on and off the wagon for years. And when he was off the wagon, he was magnificent. And Stefan's like, well, I am not that person anymore. And Klaus is like, oh, really? Shame, because that's the kind of person I can make a deal with. It's giving Felicia Hardy, the black cat, who's like, Spider-Man is hot, but Peter Parker isn't my type.
Unfortunate.
He says that Ripper Stefan has talents that he can use when he leaves this town. And then he calls Catherine over and bites her with his werewolf fangs, envenomating her. And then he force feeds her his blood and shows that, look, my hybrid blood is the cure. I always assumed that the fact that he already knew this means that even when his werewolf side was sealed away, his blood was still the cure. over the last 1,000 years.
Which is
because otherwise,
curious.
how else would he know? I guess in the same way that the dagger still didn't work on him, even though his werewolf side was sealed away.
Or it's
fine.
possible too that because he's had Greta for however long through the witch grapevine, she was aware that one of the reasons the witches wanted to keep that loophole tamped down. Because the thing about the witches is they did not like vampires because they were a violation to nature, and nature had responded to make a number of weapons against vampires to make sure they could be killed through sunlight, through white oak, and through the werewolf bite. And they knew that if that loophole was exploited and the hybrid was created, it would be immune to all those things. So through that, she might have known, hey, your blood could possibly be an immunity against a werewolf bite because you are a hybrid.
Yeah, that tracks. I never thought about it that way. I always just figured he's got like the antibodies because of his werewolf side.
No, absolutely. But it's like, because of that, that is a thing they anticipated.
Breaking the curse makes sense because he's like, now I've got access to werewolf fangs. Lord forbid I bite my own tongue by mistake.
Right.
I don't want to be sick all day while my original vampire body fights it off.
It would be silly if I died like the snake bites itself and dies. It's like, well, then what was the point, nature? Come on.
Imagine that was his weakness. No, but originals won't die from a werewolf bite. They just get sick for a few hours.
Truth.
Klaus bleeds some of his hybrid blood into a phial and then spends the rest of the evening forcing Stefan to keep feeding on bags of human blood over and over again until his Ripper cravings are triggered.
And
It's actually
watching as he does it too. And that's very important. There's something very torturous about it because he is aware this is not something that feels good for Stefan, both physically or emotionally. And there's also something psychosexual about it. Like, we mostly make a meme of it, but this particularly is very like, oh, there's something that you get off on in this, Klaus. And that's interesting to me.
Yeah, he's watching him with like this admiration. He's like, there we go. Come on, keep eating. And it's like, it made me feel the way that in Jessica Jones, which I keep referencing. I guess it's all the mind control.
Yeah. It's on the mind.
Jessica Jones, when we find out that Kilgrave managed to enlist Jessica's neighbor Malcolm as a spy by getting him addicted to drugs.
Yep.
So that even when the time frame in which the mind control lasts ran out, he knew that this man would always come back to him to get drugs, and then he could refresh and have this handy little spy.
Oh, yeah.
And much like Stefan with his, Ripper persona and his blood addiction, Malcolm says of Kilgrave's control, he's like, I'll never really know whether I'm that kind of person. Like, was that always in me? Or is it because Kilgrave forced me to? And, it's just body chemistry. I used drugs so much that I became addicted because this man forced me to. Like, oof, yeah.
Rough.
After a while, Stefan is like barely fighting anymore. He's going a bit feral with bloodlust. But he does fight back enough to insist, okay, stop now. I'm not going to consume any more blood until you give me the cure. And Klaus is like, I'm not going to give you the cure until you make a deal. You can either remain here, living in Mystic Falls, or you can leave town with me and embrace what you truly are.
Come with me and you'll see a world of your imagination.
I was going to say, come with me, Alfie and Glinda.
Oh, yes. There's also a whole new world. Don't you dare close your eyes.
He hands Stefan yet another blood bag. Stefan hungrily accepts it, and satisfied that he's unlocked the cravings,
he's conditioned
Klaus
now.
goes over to Catherine and compels, quote unquote, her to take the cure to Damon and then come straight back. Catherine vamp speeds out before Klaus can even finish speaking to her.
Yep.
At the end of the episode, Klaus stands over Elijah's daggered body that's been placed in a coffin, and he's like, as promised, brother, you've been reunited with our family. And I was like, oh, shut up, Klaus. You made your point. Stop rubbing it in.
Insult to injury is like, yeah, I did what you asked. I kept my word, as you often do. It's like, all right, buddy.
He closes the lid and turns to some nearby stooges, who I assume are compelled humans, and tells them to put Elijah with the others. And we see that Klaus has an entire shipping container filled with like 4 other coffins. Well done on consistency. It is 4 other coffins.
Yeah.
They didn't change that.
They finally locked it in by this last episode. They were like, all right, guys, we need to know what we're leading into the next season with. Let's figure this out.
Stefan gets a text from Elena telling him that Damon is okay. And Klaus is like, did Catherine make it to Damon with the cure in time? And Stefan says, you won't be seeing Catherine again, And Klaus is like, oh, why? Because she's on Vervain? Yes, I know she was feigning compulsion. He tells Stefan, I've been around for a long time. I rarely get played for a fool. And I was like, okay, well,
Okay.
you were gagged last night when Bonnie showed up.
And you
so-
will be gagged many times in the upcoming season. So I guess there's a first time for everything.
He assures Stefan that the two of them will catch up to Catherine in good time. And then he conjures up some random human woman for Stefan to kill, because I guess making Stefan kill one of his male stooges would have been too gay.
That's too gay, right? There's gotta be a woman involved, or it becomes explicitly gay. And we're gonna get into that when Miss Rebecca hits the scene.
Klaus notes that he could have compelled the woman to be still and quiet, but he says that a true Ripper would relish in the terror that he inflicts upon a helpless victim. So Stefan eats her.
Yeah.
And that's where we close out season 2.
Oh. Season 2, obviously, because there were only 2 of them introduced at that point. It is very much the Elijah and Klaus show.
Yeah.
But as we progress forward, it very much becomes the Klaus show and everybody's dancing around him because the character became so popular the moment he arrived on the scene. So it makes sense.
Yeah.
But it's like, they're so fascinating and they have a gravitas that I don't think characters that come after them, this is true of all the originals, I don't think characters who come after them ever capture, even though they're significantly older. I think the one who gets closest is Cade, but by then the story's too much of a meme for it to hit as well.
But then it's like the devil, who's not actually the devil, and we were tired.
Right. Like, nobody has the same manner of, like, maybe it's because they all have British accents in the 3rd season, but nobody carries themselves the same way.
Because Kai is just this, like, 90s college student.
Yeah, Kai's a
who's
kid.
a little quirky and silly.
Kai's a kid, just an extremely powerful kid. Like, an extremely powerful late teens, early 20s white man is the scariest thing I could think of. Then Silas and Kitsia maybe, but Kitsia isn't allowed to fully unleash because she is so tied to Silas in that story. Silas, who is far more like casual than the originals are.
Yeah.
Who else is there that's old? Marcos.
Great gowns, beautiful gowns.
You know, beautiful gowns.
He's good looking. That's all we can say.
The sirens are also old. They're incredibly camp. There's nothing esteemed and regal about them. They're, again, like Desperate Housewives, Mean Girls vibes. It's like a whole other genre.
And Silas, unlike the originals, he's not this person doing whatever it takes to, like, survive or save his loved ones. He's like,
trying to
no,
die.
Firstly, I can't be killed. Secondly, I actually really want to die.
Please,
So
kill me. And now for a no context season transition.
moving over to a different master race in the works. And that term is used. I was like, oh no, I thought the Nazis only came in the final season of the original. No. There was some weird shades of it here at the beginning of season 2.
Yeah.
It's season 3, sorry.
It's something to think about when we consider Klaus, is that he is trying to build this race of people he considers superior.
That's a Nordic man.
And at this point, still Native American, but I digress.
No!
Uh-huh. Which is
our Nordic passing half Native American.
No.
Oh, I am so glad they retconned that. It would have been so terrible to look back on.
I'm still, as far as I'm concerned, for the entire time that they're in the Vampire Diaries, that is the lens I'll be viewing it with.
I mean, that was certainly what I was taking it as. I kind of decided not to engage with it. At the time. And then when Ansel shows up in the originals, I was like, oh, thank God.
I was like, no, this makes less sense than Joseph Morgan being like half ancient Native American. Now it's like, what?
I was just like, it's fine. Some other white people got there before the Mikaelsons and their neighbors, and they intermarried. So Klaus is like 1/16 Native rather than
God.
1/2 Native.
And it's just like, well, now all the actual textual representation, even if it was all off screen in a memory of Native American people in the story, is gone. With that single retcon, that erases all of it.
I mean, some of them must have still been there, since Elijah and Rebecca do talk about the natives like being around.
Well, yes, now in this moment when Klaus's dad is a Native American man. It doesn't make sense after this.
They got cold feet.
Exactly. They copped out.
So, season 3, episode 1, Klaus and Stefan are hunting werewolves in the south. I can't remember what state they're in. It doesn't
Tennessee,
matter.
I think.
Is it Tennessee? Oh,
I believe so, yeah.
Klaus startles some woman in her yard who's looking for her dog, using a somewhat off-putting phony American accent. Klaus was like, I'm sorry, I need to call a ride. My phone just died. I was wondering if you could help me.
Ew.
He tries to get into her house by pretending to be like this stranded rando. So she's like, no, I will bring the phone out to you. You can wait out here, strange man that I've never met before. Klaus is somewhat annoyed and drops the accent and is like, oh, so much for that southern hospitality. And she like frowns at him. It's like she notices the accent change, but she doesn't quite clock it. She's not like, why do you sound British? She's just like,
what's that about, buddy?
Changed?
What's going on? We cosplaying all of a sudden.
This scene, I'm a bit confused by.
Uh-huh.
I know you can't compel someone to let you in.
Yeah.
And it seems that this woman is human. So it seems like he compelled her to be more hospitable and then she invited him in?
That seems like it defeats the purpose then, doesn't it? That really...
Because he grabs her and compels her to like show some more like hospitality. We don't hear him say, let me in. But suddenly he's been invited in and he's like holding her. So I don't...
That makes the you can't compel someone to invite you in thing moot then. If you can just be like, be nice to me. And then they just invite you anyway because that's what they would do for a friend.
It's quite strange because not only that, but once he goes inside and he finds her friend, the friend tries to run away and then Stefan intercepts her, showing that he's also been invited in. He's like on the other side of the house now. So,
well, cool. Fair enough.
Klaus questions them about a man they live with named Ray Sutton, and he implies he knows that the man is a werewolf. Under duress, the women tell Klaus where they can find Ray, and he thanks them and leaves. By which I mean he leaves them with Stefan, who he instructs to kill the more cooperative of the two women quickly, but to make the one who tried to run suffer. And I'm like, because she tried... Your trigger is really women running for their lives, isn't it? Like, what's that about?
The whole thing. He cannot suffer a woman who runs away from him to live. It's wild.
Oh no, Klaus. He's like, this is the worst thing you could do to me. Running away.
How dare you?
No.
Acting like I'm a threat? How dare you be afraid of me? I'm a perfectly genial man.
She betrayed me as well, Stefan. She tried to run.
She refused to let me into her home. Seize her.
The one he compelled gets eaten quickly. The one who was inside already and tried to run away is, I guess, slowly tortured to death by Stefan. It's horrible, but it all happens off screen. So Klaus and Stefan find Ray Sutton in a bar. Klaus tells Ray that werewolves are very hard to come by. Yeah, for now. And Klaus introduces Stefan as a vampire, but says that he, Klaus, is both vampire and werewolf and wants to create more like himself. To this end, he demands that Ray leads them to his pack. Later on, Stefan is torturing Ray with darts and wolfsbane, and some woman comes in and tells Klaus that per his instructions, she's been keeping an eye out and has spotted Damon Salvatore on their trail. Klaus is like, I'm gonna have to handle that brother of yours if he keeps getting closer to us. And Stefan's like, no, don't muss your hair. I will take care of Damon personally, in a less lethal way.
Right.
And Klaus is like, oh, you're gonna leave. How do I know you'll come back? And Stefan's like, of course I'll come back. I'm completely loyal to you, and I've let go of my old life. And I was like, okay.
One of the first signs of what will be elucidated this season of Klaus's severe abandonment issues already being like, what if you don't come back? Please, your brother comes back and immediately you want to leave me? No.
So Stefan returns to Mystic Falls, which he does pretty quickly. How far is Virginia from Tennessee? I know they're both southern states.
Questions
but wow.
I don't have answers to. You want me to pull up an American map?
He returns to Mystic Falls, murders Andy Starr in front of Damon to prove to him that he's really bad now and beyond saving. And he tells Damon to let him go. Meanwhile, Klaus has managed to torture the info he wanted out of Ray. However, he doesn't let Ray go. Instead, he force feeds his hybrid blood to Ray and snaps his neck. Just then, Stefan comes back and Klaus is like, oh, cool, look at you, you're here. And Stefan's like, oh, did you doubt me? And Klaus is like, I didn't doubt you. I didn't doubt that you would pass my test. My test being a test to prove you still care about Damon, because you ran off to make sure I didn't kill him. And Stefan's like, no, I don't care about anything anymore, bro. Like, what do you mean? I don't care at all. And Klaus is like, I know you're putting on an act, but it's not me you need to convince, it's Damon. Because if that man comes back, I killed my own brother. So imagine what
stops me from killing yours. To confirm, yes, we are in Tennessee, and Tennessee is 8 hours away from Virginia.
Well, I guess Stefan ran there like the Flash.
Sprinted
Killed Andy
for
Starr
his
and came back.
And you know what? Fair enough, I guess. Anything to protect Elena.
Unless Klaus was torturing Ray Sutton for like 2 days?
It would have to be.
Maybe. I mean, he had compelled the other patrons of the bar to like act like nothing was going on. So I'm like, did they get to go home and then come back still under your compulsion?
Oh no. I hope they've gotten to sleep.
Oh gosh. Now I'm getting WandaVision flashbacks. Ooh. I mean, she let them sleep, but they were like having her nightmares.
She was feeding them with her chaos energy. It's okay. They were nourished.
They were glitching on the outskirts of town, but she didn't know.
She didn't know. It's fine.
But Klaus is like, no, I get it, Stefan. You never stop caring about family. But admit it, the bloodlust makes it just a little easier to let go. Every time you give in to your cravings, it's a little bit easier. And I'm like, all right, Klaus, you'd love him to say that.
Yeah.
Episode 2, The Hybrid. Klaus and Stefan bring back Ray's in-transition corpse to his pack in the woods. Somehow they've already heard of Klaus, because one of them says, you're the hybrid. Like, Klaus has this long-standing reputation for being half werewolf and half vampire. I don't
How
know
long has it been
how
since season 2? It's been 3 months. I guess they've got some witch friends.
Maybe.
Yeah. The only way it makes sense for information to disseminate, sometimes the story will suggest information is disseminated quite quickly in a way where it's like, oh, who would have heard that? And then spread the news. The witch is on the other side. It's the only way to make it work.
They're a gossipy bunch.
You know? It's what they do.
Also, I had a question. Did Catherine know Klaus was a hybrid? Because she knows quite a lot about him, but before Elijah divulges that information to Elena, Catherine doesn't say, oh, by the way, the sun and moon curse is fake. The real curse is on Klaus. He's half werewolf.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't put it past her to pretend to the others as well that it's just the sun and moon curse, but how does that benefit her?
Yeah.
Because either way, Elena's dying, so they're invested.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, she's just a liar. Maybe she was like, no, I'm going to hold on to this information in case the time comes that I need to leverage it. That is her MO.
Yeah.
Klaus introduces himself to the pack. He describes himself as a werewolf who isn't beholden to the moon and a vampire who doesn't burn in the sun. And I'm like, yeah, like the sun and moon curse promise.
The sales pitch.
One of the people chilling with the pack is a human man for some reason. He's the boyfriend of the woman who was like, you're the hybrid. So Stefan and Klaus use that human blood to help Ray complete his transition when he wakes up. Klaus then starts force-feeding his blood to the other werewolves and killing them so he can sire more hybrids. Later on, we see him healing this poor human blood bag with his vampiric blood because he's like, I'm gonna need you to, still be alive to help the other wolves become hybrids. By this time, he's murdered all the other members of the pack. Ray has finished feeding and should have completed his transition, but he looks shaky, unsettled.
Everything about Ray Sutton visually and physically is so good. I find the way they've done it so because he ends up bleeding from his eyes and he looks all gray and cold.
Oh, he's not
He looks
okay.
like you can tell that's a reject happening in motion there.
Throw the first pancake away.
The first batch of cookies will burn. Sorry.
Stefan asks Klaus if his plan is to build an army of hybrid slaves. Klaus is like, no, not slaves, soldiers, comrades. And Stefan's like, for what war, might I ask? And then Klaus, ever the paranoid git, is like, well, you don't arm yourself after war has been declared. You build your army so big that no one ever dares pick the fight. And I was like, yeah, you would say that, wouldn't you?
It's a nuclear weapon, right? It's like, I've got the silos ready, so nobody's gonna dare cross me. Even if somebody makes their own nuclear weapon, now we're mutually assured destruction situation, so...
Even though I don't think Klaus would settle for mutually assured destruction.
God, no. That would
He'd be
not
like, no,
fly.
I'll find a way to end you. You can't be my equal.
Right.
I can't have equal.
That's not allowed.
So Stefan asks Klaus what makes him so sure the hybrids will be loyal. Klaus says it's not that difficult to be loyal when you're on the winning team. That's something you'll learn when you shake that horribly depressive chip off your shoulder. And I was like, all right, leave brooding Stefan alone. I know you met party college boy Stefan.
Right.
But
He's like, who's this guy? I don't know him. Let's have some fun.
like,
You used to be
"Geez, Stefan,
fun.
crack a smile." He's like, Stefan, you'd be prettier if you smiled more. Stefan's like, oh, is this why you're keeping me around to witness my attitude adjustment? And Klaus is like, I will tell you why I'm keeping you around when I'm good and ready. But for now, no spoilers. Then they notice that Ray is shivering and bleeding from his eyes. And they're like, okay, that doesn't look good. Later on, Ray is sitting there shaking, pale, he's sickly. And he's like, you said this was going to feel better. Why doesn't it feel better? So I assume Klaus was like, being a hybrid would be so much cooler than being a werewolf.
Right.
Join me.
Because I think we discussed this in the Tyler episode. This is when we're getting into the Cyabond, which we will. The idea of Klaus's methods in building his hybrid pack is, well, either I forcibly turn you into a hybrid, or I sell you on the idea of hybrids being superior in every way and it being the best experience you could think of. So
Klaus certainly thought it was. And maybe, we'll later on learn that there are some wolves who are quite happy to be werewolves. So if you add the heightened vampire emotions and sensations, maybe it's quite a trip. Unfortunately, that's not what's happening to Ray. Stefan is watching this botched hybrid bleed out and he's like, some master race.
woke Stefan Salvatore against werewolf Nazis.
Oh no, now you made me think of Teen Wolf and the Were-Lion Nazi. Klaus is like, lose the attitude. And another werewolf wakes up in transition. Klaus compels the human to give her his blood. And in that moment that he's distracted, Ray is like, yeah, I'm out, and darts off through the trees. So Klaus is like, okay, Stefan, go fetch. Stefan gets bitten while fighting Ray, and Ray still manages to run off. Stefan notices Damon, Elena, and Rick in the distance, who are looking for him, but haven't seen him yet. Klaus turns up, and probably to distract him from noticing them, he's like, so Ray managed to get away. Crazy, right? Could I have some of your blood to heal this pesky werewolf bite? And Klaus is like, no, I'll heal you when you fetch Ray and bring him back to me.
Wild.
And I would work fast if I were you.
Wild.
This is how this man conducts himself in all his relationships.
Right.
Just blackmail, ultimatums, bullying.
This
quid
is an
pro quo,
ally,
and then
right? This is someone who's working with him, even though he's working for him, really. It's like, damn, Klaus.
And then he'll turn around and be shocked that some people want to walk away from him. And he's like, how dare you leave me alone? Don't leave me. So Klaus returns to his transitioning hybrids. The second one to feed is now exhibiting the same symptoms as Ray. Klaus is like, okay, I mean, maybe the first two pancakes. I don't know. He sends his human blood bag to finish helping all the others transition, and then he kills him. Didn't need to kill him, but he's just like, okay, well, your usefulness is up. Time to die. And then he notices all of the hybrids are acting sick and feral. Because first, the boyfriend of the human blood bag he killed comes to him and he's like, hey, don't try to fight me. There's only one alpha. Then he's like, wait, no, she's not trying to fight me. She's just kind of zonked out and zombified.
Mm-hmm.
She's not okay. Some of them are just walking around like extras from The Walking Dead.
Yeah,
They're,
like
snarling
zombies.
and groaning.
That is the vibe.
Ultimately, Stefan is forced to kill Ray to save Damon. He brings his corpse back to Klaus, who was sulking in the werewolf encampment and surrounded by the dead bodies of all his failed hybrids.
It's such an evocative visual of him sitting there by himself with all these dead failed hybrids around. It's just like how affected by this he is. It's making him angry, but it's also making him really sad, it seems like, for this to not have worked. And it's like, damn. Because if it was like, I'm trying to build an army, it's like, well, damn, I can't have an army of hybrids. That's a shame. But I'll just do what I've been doing all this time and getting people to work for me. Regular vampires, regular wolves, witches clearly I've been able to ensorcel with my charms, apparently. It's like, why is this affecting you so much?
Which I guess is that thing of because, in Klaus's head, he must always make up excuses that have nothing to do with his personality and behavior. So in his mind, is like, maybe I'm always alone because I'm the only hybrid. That's it. Everybody else is just racist. I need more of my kind.
Oh man,
they all see me as this freak.
I mean, yeah, that's the upcoming stuff. That's like, oh, this is linked to some deep family shit.
But yeah, for now, he sits there amongst all his broken toys, and he's like, some of them I had to kill, others just bled out on their own and died. And then he goes into a rage about, how come it didn't work? I did everything I was told!
Yeah. Oh.
And he's like, I killed the werewolf, I killed the vampire, I killed the doppelganger. Stefan glances into the camera like, yeah.
Stefan's eyes darting.
Killed that doppelganger, she's dead. Stefan apologizes for failing Klaus and is like, do what you gotta do, in a way that makes it seem like he's like, kill me or let me die, I suppose, if that's what you want. And Klaus is just like, should have worked. Like, he's really so dejected. He's like, man, it should have worked, man. Like, I've been planning this for thousands. I was so excited.
He kicks the ground. He's just like, god damn it.
And then he gives Stefan his blood to heal. And I'm like, I'm sure now more than ever, you're like, no, I can't let you die.
Exactly.
I'll be alone.
Now that all these hybrids are dead, now I give you the blood because you're all I've got. Oh, it's sad in a twisted way. To quote Elena, in its own twisted way, it's kind of sad.
Klaus tells Stefan that they're leaving. He takes one last sad look at all his dead hybrids, and he literally laments that it appears you're the only comrade I have left. And I'm like,
yeah.
I mean, comrade is a bit of a stretch, but that's what you'd like to believe.
Yeah.
Episode 3, the end of the affair. Klaus takes Stefan to Chicago.
Chicago. It's a city that's exciting. It's a city that's inviting. It's a city just like me.
We have a flashback of how, in the 1920s, Stefan Salvatore, in his Ripper days, met a beautiful blonde woman at a speakeasy. In the background, there's this young, white-haired African-American singer named Gloria.
Gloria!
She's like, you looking for a good time, Mr. Salvatore?
Yes! My black flapper girl.
The blonde woman turns out to be a vampire because she can smell the blood of the woman that Stefan just killed outside. She says, you're still wearing your date. She's lovely. I was like, okay, who's this? Back in the present, Stefan asks Klaus why they're here. And Klaus says they're here to see his favorite witch because if anyone can help him with his hybrid problem, she can. They go to a bar and they find the same white-haired woman, Gloria, looking about 25 years older, despite it having been like over 90 years.
Yes, she looks stunning. She has this like middle-aged, not even middle-aged yet, like short hair, don't care era. There's a little bit of like a wave and a curl to it. She's got this like
I love her hair.
Tank top. She's living life free. I love her.
And I guess from this point onward, it'll be a thing that like witches have the power to make themselves age slowly. Maybe a retcon to explain the insane decision of casting Jasmine Guy as the grandmother of a 16-year-old when she was like 40.
Yeah. But it's also like, would Grams use that power given like the basic tenets of the balance of nature and whatnot? I feel like extending your life is one of those ones that's like, oh.
I mean, I guess extending your life, but not ultimately being able to cheat death.
Yeah. It's like,
fine.
hey, you're my steward. You can skim a bit off the top, but remember where you come from.
Because like when we meet Nandi, who is completely against expression, she's also been preserving her life.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Stefan's like, what? You should be deceased. And she's like, no, I use magic, but it's going to catch up to me someday. Don't worry. I'm not immortal. Don't worry.
Not like you, deviants.
She reveals that she knows why Klaus is here because, again, apparently news of his quest to sire more hybrids is spreading fast.
Yeah. Well, she's a witch, so.
Yeah. And a powerful one at that.
Oh, yeah.
She tells Klaus that in order to find out what went wrong when he broke the curse, she will need to contact the witch who cast it. And Klaus is like, that would be the original witch. She's very dead.
Already covering. A shame.
And she's like, then bring me Rebecca. She has what I need. And Klaus is like, Rebecca is a little indisposed. And she's like, okay, well, she has the thing that I need. So whatever's going on, go fetch her. Meanwhile, Stefan's in the background, finds an old photo of him and Klaus from the 1920s looking very buddy-buddy and is like, what the hell?
Shock.
I knew you?
Horror.
I was not that drunk.
You'd be surprised, Mr. Salvatore.
Klaus goes to get Rebecca. Stefan is still reeling from the revelation that he knew Klaus but has no memories of it. Another flashback shows that the blonde woman who was flirting with Stefan is Klaus's sister because Klaus shows up being all territorial, being like, oh, she's my sister. What are your intentions with her? And it's like, all right, Klaus.
All right.
We all know you're just jealous because...
No, yes.
Because Rebecca is free to pursue men in public.
And you can't. Because this is the only moment in which that is what the grievance he has is. And then in this flashback, we see he then meets Stefan and they get to talking and to rapporting. And beyond this moment, his gripe is not with Stefan for getting with his sister. It's with his sister for going after Stefan. And it's like, Klaus, what are we talking about here? What are we
You
getting
stole my
into?
friend. He's my friend. I was like,
He's my bosom
your
pal.
roommate. Your roommate, Stefan.
And we're making a joke of it, but it is a more interesting read to me.
Queer Klaus would have been so fun. I would have forgiven everything he did.
Yes, maybe not forgiven per se, but I'd be more interested in engaging with the stuff he does.
I'd be like,
because...
this explains the misogyny. It explains Michael's gripe with you that's been there from day one.
That's the big one, right? Is that, like, if we're gonna retcon that he is a racial other to the rest of his siblings, then there must be something else. And Queer Klaus would actually make this work so much better.
He's closest to his little sister out of all his siblings.
Interesting.
His fancy dapper brother is the one who gets along best with him.
Interesting. He loves the tea. He loves the drama, the pageantry. Klaus
sees Caroline, the head cheerleader, and is immediately like, oh, she's cool. I want to hang with her.
I must be in love with her because she is so stunning and goddess-like and beautiful and slay. What? I mean pretty. What? No. What am I talking about?
But in the 1920s, we see that Rebecca was wearing the necklace that Stefan gave to Elena in season 1. This floored me the first time I saw it. I was like, wait, what? I guess we never knew where Stefan got it. They never established that. He just gave it to her.
It's crazy. And it'll make some things make no sense whatsoever when you really think about it. On its own, it's really like, whoa.
And Stefan in the 20s compliments the necklace, and she's like, oh, thanks, it was a gift from a powerful witch. In the present, Klaus opens Rebecca's coffin and undaggers her. He's still being childish, Klaus. He undaggers her, and after a few seconds, he's like, any day now, Rebecca. Turns to Stefan and is like, she's being dramatic. I'm like, all right. You know it takes like a good hour to wake up. At least it did for Elijah, who'd only been daggered for a few days. Like, Rebecca's been daggered for 9 decades.
Imagine 90 years she's been out. Oh my, oh my.
Another 1920s flashback shows Klaus playfully now being all like, oh, what are your intentions with my sister? But like in a nice way. Like, tell me, what makes you think that you are worthy of an original? After all, Rebecca is pure vampire and you are a diluted bloodline. And I was like, all right, Klaus.
We just escaped your Nazi vibes 2 episodes ago. You're trying to jump back into that pool? Okay.
And Rebecca's like, don't mind Nick, he's an elitist. And I was like, oh, let's remember this moment, Rebecca, where you called someone an elitist. Okay, I'm gonna hold you to that standard. Okay. Stefan asks where the rest of Klaus's family is. And Klaus is like, let's see, I killed most of them. This will later on turn out to be mathematically untrue.
In a sense, you know, he daggered all of them and killed his mother. In a sense, it is a death to be daggered.
At this time, I assumed he had daggered Elijah. There's things in the originals that imply that Elijah was dallying in New Orleans trying to delay Mikael at this point.
Right.
And that he actually wasn't daggered.
But
which
Cole
means
is
that right now
daggered.
it's just Cole is daggered, Finn who
is
he
daggered.
didn't kill.
Right, but he just didn't remove the dagger, which in my opinion...
And Esther who he wouldn't admit to killing in front of Rebecca at this point.
That's true. He does think he killed Henrik. He does blame himself for that.
Oh,
so
shame! That's true.
That is a sad one, unfortunately.
Our beloved plot device. We hardly knew ye.
You sweet little boy, you dark-haired darling.
The darkest haired of all the Mikaelsons, frankly.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy.
I'm like, Michael, that's the one who should have made you suspicious, not Klaus.
Instead of the son who looks the most like you.
You know, he's
But
like,
okay.
how did my blonde wife and me, my Aryan self, create this brunette, brown-eyed boy?
Quite a few of them, too.
Cole and Elijah just getting by. He's like, well, Cole and Elijah look like each other, so I'm going to assume there's nothing
connection
going on there.
here. Then he saw Klaus's lips and he was like, those aren't my lips. Where are those coming from? Listen, blonde is a recessive
He's like,
gene.
there's a little flavor in here, and it didn't come from me.
It's a spice.
But yeah, Stefan is surprised that Rebecca is okay with Klaus having killed off their family members. And she's like, no, we all had a chance to choose a side, and I chose the right one, eventually. And I'm like, oh, I like how you paused and then said eventually.
Yeah.
Coercion, duress, bullying. Back in the present, Damon stupidly leaves Elena alone in Stefan's old Chicago apartment. And then Klaus and Stefan turn up and almost find her. Klaus proves that he and Stefan were friends back in the day by showing Stefan that he knows the location of Stefan's little serial killer victim list.
Which is something, though, right? It's like, we don't really get, unless they do say in their dialogue, and you've noted how long they actually spent together in the 90s. But the fact that Stefan shared this with him, the fact that he's a Ripper, the fact that he has this whole ritual to try and atone for this, like, monstrosity that he can't really control, even though in this era, he's chosen to, like, try and dull himself with alcohol and partying to, like, look away from that horror. The fact that he shares this with Klaus does say something about the connection that they had in that time.
And I remember the first time I watched season 3, Rebecca's flapper dresses, very pretty. I think I've mentioned this before. I didn't realize in the coffin she was in a different dress than she was the first night she met Stefan. So I initially read this as all happening in one night. And I was like, damn, all right.
And both of them were so enamored by Stefan in that one night that they both carried torches for decades. I kind of
silly
love
me,
that.
Honestly.
No, I mean, listen.
Later on when I rewatched, I was like, oh no, that's very clearly a different dress. Okay,
sure.
okay.
Hey, we've all met Stefan Salvatore. Sometimes one night is enough.
Klaus is just fangirling over Stefan's creepy little wall of names of people he's killed, and he's like, oh, it was so cool. You told me how you wanted to relive the kill over and over. Later on, for Stefan's story, we will learn that it's not necessarily that. It's also like penance and remembering the lives he's taken. But of course, Klaus would read it that way. Like, oh,
precisely.
No, he wanted to relive the kill.
That's what becomes clear in this moment where he's taking him through memory lane, trying to show him how close they were and what buddies they were, is that Klaus has a very different perception of Stefan as the Ripper than what is true to it. Because Klaus took what he wanted to take from those times.
And later on, we'll see that Rebecca is kind of the same when it comes to her read on Ripper Stefan. Anyway, Stefan sees Elena in the closet. He doesn't out her. Closet joke.
Stupid.
But he leads Klaus away from Elena and they leave. Back at the coffins, Klaus compels a man to stand by and be Rebecca's blood bag when she wakes up so she can be fully restored. And then he and Stefan return to Gloria's bar. Gloria's like, okay, where's Rebecca? And Klaus is like, be patient, I can't conjure her on demand.
Drama.
He then tells Stefan that they used to be such good friends that they made each other substitutes for the void their respective absent brothers left in their lives. Again, when we get to the retcon in the spin-off of Elijah dealing with Mikael, it's like, well, that kind of makes this feel weird. In this moment, it was supposed to be like, oh, he'd already fallen out with Elijah and now he and Stefan are like, oh, I found a new brother in you. Stefan even poses for a picture and says, hey, get a picture of me and my brother
here.
While he's with Klaus. And it's like, wow, your brother? All right. In the 1920s, another flashback, Klaus gives Stefan his blessing to pursue Rebecca. But he warns him that it won't last because, you know, Rebecca's fickle. She can't help it. He's like, listen, when she inevitably leaves you, don't let your heart do anything stupid. And I'm like, okay, Klaus, you'd love that, wouldn't you? For that romance to not last so that you can be the favorite. It's interesting that in this scene, Klaus is like, oh, my sister Rebecca, the man-eater, you know, she just burns through men quickly. They're just toys for her. And I'm like, that will turn out to kind of be the opposite of how Rebecca navigates romance.
Which is unfortunate because I like the idea of a Rebecca who's just like, bag 'em and tag 'em, you know what I'm saying? Like...
Yeah, early season 3 Rebecca, so much potential that they then do away with. So in the present, Stefan's like, okay, well, why don't I remember our past friendship? And Klaus is like, okay, here's the truth. One tragic night, a vampire hunter rolled into town with the Chicago PD and shot up the speakeasy using wooden bullets. In the flashback, when Rebecca sees the bullets, she's just like, oh, that means he's here. Stefan's like, who? And of course, she doesn't answer. Klaus is like, Rebecca, love, we're leaving. Rebecca is sent out. Klaus is like, oh, no, Stefan, you're not coming with us, sweetie. No, sorry. Unfortunately, I need to compel away your memories of ever meeting us. But thank you for, you know, the time we spent together. It was nice to be reminded of what it's like to have a brother. And I'm like, okay, your brother, sure.
There's something to that too, in like, I don't know if he explains why he compels him away, but it's like the twofold thing of like, well, I can't have you come with us because you'll only slow us down, but also I can't have you be an accessory to me because you will certainly be killed. It's a rare moment where Klaus
I never thought of that. it probably is the latter.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't really give an explanation even in the present when he's retelling the story. In fact, it's Stefan who is suspicious because after the flashback ends, Klaus is like, yeah, it was better for me and Rebecca to have a clean slate since it was time for us to move on. And Stefan's like, but you wouldn't have needed to cover your tracks unless you were running from someone. And why would an unkillable vampire be scared of a vampire hunter? And Klaus is like, my lips are sealed. I'm not telling you anything, but it's very reminiscent of when, the Salvatores realized that, hey, Catherine, you went through all this tomb vampire shenanigans to fake your death. Why did you fake your death? Who did you need to think you were dead? Who were you running from? So now there's something else looming in the background. But Damon shows up and leads Stefan outside to talk to Elena, and then he goes back into the bar to distract Klaus. Klaus is not impressed by Damon's presence. He's like, oh, I see they're letting the riffraff in. And Damon is like, oh, honey, I've been called worse.
God.
I believe you, Damon.
Season 3 Damon's fun, I will say.
Klaus is like, look, I know I promised your brother I wouldn't kill you, but then again, how many freebies did I really sign up for? Also, you're here, so that means you obviously want to die. Damon tries to make some quips. Klaus is annoyed. He attacks him, almost staking him to death. But Gloria saves Damon, and she's like, no violence in my bar. If you're going to be doing that, take that shit outside. And I'm like, I wonder how much she felt pity for Damon, but also she's like, I'm a witch. I know how spirits work. I don't want you dying
I don't want you tied to my bar. I never want to see you, please.
I also like that Damon is like, oh, why do you need Stefan? If you need a wingman, take me. I'm far more fun. And Klaus, much like Elena, much like Catherine, prefers Stefan. He's like, no, we'll see how much fun you are when you're dead. I want Stefan. I've got no interest in you. But Klaus relaxes somewhat after Gloria's intervention. He assures Damon that Damon won't have to negotiate for Stefan's freedom because by the time Klaus is done with him, he'll want to be here. And I'm like, oh, okay. That sounds like brainwashing Klaus.
I mean, yeah, he's the corruption arc, right?
Klaus goes back to Rebecca's coffin to find it empty with a very dead man lying in a pool of his blood next to it.
Nice.
And he's like, Rebecca. She vamp rushes him and stabs him with her dagger. And she's like, go to hell, Nick.
Yes!
A flashback shows us that back in the 1920s, Rebecca was like, Nick, what happened to Stefan? He was right behind us. And Klaus is like, oh no, he's not coming with us. We gotta leave. And she's like, no, I'm tired of running, Nick. All we ever do is run. I want to stay with Stefan. And Klaus is like, did you just say sounded like you said you're gonna leave me. I must have heard wrong. Is it hot in here? You chose someone over me? Yeah. You're gonna leave me for this man you met like last month.
A week ago. Yeah.
And he's like, I bet, daggers her.
Yeah.
Drops her in a coffin and leaves her there for almost 100 years.
Insane.
Gosh.
Insane thing to do. No matter how messed up you are, sort of emotionally about your family, that's crazy.
Utterly unhinged and abusive man.
Yeah.
And we never really get an explanation as to why he left her like this so long. We will later on learn that Rebecca gets daggered the most often out of all of them. Shame. Finn was left daggered because he was a bore. Cole is a nuisance, so Klaus has also daggered him a lot of times. But Rebecca, I was like, you seem pretty close to her. She did one thing you didn't like, and you were like, okay, bye, 90 years.
Well, that's
gone.
the thing, right? It's that, like, she is the one he's closest to, so if she leaves, then that's his last lifeline to any semblance of a self that is not utterly worthless in his mind, that is not worth sticking around for. If even Rebecca leaves, then he's fully alone in a way that's like, because he can't make Rebecca stay with him the way he can make the hybrids do so, the way he can sort of make Stefan do so through coercion. Rebecca's an original as well. She's as powerful as he is, kind of. And outside of the daggers which he uses on her, there's nothing he can do to her that's permanent. So he can't make her stay with him except for if she's unconscious and in a bag that he can keep on his shoulder. Right?
Yeah.
So that is the reason.
And I guess the length of time is that he's like, I'm 1,000. A 90-year timeout is nothing to me and my sister.
By the time you wake up, you will have gotten over this momentary lapse in judgment. And we'll carry on as we always have, together.
But back in the present, Klaus easily pulls out the dagger. Rebecca is sulky and he's like, oh, don't pout. You knew it wouldn't kill me. And she's like, well, maybe I was hoping it would hurt more. And he says, Rebecca, you're upset with me. I know. I'm going to let that slide. I brought you a peace offering. And he's like, you can come out now, Stefan. Uncompels Stefan and lets all his memories come back. And Stefan is like, oh my gosh, I remember you now. And Rebecca, I was in love with you. For Rebecca, it's been like just a few minutes in her mind. So she's like, Stefan, my love, oh my gosh, it's so good to see you again. They have like this like brief reunion until Klaus is like, the attention can't go away from me.
Right.
So Stefan, he literally calls out Stefan. And Stefan has to turn around and look.
Babe, we were in a conversation. But also Claire Holt. Oh, just an immediate force jumping into scene as Rebecca, just like leaping in and stabbing Klaus with the dagger. The like playful fury that Rebecca has at the beginning is so much fun.
I was so excited to see her because I had read about her character coming and I was like, ooh, a sister original. Let's see.
Right?
Klaus is like, oh, so my witch friend Gloria needs to contact the original witch. She says you have something for her. And Rebecca touches her clavicle, feeling for the necklace, and realizes it's gone. Because on the night that the vampire hunter showed up to come after them, Mikael, she accidentally dropped the necklace and no one noticed except Stefan, who had already had his memories removed by Klaus.
Just picked it up and I was like, oh, cute necklace.
And I guess kept it.
Yeah.
And eventually gave it to Elena. Like, yeah, this is a necklace I found
it's
in my Ripper days.
Gorgeous. It's an antique. I'm not going to just let this go.
Klaus gets angry because he's like, is the necklace what she needs? She's upset in her own right. She's like digging through the coffin to see if it fell off when she was daggered. And she's like, no, I didn't take it off. I never take it off. Where is it? She throws the coffin onto the floor. She's upset. I was like, wow. We also see in that flashback that's when Mikael showed up doing his American accent. Chicago PD. But we don't know who he is at this point. Episode 4, Disturbing Behavior. Behavior spelt the American way, unfortunately.
Right. Behavior.
Klaus and Stefan take Rebecca clothes shopping because I guess, she's got to start dressing like a modern girl. She is utterly appalled by the evolution of Western fashion. She comes out with this short, thin dress showing a lot of cleavage. And she's like, there's got to be more to this dress. Probably thinking this is like the undergarment.
But also it's like, Rebecca, you were lost in the flapper era.
Stefan's like, no, that's it. And she's like, oh, so women in the 21st century dress like prostitutes then.
Like you came from the roaring 20s to now. I don't think they were particularly modest in those times, but okay. Fair enough.
She thought it was a phase that would pass.
Not in the circle she was moving in, but okay.
And then she's like, seriously, I got dirty looks for wearing trousers. And then Klaus is like, well, you wore trousers in the 20s, so women today could wear nothing. And then she's like,
you know what?
And what's that sound? And Stefan's like, oh, that's dance music that's playing like on the radio in the shop. And she's like, people dance to this rubbish. It sounds like a cable car accident. I love this brief anachronistic Rebecca. It's giving granny.
Yes.
I love it.
It's just like, you kids these days and your skimpy clothes and your loud music. It's like, damn, Rebecca.
She asks Stefan for his opinion on the dress, and he claims rather unconvincingly that he likes it. And Rebecca's like, I can always tell when you're lying, Stefan. Yeah, that'll age well.
Yeah. It's a shame. A number of things about Rebecca will age badly that are set up here, and it's a shame. It's that one of her being very perceptive about people and their deceptiveness. And I think someone says, because when a number of them are together, someone says, oh, you shouldn't be worried about me. Rebecca's the one you should be worried about. Talking about her fury and her physical, threat. Is that, Rebecca's the one who is the most prone to tussle? And we lose that as well, too. And it just seems like such a shame. I don't know. Especially because she very much exists because of the one girl rule, if we're keeping it a buck. It really feels like someone wanted a bunch of old men vampires to be like the first family. And then they were like, well, we've got to throw in one girl, or else it feels weird, I guess.
And I was honestly expecting Klaus to have more sisters.
Yeah.
But I remember when I started season 3, I didn't know how few siblings he had either. I assumed there were several more.
Not counting the one they don't know about, they were 6 children and only 1 girl, which feels strange, narratively.
It's Mikael willing that Y chromosome to come through with his patriarchy.
Sheer force of patriarchal will, just being like, I will have mostly sons and 1 daughter to help with the chores. It's like, all right, I guess.
And then he had a wimpy son and he was like, ew, an artist?
Basically a girl. So it's a shame that, like, as the one girl, the depth we try to set up for her at first just gets, like, swatted out of the way because I guess people are more interested in the boys, right? So we fixate on those characters. It sucks.
Yeah, I think it's... I'll get into it when she gets back to Mystic Falls. I have a theory for why that changes. Because, yeah, when she shows up, it's giving ancient, powerful, world-weary, wise vampire... And that disappears at a certain point.
Suddenly she's 15. It's like, huh? Okay.
Klaus is still a bit grumpy because Rebecca lost the necklace Gloria needs. But he and Stefan do seem to be like sharing this vibe of bemusement and exasperation at all Rebecca's womanly whining.
Right.
Because they're like looking at each other and they're like, ugh, this girl, am I right?
Girls. Want to go around the corner and make out?
Stefan dips after spotting Catherine outside. Much later on, he returns to Gloria's bar. Rebecca and Klaus are like, where did you go? We had to leave the shop without you. And he's like, no, I found someone to eat. And Klaus is like, okay, Gloria, you still haven't found the necklace. Gloria's like, well, I don't have much to go on here. And Rebecca's like, why don't you just use me to do a locator spell? I only wore the necklace for almost 1,000 years. And Gloria's like, there we go. This one comes up with a solution.
Right.
Instead of just whining in my face.
Right. It's like, yeah, she's thinking.
And maybe that was it. Maybe the one girl rule was them saying, these men are idiots and here's their wise sister. And then they decided, no, never mind. Misogyny wins. She's got to be the weak, emotional one.
Right. It's like, I'd much rather have the Hermione in the group, even if that in itself is a troubling trope that has been analyzed by plenty of people. It's like, at least she's doing something. At least she's competent.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Gloria does the spell, sees the vision of Elena in her kitchen with Bonnie and Caroline. Not recognizing them, she merely tells Rebecca that, I see a girl and her friends. And Rebecca's like, a dead girl with dead friends if I don't get my necklace back.
Terrifying!
Gloria seems to sense that something is off with Stefan, and she stalls for time by telling the vampires that, you know, you're messing with my vibe. Like, I can't focus on the magic while you're in here crowding me. I need my space. And Klaus is like, I'm prepared to wait for however long it takes you. And she's like, I know you are, but that's not what I asked. I asked for space. Go away. Let me work. And then Stefan, who suspects she knows the truth, is like, come on, guys, let's go out. I'll let you pick who we eat. I was like, oh, gosh, you guys are monsters. Sometimes I forget.
Yeah. Sometimes you lose track of it. Sometimes, you know, the humanity comes through. He's like, gotta keep the polycule together. Gotta manage so many personalities. It's a full-time job.
Speaking of poly things, Stefan and the original siblings go off to feed on some people who are, of course, all women, even Rebecca's. She finishes first and she's like, my girl's dead. I'm bored.
And that's baffling too. It's like, why don't we have Rebecca feed from a man then if we're keeping this gendered thing going? Understandably, genre-wise, in the metaphor or allegory that we've created with vampirism, these men feed from women. Why not flip it for Rebecca?
Yeah. And often you will see female vampires being like seductresses in fiction, like drawing men in and then devouring them.
Right.
It's odd.
A shame.
There is a time that I see Rebecca feeding off a man in like a very sexual scene. It's the threesome with Damon. They're sharing a man, so that's interesting. But then it becomes like a proper threesome with Sage. So.
Right. Yeah, when it's time to get down to business, it's like, no, there must be a woman involved. Yeah, at least it's the butchest woman that Vampire Diaries can have before people get scared. It's true.
This is the butchest woman Twitter can handle before they get scared.
Right.
A statuesque, fiery redhead who likes to do boxing.
She boxes, therefore she's manly.
Rebecca continues to whine. This time it's a little less old-fashioned granny and more like bratty little sister. Klaus teases her, Stefan laughs at her, and she's like, why are you taking his side? You used to be in love with me. Klaus throws some shade and she's like, and you, stop making me out to be a brat. I am not a brat. And I was like, okay, you're seeming a little bit bratty now, Rebecca. But Stefan throws some shade at Klaus as well. He's like, no, don't get it twisted. You're also quite exasperating. Like, after a few weeks with you, I'm ready to, like, blow my own head off.
Right.
And Rebecca's like, ha, he's teasing you too.
Right. Because they're both brats. That's the thing. That's what brings them together. Because Klaus and Rebecca are the brattiest of their siblings.
Klaus and Rebecca, brat summer.
Right. Call 999. It's a good time.
Stefan finishes off his victim and then dips again. And Rebecca's like, where's he going? Klaus says, to write a name on a wall. It's the whole thing. And I'm like, yeah, that's what you think, Klaus.
Right. But interesting that Klaus is aware of that and Rebecca isn't.
Oh, yeah.
Which just further makes this whole thing between them feel like What are we working with here? There's also an image that comes to mind, and the best example I can think of, which works great for you, Fadzai, is Loras, Renly, and Marjorie in Game of Thrones. Which is something I feel could have worked so well here.
Oh, shame. Loras was really like, nah, I'm Mask DL. And she was like, what?
Babe.
No, Loras. Sorry, Renly. Renly was like, I'm Mask DL. And she was like, no, I understand you can't get it up for me. It's chill. Do you want me to call my brother in?
Shall I bring my brother in here?
Like, he can help you get started. And Renly's like, what? That's crazy. Why would you do that? And she's like, oh, honey, no, I know what's going on. This marriage is a political thing. We need to make a baby. However that works for you, I'm willing to do it. I just want to be queen.
And it's like, listen, we can make an arrangement work. And certainly in a certain time, that's the sort of arrangement you need to keep up for appearances. You meet in the 1920s. Not a lot of people can be gay real publicly, you know? Even when you're 1,000 years old, you've got to keep up perceptions because you don't want to, cause a hassle.
What's crazy about that Marjorie and Renly scene is that Marjorie's like, my brother can come in and help. I know he wouldn't mind. And I'm like, well, actually, in the scene right before this, Loras was like angrily sending Renly away from their own hanky-panky time to be like, you need to impregnate my sister. She's your wife and you haven't consummated the marriage. So go do what you need to do.
He's not very
so
happy
I think he would mind. Loras not on that Luke Parker wavelength with like, I'm gay and your brother, so you're the least attractive person in the world.
That's someone who wouldn't mind. Luke Parker would be like, hey, listen, we need to do what we gotta do. Maybe because they're twins. I don't know. It's different with twins.
He's like, we share a womb. We can share a man. It's fine.
Listen, I think he would have liked Tyler. I think he's a bit meathead for him, but, push comes to shove.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I'm still gunning for Tyler and Jeremy, yo.
Absolutely. That's my number one.
In another life.
Yeah.
Stefan actually goes to see Gloria. She knows Stefan is hiding something, and she isn't actually loyal to Klaus. She's like, I would never help that hybrid half-breed.
Whoa!
Right. There's no need for that.
Gloria, especially with the current canon, that's crazy, girl. You.
It seems she just wants the necklace for herself because she knows it belonged to a powerful witch. And I'm like, okay, got your own agenda. Love it.
By all means.
She tortures Stefan until she learns the truth about Elena and the necklace. And then Catherine shows up and kills her.
Yeah. Again, it's like, and I brought this up in the Catherine episode. It's like, yeah, it's a powerful talisman. I want to channel it. For what? I guess just so you can be killed, right? Because that's ultimately what happens. It's, we need to kill her so the secret doesn't get out, narratively speaking. So we need to create a reason for it to be okay that we're just killing her off in this moment. Which sucks. Because it's like, we don't know what Gloria was up to, and as an audience, we're not asked to care.
I mean, I believe Catherine would see Stefan being tortured and be like, oh, you have to die, whoever you are. It's fine.
No, certainly. But that's what I'm saying is that, like, by having her torture Stefan, it is now acceptable to us, the audience, that, well, that woman needs to die. But it's like, why was she torturing Stefan? Why did she want this necklace so bad? What was that power for? We don't know because Gloria's motivations and goals are not important as a character.
We don't get to know which motivations in this show. We never learn why Nandi's mother was doing expression and tricking Damon into building the triangle for her.
Right, we don't know why Greta was following Klaus. It's a pattern is all I'm saying. It's like, damn.
Well, at least she didn't die by proxy because of being one of the 11 best friends
of
some witch that Caroline killed.
1 of 6. What's the expression? 6 of 1, half a dozen? Yeah, that's what it is, I think.
I've never heard this expression.
It's basically like comparing these two things, they're pretty much the same. It's 6 of 1 versus half a dozen.
So Stefan goes to snoop around Klaus's family coffins. He almost opens one, but then Rebecca shows up and he's like, question, why don't you just undagger them yourself? And Rebecca says, because Nick would hunt me down and kill me. My brother's a vindictive little bastard.
Real.
Stefan asks why she still cares about Klaus after the things he's done. And Rebecca says, listen, I hated Niklaus for a long time, but it became exhausting. So then Stefan tries to pry information about who she and Klaus were running from in the 20s, but she starts to get nervous because she's like, no, I can't tell you, Nick would kill me. And he's like, okay, no, it's fine, I'll drop it, sorry for making you uncomfortable. Then Rebecca's like, enough about me. Klaus told me about that girl you loved in Mystic Falls, and he also told me that you're only with him because he saved Damon. Just between us, I think Klaus secretly admires that about you, that you were willing to do this for your brother. But don't tell him I said that. And then Stefan's like, oh, don't worry, your secret's safe with me. It's a tender moment, and then she kisses him, and he kisses her back. And it's like, okay, I'm assuming Stefan is acting. But he does have his memories of this romance, like, suddenly in his head. So I'm sure he's dealing with that. Rebecca breaks the kiss, and she asks him if he thinks he'll ever love anyone the way he loved Elena. She doesn't mention her by name, but she's like, the way you loved that girl. And Stefan's like, maybe one day. And then Rebecca says, I told you I can always tell when you're lying, Stefan. And I was like, oh, I forgot. You're still shrewd at this point.
Yeah.
And Stefan's like, what? No, I'm totally... And she's like, no, don't bother, Stefan. Your kiss already gave you away. Oh. Which is a superpower I'm always fascinated by in fiction, when someone's like, I can tell by your kiss that you're not really into me. You're deceiving me.
Listen, the girl said it ages ago. It's in his kiss. That's how you know it's in his kiss.
Then Klaus comes in, and he's like, hey, where's Gloria? Haven't seen her in a while. And Rebecca's like, yeah, Nick, Stefan's not with us. He's been asking about Mikael. The first time she mentions Mikael by name, she's like, he's been asking about Mikael. I can sense he's not aligned with us. And Stefan's like, no. I swear I am loyal to you. Klaus attacks him.
Yeah.
At the end of the episode, Stefan wakes up in Klaus's coffin-carrying truck. Klaus is there. And Stefan's like, wait, okay, just let me explain. And Klaus is like, no, there's no need. Rebecca seems to believe you're still holding on to something. And Rebecca has great instincts, borderline supernatural. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
So Klaus is like, so, because of that, I brought us back to Mystic Falls to check out what exactly it is here that you are still clinging to and possibly keeping from me. Episode 5, The Reckoning. So it's senior prank night, which happens before the school year starts. Yes. Klaus quickly finds Elena, finally discovering that she survived the sacrifice. He's like, there's my girl. It's such a jump scare.
Yeah.
Because you expect there to be some sort of a build-up to Klaus finding her and being like, oh, dramatic, she's alive. But it's like, no.
Top of the episode. She turns a corner having just spoken to Tyler. Boom, walks right into Klaus. Terrifying. God.
He's so scary. In the next scene, Stefan wakes up after having his neck snapped again. This time, Rebecca's watching over him. And she's like, oh, my brother's got quite the temper. He's been snapping your neck all day.
I know why that's funny to me.
Before Stefan can concoct more excuses, she's like, don't bother. We already know all about the doppelganger being alive. Stefan's like, okay, where's Klaus? And Rebecca says, with any luck, ripping that cow's bloody head off.
The amount of hatred she immediately has for Elena, exclusively just for A, having been Stefan's love, past tense presumably, even though Stefan is still clearly in love with her, and B, now, I guess, having her necklace?
Oh yes, that comes in this episode later on.
She says, why is that doppelganger bitch wearing my necklace?
Yes. So Stefan attacks her. It's cute. Rebecca easily overpowers him.
Right.
And she's like, oh, you really do love her, don't you? Consider me jealous. And then she skewers him with a piece of metal, just like right through his chest. Meanwhile, inside the school, Klaus is dragging Elena along. He's like, I suspect that my hybrids are not taking because you are still breathing. And she's like, okay, fine, so then just kill me already. And he's like, no, I'm not going to do that. This is a scientific process. You know, we test out theories, we perform experiments. I have some hunches I want to look into first.
Klaus is the only person I respect in this show in that respect. He's the only one who will do an experiment and see it through. Okay, he will have trials, he will examine the information given to him, and he will theorize. Like, he's on top of this shit.
At the very least, you gotta respect that Catherine, after being force-fed the cure and offered Damon's blood, was like, wait a minute, I have the cure for vampirism in me. Who's to say that if I don't take vampire blood and die this time, I will just stay dead?
It's true.
Klaus says he's not going to kill her just yet. He comes into the school gym, puts on his patented fake American accent, and is like, attention seniors, you have officially been busted. They were like, aw, man, we gotta go home now.
This is definitely a teacher at our school that we know.
Why is he dragging Elena Gilbert by the arm while she looks terrified?
That's a lot of questions.
Klaus spots the two teens he compelled while he was possessing Alaric. And he's like, I remember you. And the girl Dana is like, I'm sorry, have we met? And he's like, don't worry, love. I wasn't in my right head the last time we met. And he compels her to lift her foot off the ground. And then compels the boy, Chad, to beat Dana to death if she drops grabs her leg. And Elena's like, you don't need to hurt anyone. And Klaus is like, oh, come on, love, of course I do.
It's what I do, babe. It's how I cause terror.
Rebecca comes into the school and finds Tyler and Caroline. She attacks Caroline and swipes Tyler. Bonnie comes into the gym just as Rebecca brings in Tyler, and Klaus is like, okay, cool, the gang's all here. Bonnie Bennett, the only witch in town. I need you to find me a way to successfully sire hybrids. He force feeds Tyler his blood and then snaps his neck. And he's like, now your own friend's fate rests on you figuring this out. TikTok. And he's like, I'm going to keep Elena here with me. And Rebecca drags Tyler's body off. Stefan wakes up and comes into the gym. He claims that he wants Klaus's forgiveness and to pledge his loyalty. Klaus is unconvinced, and Stefan assures him that Elena means nothing to him. And Klaus says, okay, prove your loyalty by killing Dana and Chad over there. And Elena's like, no, Stefan, you don't need to do that. Klaus already said he's not gonna, and Klaus whacks her in the face so hard she goes flying. It's reminiscent of Rose in season 2. Yes, I stole your word.
Because I would normally think not twice about it, but because you said it, and now I'm like, that was particular.
It's true. I normally wouldn't use the word whack there. I probably would have said smack or slap. It's actually a pretty awful scene, apart from like the violence against women and the fact that he's super strong.
Yes!
I also clocked that Dana and Chad are just watching this horrified, frozen in place. I think Klaus has released her from standing now that he's got the whole hybrid clock running. But they're still there. They can't leave, and they're just watching. They don't know what's going on. They don't know why this man just sent Elena flying across the basketball court.
Let me be clear. It is comical because of the physical comedy of it. We've said this before where it's like the ways, it's even with Rose where it's like she hits Elena so hard she flies across the room. That's why it's funny. It's kind of like the ridiculousness of it. Yes, and passes out. But a lot of people see that scene and are like, yeah, that'll shut you up, Elena. And it's like, guys, what are we talking about? This is awful. A lot of people will be like, yeah, Elena always mouthing off too much and Klaus showed her. And it's like, what?
Gosh.
Can we just reflect, please? I know you don't like this character. It does not need to be this way. I think you cannot like a character without being so awfully misogynistic and gross. I don't know.
And at the sight of Elena being hurt, Stefan rushes at Klaus and is like, oh, really? She means nothing to you, huh?
Right. I'm glad the dialogue reflects, because I can never remember the exact dialogue from this scene, but the fact that he's back because of the doppelganger shit, but so much of the emotional tension in this episode is that Stefan has promised Klaus that he has left this life behind and Elena behind, and is trying so desperately to prove to Klaus he doesn't care about his old girl. He's with Klaus now. He's devoted to Klaus. It's like all the clear thematic like beats are in this.
Klaus is like, you still care about your ex and you're lying to me.
Right. This is a romantic conflict.
You're still speaking with her.
This is someone going after the ex-girl and being like, I need to get rid of you so we can move on with our own relationship. But like, we can't say it.
And the more direct demonstration of that is the way in which Rebecca engages with Elena. She says the quiet part out loud. She is Klaus's proxy in that dynamic.
There must be a woman present or else it is explicitly gay, and we cannot have that.
He's like, oh, she doesn't mean anything to you? Your lies keep piling up, Stefan. And I'm like, no, Klaus, why are you acting like you caught your man cheating? Just relax. So Stefan says that he gives his word that he will do whatever Klaus wants if he lets Elena go. And Klaus is like, yeah, your word doesn't mean very much. Kind of like Elijah, but far less forgiving. Elijah said to Elena, your word doesn't mean much until you prove it. Now Klaus is like, no, your word doesn't mean much, so I'm going to make other plans. And he says, all summer I lived by your word, during which time I never had to resort to this. And then he compels Stefan, and he says, from now on, you will do exactly what I say when I say it. No running, no hiding, just total obedience. And then he orders Stefan to kill Dana and Chad. So that's the end of those two.
Oof. That too is also interesting because it's like Klaus's experience of the time since he made Stefan drink all that blood and turned him back into a ripper until now. There's that like, oh, we've been all cheery and lovely best pals in a way that was like voluntary on your end, even though it's like he's coerced Stefan to join him. And Stefan, as he's now discovered, did that to protect his loved ones. And in his mind, it's like, now you're forcing me to do this the way I have to do with everyone else. I thought you were different. And it's like, oh, Klaus, your perception of relationships is so warped. It's crazy.
He's like, I could excuse you doing it for Damon, but I draw the line at Elena.
Right, exactly. Because we pretend to care about the brother aspect, but this is what's important to him. This is what he cannot forgive.
Meanwhile, Caroline wakes up to find Tyler dead and in transition. Rebecca sits nearby, idly scrolling through Caroline's phone. I don't know how she unlocked it. Maybe she took Caroline's finger. I don't know if that was a thing in 2010.
Maybe that's
Caroline
what it was.
Didn't lock her phone.
They didn't have codes yet. They didn't have PIN codes on phones, I guess.
I feel like the PIN code predates the fingerprint thing. I don't know.
I'm trying to think, when was the first phone I had? 2011? And that had a PIN code for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know.
Caroline didn't lock her phone. She's like, I got nothing to hide. There's no crime
they live in Mystic Falls. Yeah, who's looking at
there's no theft in Mystic Falls. Just murder.
There's plenty of murder. No, there's a lot of animal attacks is what there is at Mystic Falls.
A lot of animal attacks, some vandalism, but
You know.
never any like people just stealing your things.
No.
Scrolling through Caroline's pics, with all the etiquette of like a teenager in 2009, just taking the friend's phone and being like, let me just go through your camera roll. It's like, excuse me? Did you ask? She finds a picture of Elena wearing the necklace. And she's like, why is that doppelganger bitch wearing my necklace?
Yeah, absolute fury. And, there's, I guess because it's a teen drama, right? That's what it is. Is the catty girl on girl fighting is what then develops from here on out.
Yeah.
So, it's a genre thing.
And the more of that we get, the less we'll get of shrewd Rebecca with her
Right.
keen instincts that are borderline supernatural. Like, is she kind of psychic because she's the daughter of a witch? No, she's just a mean girl. She's Regina George with vampirism. That's what she is.
That is the shame, that in trying to tailor this 1,000-year-old character to fit the genre of this story, she's whittled down to this very two-dimensional character that just does not fit what she's set up as when she's running around with Klaus and Stefan.
I feel like she still has dimensions. They're just not what we were promised.
Sure, that's fair.
It's not what it said on the box.
It's not what it says on the tin, as the British say. You're right. It does become a different vibe for her as we proceed. That's more focused on like family and like the loss of family and her desire for another one, and thereafter her desire for humanity to pursue that. And it's like, okay, cool, but that's not the vibe we were getting at first. I don't know.
Yeah, and maybe if they'd had more than one sister, they could have had their cake and eaten it too. We could have had the shrewd sister and then the sister who wants to be embroiled in high school drama.
Right, exactly. Turns out when you have more than one female character in a group, you can have variety and diversity of character. Who would have known?
Klaus watches Stefan feed, and again, it's like he's viewing old sex tapes. He's like, oh yeah, chow down on them, Stefan. That's what I like to see.
Yep. It's very psychosexual.
He says something interesting. He says, it's always good to see a vampire in his true element because the species has become such a broody lot in the modern age. And I was like, not Klaus saying bring back old romantic era Victorian Dracula vampires. Like, I'm tired of all this broody Twilight shit.
Which is funny because even in that, as you say, there is a romance to those vampires. So he's hearkening to an era that's never existed. There was never, at least in fiction, a vampire who existed that wasn't at least somewhat romantic until you get to the 90s of like the techno sci-fi brood vampires. Most eras of vampirism are fairly romantic.
Klaus is like, the good old days. Mind you, there were no good old days.
There were no
He's like,
good old
vampirism was ruined because of woke.
Exactly, the golden era. When, sir? When we were true monsters.
We were true monsters. You with your little paintings. I see you, Klaus.
I see you, Klaus. Facade. Pretense.
Rebecca comes in, demanding to know where her necklace is, and Elena's like, I don't have it anymore. Rebecca almost tears out her throat, but Klaus stops her. Rebecca's like, make her tell me where it is, Nick. And Elena's like, okay, Catherine stole it. That's the truth. I don't know where it is. So then Klaus is like, let's change the dynamic a little bit. I'm going to put that clock there, set it to 20 minutes. Bonnie Bennett, you now have 20 minutes to solve my hybrid problem, or Stefan is going to kill Elena. Bonnie has been frantically searching for Jeremy all episode, so now she's like, okay, I gotta use Matt. Because Jeremy has been kidnapped. She doesn't know where he is. Rebecca leaves. Klaus walks up but says to Stefan, who's under his compulsion, no one leaves. If she tries to run, fracture her spine. And I was like, damn. Because of course he's not going to kill her just yet. Tyler wakes up in transition. Caroline explains to him that he is becoming a hybrid. Rebecca's like, it's a fun thing. Like, tell him the great news. However, if Bonnie doesn't solve our little problem, Tyler's going to die for real. Matt manages to tell Bonnie that... I wrote this down feeling like that annoying scene in Goblet of Fire with Hermione delivering that message to Harry.
I see.
Like, Matt tells Bonnie that the original witch told Vicky that the reason that the hybrids won't take is Elena is still alive.
Yes, exactly so.
Klaus overhears them and is like, okay. But no, I'm going to shrewdly call the original witch's bluff. He finds Stefan chasing Elena because the 20 minutes are up. And seeing that Stefan is resisting his compulsion because he doesn't want to hurt Elena, Klaus is like, how interesting. So the only thing stronger than your craving for human blood and my compulsion is your love for this one girl. Turn it off. Stefan fights back one last time and Klaus screams, turn it off!
Yeah.
And then we enter our new no humanity Ripper Stefan era.
Even that moment, like the defiance against Klaus. And that too is twofold because it's like defying Klaus, period, is a thing he cannot comprehend. But like defying him for this other person that he loves that's not him just redoubles that. It's such a crisis point for this relationship, and it's like in his mind being like, well, I just have to resort to like controlling you completely still is not working, so now I have to break you entirely so that you can be perfectly subservient to me because you won't serve me willingly, so you give me no other choice.
Klaus just sulking like, you never resisted compulsion for me.
Right.
No, it's fine. I guess you like her more.
Right. There's a jealousy in that of like Stefan, who is effectively his closest friend, going to such lengths, seemingly on instinct for this other person in a way that he won't go for him. Even now, there's a jealousy there. There's a tragedy there,
and he truly believes that Ripper Stefan, and I guess by extension, no humanity Ripper Stefan, is the better version of him. Elena's like, "What did you do?" And he's like,
"I fixed him."
And I'm sure he thinks that's the truth. He's like, oh, good. No more broody, emotional, compassionate, I only feed off animals nonsense. This is the way you should be. Even though I don't think Stefan had no emotions in the 20s. Or maybe
that's
he did.
the delusion, right? He had his emotions on, Stefan, at that time. It's the reason he made friends with Klaus. Because Stefan, on no humanity, is awful in a way that would not have made him amenable to Klaus in the 20s when they met. Klaus is in a delusion when he does this. It does not improve their relationship. In fact, in this moment, he then has to flee town, as you'll get to. And by the time he comes back, he frees Stefan, who immediately becomes his enemy. So, this is a delusional move on Klaus's end. A desperate one, too.
Insult to injury. Klaus then orders no humanity Stefan to feed from the doppelganger. Ugh. He also takes some of Elena's blood to Tyler, and he makes Tyler drink it, and Tyler consumes the doppelganger blood and successfully completes his transition. Later on, Rebecca and Klaus discuss the genius of the original witch's failsafe. And Rebecca's like, oh my gosh, so smart of you. Like, how'd you figure out that she was, like, using reverse psychology? And Klaus is like, well, you know how much the original witch hated me. Why would I do anything other than the opposite of what she says? And I'm like, okay. We'll later on learn that her hating you is kind of an exaggeration on your part. But of course, always the victim, aren't you, Klaus?
Well, I mean, in that case, he was a little bit the victim, to be fair.
She didn't hate him, though. He's like, oh, you know how much she hated me.
That's dramatics entirely. You're absolutely right. But,
so he's like, yeah, she obviously put this failsafe in place to make sure that even if I broke the curse, I'd never be able to make more hybrids, and I'd be forever alone. Oh. And Rebecca's like, is that why you're so obsessed with making hybrids? Because you don't want to be alone. Klaus dodges the question and is like, what I want, Rebecca, is to take my hybrid and my doppelganger and leave this town. Like, answer the question, Klaus. He sends Rebecca off to ready the truck. I guess he's all out of servants at this point. Oh, I will say, I like that. I hadn't remembered that. I like that when Klaus is like, I want to leave town now because I'm not that interested in Mystic Falls at this point. I want to leave with my blood bag Elena. He's like, but I'm also going to take Tyler, my first successful hybrid. Like, I'm not just going to leave him here.
This is what this was all for.
My progeny.
Yeah, my first successful hybrid.
Imagine Klaus just road tripping with Tyler and Elena.
His small son, his Rolex watch. Just a fun time on the road with the gang. Oh.
I would watch that reality show. Tyler, the hybrid, Klaus, the original, Elena, the unwilling doppelganger, Rebecca and Stefan, who are like in this
in
awkward,
the backseat.
We had history, but now we're not together anymore vibe.
Right. And we're both kind of beholden to Klaus, but in a weird, toxic way. It's like, it's a fun conceit.
So when Rebecca leaves, Damon shows up, and Klaus almost kills him, but then Damon name drops Mikael and says he knows where Klaus is. So Klaus runs away, and he leaves Rebecca behind.
Yeah, crazy.
He drains Elena of a lot of her blood, though, before he leaves. He's like, compelled the nurse to fill up some blood bags for him. And at the end of the episode, Catherine and Jeremy find Michael's crypt. Episode 6, Smells Like Teen Spirit. Klaus has skipped town, ditched Rebecca, much to her chagrin, so she promptly decides to move herself into the Salvatore house. She's like, which room is mine? And I'm like, what? You weren't invited here. Damon is not pleased, but Stefan has no humanity, so he's like, I don't want her here either, but I guess she's staying. I'm not going to fight her.
And it's like, what are you going to do to her? She's 1,000 years old. She lives here now. Make yourself comfortable.
Damon is just like not vibing with her. Stefan is ignoring her, and she's like, rude, both of you. I'll find my own way. And then like wanders off to find one of those 6 other bedrooms that Damon was telling Catherine about. Later on, Rebecca shows up at Mystic Falls High. She waltzes into Alaric's history class as he's about to talk about who he calls our nation's original founders, the Native Americans.
Right.
And Rebecca's like, what about Vikings? And I'm like, not very PC, Rebecca.
What about the Vikings, Rebecca?
He's talking about indigenous people. Why are you...
Frankly, people who don't get enough of a voice in this goddamn show that pulls so heavily from their culture. Maybe we should talk about them. Rebecca.
And Alaric, who doesn't know who she is like, there's no record of Vikings settling in this area. Sorry, who are you?
You're not on the register.
She's like, oh, I'm Rebecca, the new girl. And history's my favorite subject.
God.
Rebecca is next seen forcing her way onto the cheerleading squad. There's a blink and you'll miss it line where someone is like, where's Dana? Some extra on the squad. So I guess Dana was a cheerleader and now she's dead and no one knows.
She was. There's a scene we saw with Matt we discussed in the Caroline episode, and I was like, well, here's another Dana scene. Apparently she's racking them up. And she asks Matt about the meat he was supposed to bring for the barbecue. And she's in a cheerleader outfit. So,
gosh.
Dana.
Someone asks where she is and Rebecca's like, I guess I'll just take her place. And Caroline is very peeved by her presence. And she tells Rebecca, you can't just barge into our lives. And Rebecca says, it's only your life I'm interested in. Your spunk, your popularity, maybe even your boyfriend. Checking out Tyler, who's doing football practice.
Wild. About to single white female her. My goodness.
Rebecca then does like some cool cartwheels, probably helped by her vampire powers. I don't know.
And her incredible stunt double.
Even Tyler is like, wow, girl's got some moves. And Caroline's like, really?
Excuse
really,
me?
Tyler?
Get your head out of your ass. Or get your head out of Klaus's ass. Oh, we haven't discovered that yet. Don't worry.
Once again, Rebecca is the proxy. That night, Rebecca is at a high school party in the woods. Stefan comes over and she's like, have you seen Tyler? Tyler's been taken out of commission by the Mystic Falls gang because they're like, you're acting weird and all like hybrid zombie minion. Stefan's like, oh, you're into Tyler now? And she says, well, when you decide to give me the time of day again, we'll talk. But until then, a girl has needs.
Wow, the door's open. She's like, I'm just occupying myself, Stefan. When you want to get real, let me know.
But Stefan has no feelings, so he doesn't care. Later on, Rebecca sits alone, and Damon comes up to her. He's been tasked with distracting her. He flirts with her. She's like, what, no friends your own age? And Damon's like, oh, like you can talk.
Actually...
He tries to preoccupy her by being charming and making a metaphor about, oh, how she's not enjoying the marshmallow because she's focusing on the charred, hard outer shell and she hasn't gotten to the rich, gooey, soft center.
I remember
I'm like,
the
it's
scene
you,
with
Rebecca.
The
you are the marshmallow.
Do you get it? Have you understood?
the last sliver of her shrewdness comes through now, and she realizes that he's up to something, and she's like, you're distracting me. Why? And Damon's like, I'm just trying to be a good housemate. She says, it'll never be a fair fight between us. Remember that. And then she skewers him with the s'mores stick.
And it is the last cool thing she will do, unfortunately.
I'll say it's at least the last time that she clocks when someone is manipulating her, particularly in like a romantic / sexual sort of way. It's a pity, because that'll be their go-to move for Rebecca.
It's like, all right, some man in the group go distract Rebecca because it'll work regardless of who you are. Let's get somebody on that.
Gosh. So much worse than Klaus, for whom it's only the one girl.
Right.
They're like, no, so who's available? Stefan, Matt, Damon, someone? Go. Just
any of you. Tyler even. I think it might still work. You're our weakest option, but in a desperate moment.
Speaking of Tyler, Tyler and Caroline have just finished having makeup sex. Caroline leaves, and then Rebecca turns up with a compelled human. A girl, again. For Tyler to feed off of. And Tyler's like, you shouldn't be here, you should go. She's like, no, I think my brother would want his new hybrid to get the full vampire experience. Tyler gives into his bloodlust and feeds on the girl. Does she survive? No idea. She's never directly brought up again. I think the next day he shows up at school with like blood on his shirt, like one little drop.
Yeah.
But we never find out whether he ate this girl to death. Because Rebecca certainly wouldn't have stopped him, and he's a newbie vamp. So...
Right. And I was gonna ask, because as you say, it's enough that he's a newbie vamp who's still learning to grapple with his bloodlust that he gave into that. But I was curious if they don't engage in it, but I was curious if it's like her saying, I think Klaus would want you to do this. Is that enough to like nudge a bit? I don't know.
Ooh, I've never thought of that. You're so smart. That probably was a bit of a trigger phrase.
I don't think it's that smart of me to think of that.
And he was like, say less, let's eat.
Right, but it's like, it opens up this thing of like, is it because Rebecca's related to Klaus that she could make that push? Or could anybody suggest that something is in Klaus's best interest and it might make him more inclined to do so? I don't know, it's curious. The Cybon's weird.
Yeah, maybe. He knows who's on Klaus's side. That's why when the Mystic Falls gang was plotting against Klaus, he's like, well, it's not in Klaus's best interest. And they were like, what?
Right.
What did you just say?
It doesn't always have to be an active command from Klaus, at least at first, before he figures out he's sired. It seems to be he's just ambiently loyal. Interesting.
Episode 8 is Ordinary People. This is the episode in which Elena, Damon, and Alaric uncover the origins of vampirism through the underground caves and Rebecca's flashbacks. They learn that the presence of werewolves in the area predates the resident werewolf family, the Lockwoods, who only arrived in the 19th century, and they also discover runic names etched into the cavern walls. Among the names are Niklaus, Elijah, Rebecca, and Mikael. And this is how they discover Mikael is the original sibling's father. The other names on the wall, which I guess you can see if you do like freeze frames or whatever, are Esther, Finn, Henrik, Cole, Eric, and Aaron, which I've discussed with you.
Right. Nonsense people who do not exist.
Eric was a name being considered by Mikael before they were like, oh shit, we can't have a Bill and an Eric as characters. The other vampire show has that on HBO.
Right.
And Aaron, for a long time, people just decided between the two names that must be Esther's firstborn. Turns out to not be true. I guess those were just, I don't know, friends.
Yeah, neighbors who also
cousins, Michael's nephews who emigrated with them.
Right. Because they did come over as a community. It wasn't just their family. And listen, go back to the Esther and Mikael episode. It's a fairly early one, but I've like fixed up some of the audio so that it's actually listenable. But we do have a fun conversation about all this stuff pertaining to the Mikaelson's origins.
But within the context of this episode, those last two names, effectively meaningless. Elena initially assumes that the carvings are another culturally appropriative fake made by Klaus. She's like, it's gotta be another one of Klaus's fakes, you know, like the Aztec sun and moon curse drawings.
Right. He's known to do
yes,
that.
Elena, clock him. He's talking about Aztec carvings and all these other things that he's made up, like African writing on the walls.
The
I was like, oh, African
cave scrollings, and it's like, babe,
just African in general, Klaus. Okay, wow.
Okay. We all have the same language and wrote on the same cave.
Should have known that was just a white man, honestly. Egg on our faces for thinking he was mixed.
No, not egg on my face. Egg on the writer's faces for saying that.
flashbacks show us human Rebecca living in ye old-timey society in a Nordic colony that used to exist where Mystic Falls is today, and doing such scandalous things as wielding a blade and being late to help her mother with supper.
As a gal.
She's the one who etched the Mikaelsons' names into the cave wall, and Klaus finds and is like, Rebecca, father wouldn't be happy if he found you wielding a blade. And she cheekily puts the blade into his hand the way you are not supposed to hand people sharp objects. She gives him the pointy end. It cuts him and he's like, Rebecca. And she's like, oh, calm down, Nick. It's just a little blood. And I'm like, ha.
She's even in flashback, she's presented as this rambunctious force.
And then she's like, okay, I've got to leave. I have to go help mother with the supper. And I was like, oh, the only daughter. It figured.
Unfortunately, it must sit
I know
me.
Those brothers are playing outside. When she goes, Klaus is like, yes, run along, leave the blades to the men. And I was like, all right, Klaus, even as a human, a little bit. But it's fine. It was the 10th century.
Though. It's banter, right?
It was a different time.
For the 10th century, it's actually quite there's an understanding that it's because of expectations that we're doing. The joke of leave the swords with the men. It's well, we know she'd much rather be outside playing and having fun and fighting with a sword. But what can we do? We're 6 years old. We're 15, but
Are they meant to be teens?
I don't know.
They were I don't know. Well. Yeah, we'll get into it. Into it. So this version of Klaus is tender, not yet evil, and very frightened of his father.
Which is it's the same thing we had with Catherine, right? And to an extent, Damon, going back to the human self for the first time and seeing how wildly different they are from who they are now. He's the sweet,
they're all such
little boy.
Softies.
Yeah.
With shitty dads.
Yeah, they all have shitty dads. The root of all evil is an awful father figure, it turns out.
Elena approaches Rebecca at school and asks her about the cave drawings. Rebecca doesn't want to tell her, and Elena's like, well, Mikael's on the way. Does that name mean anything to you? And Rebecca's like, Mikael? How dare you name drop Mikael? You should be aware of that, man, because if he comes here, he'll kill us all, not just my brother. But she still refuses. Another flashback shows us Mikael terrorizing Klaus in his human days. Klaus was just, I don't even know what upset this man. The scene, as I understand it, is Klaus is sword fighting with Elijah. Then he's like, let me show you this cool move that I learned, which gets a little too whimsical. And Mikael is like, oh, so this is a joke to you. So it's funny, huh? Show me the move. No, come show me. Let's do it. Let's sword fight. And Klaus is like, I'm sorry, I was just showing Elijah. Like, no, you think we have time for games? We struggle for our survival here, and you out here doing pirouettes while sword fighting like a little sissy. And it's like, Michael, what?
It is truly only that Klaus was having fun. That was enough to piss Michael off. That is the scene, right? It's that Klaus dared to enjoy himself in that moment. And Michael said, and I took that personally.
I guess Michael was like, yo, sword fighting isn't meant to be fun. This is training for strength and survival.
But the move worked. Michael. The move disarmed Elijah. So he did what was expected of him. Michael's just mad because he enjoyed it. It's not real unless you've struggled and whatever. No, you just hate your son. That's all it is.
Gosh.
Sucks. That's what I'm saying. I understand you have an opinion of the retcon, but I'm just like, this guy has always sucked. He's
always sucked. I think we'll
delve into it.
It's just certain things, and it's not just Michael. I was thinking the other day, you were like, oh, it's all the dad retcons. It's also Esther and Michael. There's a significant worsening of the things they're willing to do and the values they have once they go over to the spin-off show. Because Esther, it's like, my children are evil and need to die. I'm going to kill them, whatever means necessary. Suddenly in the originals, it's like, she's relishing in doing all these things. She doesn't care about the balance of nature anymore. She's using dark magic whenever she wants to.
Well, at that point, they've killed her twice. So to be frank, it's revenge at this point. Now I want you dead for me. You little shits. You think you can just kill your mother and get away with it? No.
And Michael, who in the Vampire Diaries is like, I turned my children into vampires, yes, to make them strong and powerful. The bloodlust was never my intention, which is why I don't feed off people. I'm the vampire who hunts vampires. My son is an abomination. These are the values I have. I'm not good, but I do have my own code that I live by. And suddenly in the originals, it's like, well, actually, no, I will eat this child because I'm hungry right now, and the ends justify the means.
Which child is this? Does he threaten to eat Hope? Oh, Davina.
Davina!
I was like, what? I mean, look, it's New Orleans. Something happens when they go to New Orleans. Apparently, Tyler was threatening to kill Hope, which is a whole other thing where I'm just like, that's absolute nonsense.
There's something in the air there.
It's simply ridiculous that they did that. But anyway.
Yeah. It's truly that he's just having fun and he didn't like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, and all the things you've said about, like, the dance of battle rather than the rugged, manly forcefulness. It's like, why are you pirouetting with that sword? I taught you a manly swipe, and you're here flicking and swishing.
Frankly, if you'd been to Southern Europe, Michael, with your Nordic ass, you'd have seen this is the way sword fighting is developing there.
This is the style. Have you heard of Sirio Forel? Thank you very much.
Rebecca invites Elena to the Salvatore house. Elena finds her watching some compelled young women. This time it makes sense that they're women. They're modeling clothes for her. Rebecca's like, which dress do you like, Elena? And Elena's like, girl, I don't want to play games with you. You told me you were going to tell me the bedtime stories about the originals. If that's not what's going to happen, then I'm going to leave. And then Rebecca's like, okay, let me make it clear to you that I'm the one calling the shots.
Yep.
Vam speeds over to one of the models and she's like, I will tear her throat out. I'm going to eat her. Pick a damn dress. And Elena's like, okay, fine. The red one. And I was like, oh, the red one. Let's remember that. Elena picked the dress.
All right.
Rebecca then tells Elena not to threaten her and that Elena will only learn what Rebecca allows her to learn. Elena tells Rebecca that Elijah told her their father was a landowner in Europe. She conveniently leaves out the eastern part. She's like, yeah, Elijah said your father was a landowner in Europe. And I was like, no, he said Eastern Europe, Elena. Don't act like you forgot.
Elena turns to the camera and says, Europe. And then looks back at Rebecca. Problem solved. Got away with that one. Phew.
He said Scandinavian and you heard Eastern. It's like Laurel and Yanny. They sound exactly the same.
There's a precedence. What don't you understand? This is very simple.
Elena asks how their family ended up in the New World. Rebecca tells the story of how her parents' firstborn child died of a plague, not true, and how their mother's friend, the witch Ayana, who I guess was just living in Norway. Okay,
why not?
Black Vikings.
Made her way. They were certainly Black Vikings.
She heard from the spirits, like you're always saying, these yappy spirits, of a mystical land where the people were healthy and strong. Specifically this area in, I guess, future Mystic Falls with werewolves. She's like, yeah, they were blessed with gifts of strength and speed. And
who does she say
health.
were blessed with strength and speed?
Did she say the natives? I can't remember.
She does say the natives. You say it yourself in the Esther and Mikael episode. That's what she says. I remember very clearly.
Having recently watched the scene again, I don't think she used the word natives, but it's definitely implied.
I have to double check.
I certainly read it that way. So I wouldn't begrudge anyone else having read it that way. That's certainly what we thought. And in the Twilight era, I think that's what they wanted us to believe. That it was Native American werewolves mining from Stephanie Meyer's problematic ass.
Sure. But it's like, it's what they're saying in this scene. There really is no other way to read it. I feel like if they were suggesting that there were prior European people that had already been here before they got here, who had intermarried with Native American people and descended several generations, and those were the werewolves they were talking about, I think they would have said that.
It was both. It was the natives and their white descendants who were all living together in blissful harmony.
Sure.
Rebecca says that her family lived there for 20 years in peace. And in that time, they had more children. This is what I was going to get back to. We know based on the spin-off, I know it's not established now, but at least based on the spin-off's canon, that Esther already had Elijah in utero before they left.
Yes.
Which means that by the time these people are made vampires, Elijah is at least meant to be 20, if not like 21.
Based on the maths. Interesting.
Yeah. I think Rebecca and Cole might have been like the only like teens in the family. But yeah, Rebecca says they lived in peace until Klaus's curiosity about the werewolves accidentally got their youngest brother Henrik mauled to death. Rebecca tells Elena that she doesn't get her and Stefan as a couple. And Elena's like, that's because you don't know who Stefan is.
Ooh.
And Rebecca's like, girl, I know who he is because I'm a vampire and I understand vampirism. Vampires don't care about humans and their silly little lives. And then Elena's like, oh, is that why you called me on over here to help you pick out dresses? Because you don't care about humans?
Clock her. Because what are you talking about while you parade dresses for a school event? School, a thing that didn't exist when you were a child. You don't care about humans.
And she's like, you know what? I don't have to take this. If you're just going to keep me around here to bully and throw shade at, you're obviously not going to tell me the full story of your family, so I'm just going to go. And then Rebecca's like, okay, fine. I'm getting to it. I'll tell you. And she's like, so yeah, after my brother was mauled, my father was like, well, the wolves are a danger to us and our family. They are our enemies now. And Lena's like, cool, why didn't you run away? And Rebecca's like, girl, pride. My father wasn't going to run away. Why run when we can resort to the dark arts?
Right. Why run when I have a magical wife who'll do everything I want?
She tells the story of how Esther ultimately turned them into vampires because Ayana wouldn't do it. That's how they became the original vampires, and Esther got the title of the original witch, the witch of the original family. Solving that mystery, thankfully. She also tells Elena that you cannot be both vampire and witch, so Esther was the only surviving member of the family who didn't become a vampire. When the bloodlust drove them to feed and kill, Klaus triggered his werewolf side, and that's when Esther's infidelity was revealed, because they all knew that lycanthropy was hereditary, and she obviously wasn't a werewolf. So that had to mean... Rebecca says Mikael went and slaughtered half the village when he found out, even though by this point Esther had already cast the spell to suppress Klaus's werewolf side.
Right.
As
it's
an
not
act of
enough
penance.
to do that. He must show that he is not to be overrun as a man, to be emasculated in this manner.
You betrayed me.
Right.
I need to kill all trace of this embarrassment.
Wild.
And frankly, I'm relieved that now I have an excuse to kill Klaus. I knew there was something about this boy.
You know?
I knew it.
And now you've just given me the ammunition. Oh, it sucks. And it does suck for Klaus to be like, it sucks for any child of infidelity for that to then hang on them, that you are always the reminder of a decision made long before you were even a thought, of a decision of a parent of yours that has nothing to do with like who you are as a person, but that's just the nature of human emotion, especially when you're a man like Mikael, who's never heard of rationality and reason in your life.
Yeah. Rebecca says that Mikael killed Esther in a rage afterwards, and that Klaus saw Mikael tear Esther's heart from her chest. Afterwards, Elijah, Rebecca, and Klaus made their always and forever pact. She says that the rest of their family scattered. Finn and Cole are nowhere to be seen.
Yeah.
Maybe they hadn't been cast yet. I don't know. She even says Mikael went off in a rage. I suppose he circled back later to decide to hunt Klaus down. He just went muttering off into the woods like, that darn cheating witch and her werewolf boy. Afterwards, he was like, well, actually, no, let me come back and kill you too. But by
Now
then,
I remember I hate my son, and now I have a reason to kill him.
Elena can't understand why Rebecca would stand by Klaus after he locked her in a coffin for 90 years. And Rebecca says, he's my brother and I'm immortal. Should I spend eternity alone instead?
Yeah.
Which is something you always call back to, where you're like, these people are these ancient, ageless beings holding a grudge that long for someone who's always going to be in your life. Yeah, sometimes you might just get over it and be like,
You've gotta. Who
Family.
else have you got that's gonna be around as long as you will? It's so sad, but in a weird way, it's like, damn. That's kind of like the essence of family, right? More often than not, obviously in some cases, listen, cut off your family. But sometimes you've just gotta make allowances because family's family. That's just how it is. At least that's the way you grow up. Two things about this episode. One, the return of Daniel Gillies finally as Elijah in a flashback, because we have not seen him this entire time. He is
yes.
daggered. And two, Rebecca being this mirror for Klaus, in that it's the same thing that Klaus understands but will never say out loud, that all they have is each other. The way he expresses that is by daggering Rebecca every time she leaves him. The way she expresses it is by sticking with him even after he has done that to her. It's the same situation, but she's always on the, what's the expression? The bad end of the stick? What? She's always at
She always gets the short end of the stick?
She always gets the short end of the stick of that, situation. And also is a mirror for Klaus in that, as you said, and as Elena clocks, this whole rigmarole of like having these girls parade their dresses, making sure Elena stays to listen to this whole story and trying to stop her from leaving. She's alone now that Klaus is gone. She's desperately alone in this moment where she sticks around in Mystic Falls, and she needs a friend. Elena's like the only companionship she's had in some time, because she was daggered for 90 years. These girls she can compel. Elena's on Vervain. Elena can't be compelled, but is coming to her to ask something, and Rebecca goes, well, I need to find a way to keep you around because I need someone to talk to. I am by myself. It's sad.
Oh, Rebecca.
Oh, Rebecca.
And Elena does commiserate with her in the upcoming episode. Here, Rebecca is like, after everything I've told you about Mikael and how monstrous he is, you're still gonna go and try to summon him anyway. And she's like, you can do that, but if you come for my brother, I will rip you apart. Elena later on returns to Rebecca to tell her the truth she learned from the cave drawings. Klaus killed Esther, not Mikael. Rebecca is like, denial is a river in Egypt and I'm swimming in it. Klaus would never do that. And Elena's like, no, but listen, Klaus had all this rage and aggression from the werewolf gene, which would have been heightened when he was turned. And then Esther broke his heart by dooming him to be the only one of his kind and turning her back on him as a result of her own lies about his parentage. And so he got upset and he killed her. Like, it makes sense given your brother's behavior and his personality. And Rebecca gets very upset and she's like, why are you doing this to me, Elena? I've done nothing to you. And she's like, I'm trying to show you that your brother is a monster. He's been terrorizing me and my friends, and he's been terrorizing you. He killed your mother, and then he made up this lie about your father so he wouldn't lose you too.
Yeah.
And Rebecca gets very upset and breaks down, but she eventually realizes that Elena is telling the truth. She does have this crazy line where she takes Elena's receipts, the pictures from the cave drawings, and she throws them into a fire, and she's like, these pictures don't mean anything. They're just stupid drawings by stupid people who had no idea who my family was. And I was like, stupid people?
Hey, babes.
All right, dial it back.
Hey, your father is beginning to show. Listen.
She ultimately accepts that Elena is right, and Elena goes back to the Mystic Falls gang as like, I think we have Rebecca on our side. Elsewhere in the episode, Mikael forces Stefan's hand, and he agrees to lure Klaus back to Mystic Falls. Episode 9, Homecoming. Stefan phones Klaus, that little intricate, it's like a heist movie.
Yeah.
Phones Klaus, tells him Mikael is dead, well, daggered. The Mystic Falls gang has hatched an elaborate plan involving Mikael and Rebecca. Mikael lets Elena dagger him so that when Klaus questions Stefan over the phone, Stefan is still under his compulsion, he will technically be telling the truth when he says, yes, Mikael's dead. I'm looking right at his body. Klaus is like, what about Rebecca? Where's she? And they're like, no, she's right here. Rebecca's like,
hey, Nick.
Yeah, Nick, I'm here. Mikael's dead. They're telling the truth.
Yeah.
So Klaus is like, okay, cool. I'm going to come back home. And then Elena removes the dagger. Hours later, Mikael reawakens. He has a scene with Rebecca, which is, it's good for them. He sees Rebecca for the first time in, I guess, maybe centuries, close up, maybe in decades.
Yeah.
She is unreceptive to his attempts to reconcile. He's like, Rebecca! And she's like, whatever fatherly rubbish you're thinking, you can save it. I have nothing to say to you. And he's like, okay, I see. Where's my dagger? And she says, oh, the Salvatores have it, so you can forget whatever plans you had of using it on me. And he's like, what? You? And he's like, no, Rebecca, all those years I was chasing you guys across the world. I was hunting Klaus, not you.
Which is like, oh, I feel great now. Let's reunite in love and hope. Because all you were doing was hunting my brother, your son.
And that's what she says. She's like, Nick is my family. If you were after him, you were after me. And then Mikael is like, Haibo, Rebecca, he killed your mother. Which you know now.
That's fair. You know what? New information has entered the ring.
Rebecca is like, listen, I know what Nick has done, and he will pay for it with his life tonight. But Nick was not born a killer. None of us were.
Which is so true.
You did this when you forced us to turn into vampires. You destroyed our family, not him. And I was like, yeah.
It all starts with them. Original sin.
So to speak. Elena finds Rebecca already changed into her homecoming dress, the red dress that Elena picked out the other day. Rebecca laments that she never had time to experience high school because she was always fleeing Mikael.
Again, you were 900 at the time, so why would you go to high school? I get that, you know, that's the vampire thing to do, I suppose, but Girl, you've lived so long.
She finishes dancing at the speakeasy and then she goes to class the next day. Because
Right.
who's going to stop her?
She goes to high school in the 20s America when it's like she's been very easily moving as a grown woman throughout the society for so long.
I always say it must be wild to be a vampire who's that old because the concept of adolescence and being a teenager is fairly new in Western culture.
Yeah.
So to then suddenly be like, yeah, I was 16 and I was an adult. And then somewhere in like the 19th century, people started being like, no, you're a child. You need to be in school. You
And
can't
it's
vote.
like, I was expected to bear children like 2 years ago. What are you talking about?
Rebecca's clearly very emotional. She's talking about the dance and, you know, all the things she's going to get to do. But you can see that there's still some lingering discomfort about the whole Klaus ambush. She even tells Elena she doesn't want any details about the plan to kill Klaus. However, she warns Elena not to trust Mikael. She says, whatever you might think about my brother, Mikael is not a good person. He can't be trusted. No one in my family can. And Elena's like, yeah, about trusting people in your family. I had an interesting conversation with Bonnie earlier today, who's been on the outs with my brother. And she was like, yeah, but Jeremy's your brother. I can't ask you to be mad at my boyfriend if it's your brother, because you'll always forgive family. That's what family is. And Elena's like,
We cannot rely on Rebecca in this. It's not personal.
She's like, are you okay, Rebecca? And Rebecca's like, I spent my whole life loving and hating my brother with equal measure. I just never thought I'd be the one to help drive a stake through his heart. And Lena's like, okay, yeah, that's it.
You've gotta go, babe. We have a job to do. And this is Elena, too, who, for the longest time, it was like, my emotions, my humanity. Even she's like, girl, we gotta kill this man. Please.
Elena turning the empathy guns on herself and being like, yeah, I can see that your compassion is gonna spoil everything. Pretends to be giving Rebecca her mother's necklace and like, I can just fix the cloth for you. Daggers her in the back.
Yeah, which sadly ruins their relationship forever.
Oh, yeah. They'd reached some nice common ground at this point.
Yeah.
It's over after this. Tyler moves the party to his house after the school gym floods. Klaus shows up in a celebratory mood. He's like, woo, yeah, time to party. My dad's dead. Or at least I'm going to kill him permanently at some stage. Or maybe leave him daggered. I don't know, but I'm in a great mood. Stefan and Klaus speak, and Klaus claims he's going to reunite his family. And I'm like, okay. He seems to think that they will all forgive all the daggering and abuse as soon as he tells them Mikael is dead. And I'm like, did you frame the daggering as being because Mikael was after you? Like, I had to put you down for your own good because father is hunting us? Like, what?
Oh, there's so much going on in this man's mind. Oof.
Delulu. Stefan asks Klaus if he wants to be taken to Mikael. Klaus is like, no, bring Mikael to me. I wasn't born yesterday. And Stefan is like, okay, but I want freedom from your compulsion. And Klaus says, I will grant you your freedom once Mikael is dead and the white oak stake that he has is destroyed. Klaus then speaks to Tyler, and Tyler's like, whoa, man, my mother would kill me if she saw this party. And Klaus is like, don't worry, I compelled Carol Lockwood to go to church and pray for your friends. And Tyler's like, what? And he's like, yeah, your friends. Because your friends, I don't know, there's something very weird going on here. But this party, have you noticed that some of the guests here you've never seen before? Yeah, those are the hybrids I've been making over the last few weeks. So they're my backup if your friends try anything. You've been warned. And you can go ahead and warn them as well.
You can go ahead and tell that. It's you said it before. It's a shame that we don't get more of Klaus and Tyler, given what will come to be about that pairing going forward. Because now that he's made all these hybrids who are introduced in this episode, the hybrids just become a numerous bunch, right? It's just a pack of hybrids. There's no particular one, except Tony, icon. The avenue to the hybrid experience, especially as all the hybrids are sired to Klaus, would be so greatly interesting to explore through Tyler as to what it means in the day-to-day to be beholden to Klaus. How does he treat them beyond what we see when he is sending off his hybrids to attack people or guard places or whatever? What is even Klaus's experience of these hybrids on the interpersonal level? And because they don't explore that, all we are to gather is that, well, they're just his slaves, which is the fact of the matter in like a literal sense, but it's like even in how he relates to them as people, they are just people who work for him because he owns them.
Yeah.
It sucks that it's like it doesn't go much deeper than that.
Just the bad guys mooks, the henchmen, those putty things dancing around the Power Rangers.
Precisely,
As they
they're
fight the
putty
real
men.
big bad for the episode.
They're putty men.
Putty men. I mean, we don't even learn about like their autonomy as characters because they're in this like Tyler, but the Mystic Falls gang is just like dropping them whenever they need to.
Just slaughtering these people.
Until season 4, that's just inconsequential.
Right.
Yeah.
It kind of
It's only in
sucks.
season 4 when Tyler begins to bond with them where he's like, no, shame. I'm trying to free these people. These are my people. In season 3, it's like, no, let's kill the faceless horde.
Right. Because that's all they are.
Klaus's, you said the hybrids don't have names. 2 of them have names this season. There's
wow.
Mindy and then later Daniel.
Love. Is Daniel the like reddish haired one and Mindy's the black one with the curls?
Yeah,
Okay,
with the flip.
Cool.
She stole Rose's hairstyle.
Bless. Doesn't she die this episode?
Not yet, no, not
Okay.
yet. Klaus's new hybrid lieutenant, Mindy, comes to get him. She tells him that Mikael is waiting outside for him, and Klaus goes to see Mikael in the doorway, unable to enter without invitation. Klaus threatens to have his hybrids attack Mikael and tear him limb from limb. I'm like, I don't really think they could, because Mikael can't be killed, but I guess they can try. And Mikael reveals that, surprise, I can compel your hybrids because they have a vampire side, which makes them vulnerable to original vampire status, which is, I guess, the only vulnerability, apart from Vervain, that the werewolves pick up on when they become hybrids. That and like invitation, maybe?
I guess, yeah, Tyler needs to be invited in, yeah.
Yeah, invitation, Vervain, and now originals can compel you.
Fair enough. Hey, fair trade.
Yeah, I mean, you're immortal, much stronger.
You don't have to turn. You don't need a daylight ring.
You don't need to
so
ingratiate
huge.
yourself to a witch.
Huge.
Mikael has Elena, actually Catherine, and he's like, Klaus, if you don't come out and face me, I'm gonna kill her. With Elena dead, you'll never be able to make more of your abominations. And Klaus is like, I don't need hybrids. I just need to be rid of you.
Yeah.
And Mikael drags Klaus so much in this last scene. He says that Klaus will just end up living forever with no one by his side. And he tells Klaus that no one cares about him anymore, and he has no one except those whose loyalty he forces. Which I'm like, not untrue.
Yeah, it's not untrue because he's manifested his greatest fear, right? It's like because he's so afraid everyone will abandon him, he has now forced people by his side. Oh, God.
Klaus calls his bluff, so Mikael stabs Elena, seemingly killing her. Klaus is like, no.
Genuine terror. Tears on his face.
I don't know why he thought Mikael would give a damn about Elena. Like, honestly, who is she to him?
Yeah.
Damon attacks Klaus with the white oak stake, doesn't manage to actually stake him. Catherine reveals herself, throws some Wolfsbane grenades
Baboom.
at the hybrids outside, and Stefan comes in, stops Damon from staking Klaus. The stake rolls across the floor while the Salvatore brothers wrestle. Klaus picks it up, leaps at Mikael, and stakes him through the heart.
Yeah.
He bursts into flames and dies.
Yeah, it takes so long. He's crying out for a long bit, like a keening deer or something that's been hunted. Just like,
He's like,
There's a lot of vibrating. Oh, it's rough.
It's closer to Finn in the mechanics of how the fire spreads, but it's closer to Cole in that he's clearly alive for a little bit.
Yes,
as he's
while
dying.
burning.
Not as bad as Cole, though. Damn, Cole gets the worst of it.
Cole suffers, bless. But who gives a shit? It's Cole.
It was all that mischief. He was my favorite original.
I know.
Okay. Klaus releases Stefan from his thrall, and Catherine leaves town at the end of that episode, but not before revealing via flashback that she told Stefan Klaus had a contingency. If Klaus was killed, Klaus's hybrids would kill Damon. So, Catherine told Stefan so that he would have the opportunity to save Damon, which he took. What Klaus perceived as loyalty to him was actually Stefan's lingering loyalty to his brother.
Yeah.
Because he's like, you've proven yourself to me. I free you from my mind control. And it's like, well, no,
like,
he
no,
did this so you wouldn't
bitch.
kill Damon. At the end of the episode, Stefan steals Klaus's coffins. He wastes no time. As soon as he's free, he's like, okay, Catherine told me to get mad. Revenge time. I'm swiping your family from you. Klaus is livid.
He got Stefan through coercion and through literal mind control. It's just like, and then you betrayed me. Is what he'll come to say when the turn happens. And it's like, how could you possibly think that once he had his freedom back, he would not come back to destroy you after everything you've done to him? And that's the fact of the matter, is that Klaus would never get that, because everything that's going on in his mind regarding that is so twisted.
It is. We see more of it in the spin-off with Marcel, and boy...
Season 3's good. Season 3 is very good.
It's good. I have so much stuff for the later episodes, but that is where we will end it for now. Our first bit.
You know what I'm thinking right now? Because I'm thinking of Mindy. I'm like, such an opportunity to explore the woke Klaus who likes women and respects them as goddesses. But it's like, that girl is enslaved to you as a black woman. So I don't know what
he sometimes calls her Greta by mistake, I'm sure.
Oh, Klaus.
He's like, Greta, Mandy,
I'm so
Mindy,
sorry. It's just your hair looks exactly the same.
She sees a picture of Greta and is like, I look nothing like.
Forgive me. Even Mindy? What was your actual name? I'll just call you Mindy. It's fine. It's easier. It's shorter.
It's not racist. I sometimes call Daniel Maddox by mistake.
Still a few more originals to come. It's crazy. It's like we've only gotten 3 of them by this point, and already it's such a like chaotic and intriguing dynamic that's been painted, and there's still 2 more of them to hit the scene, at least in this show. It's wild.
And it's so much fun when they turn up. I had forgotten how much I love the dynamic. That was one of the things I was most excited for when I learned we were going to see the rest of Klaus and Elijah's family. I was like, what are the personality types? What are the dynamics? Who's the annoying younger sibling? Who's the perfect child? Who's the suck-up? Who's the goody-goody? Who's the bad boy?
And especially with a group of siblings, that is quite exciting. And I think that might be what they were trying to recapture with the heretics, and it doesn't quite work.
Because the men are all boring and they die very quickly.
Right. And I can't believe I never put that together before. It's like they're all British. There's like 6 of them. Like, that's what they're trying to do, Esther and the original kids again. But it's like, don't buy your originals from Shein.
Except 2 of them are a couple.
Don't buy your originals from Temu.
And Oscar is a former Confederate soldier who's East Asian.
Like, what do I do with this, guys? Some of the girlies are fun, but like the fun doesn't come from them being siblings, you know? The fun comes from the 2 lesbians being a relationship that's extremely chaotic. The one girly who's like blonde white Daria. Is Daria white? I don't know.
Daria is white, yeah.
Oh, okay. Blonde Daria then, who has drama with Stefan. And then it's like all the boys could disappear and the story wouldn't change. Which,
the boys are all thin. Or at least thin as he's perceived by his siblings.
Which, honestly, a win for women, I guess, especially considering Rebecca has to hold up that flag in this entire group.
Yeah.
But it's like, damn.
And then Julian is the abusive blonde dad.
It's so crazy. I've never thought about this. Julian is the Mikael. That's wild. Shame. But
so what is Enzo? Enzo starts off also, and Enzo was meant to be Klaus's replacement for Caroline. but then he becomes the Ansel.
That's crazy. As a POC too, that only affirms. That only affirms.
But that's it for now. I hope it was deliciously insane. It's only gonna get worse from here.
It's only gonna get worse.
If you have any questions or thoughts, you can mail us at animalattackpod@gmail.com. You can tweet us at animattackpod. That's ANIM Attack Pod. You'll find our link tree in the bio, which has all our online stuff. Oh, we also have an Insta.
We do.
What is the Insta handle?
It's also it's Animal Attack Pod. You can look us up there. Follow on Insta, especially now as Twitter is. I mean, at this point, it's like we have a literal neo-Nazi running that platform. So if you are jumping ship, feel free to follow our Instagram and our Blue Sky, which we have up and running, both at Animal Attack Pod.
Sweet. But until then, that's it from us. Goodbye.
Cheers.